This demon from hell just lost her head from a single punch. This monster, a Setiar, was powerful enough to make an entire kingdom tremble centuries ago. Even Aquaz, one of the strongest servants of the sun god, was pushed to the edge and almost turned into the demon's toy. But the moment Ketal stepped in, everything changed. Asetiar regenerated like nothing happened, thinking the first hit was just a mistake. Then she checked Ketal's body and became even more confused. He had no mana, no aura, and no divine power. By the laws of this world, he should have been an ordinary human. But this ordinary human punched through her chest, smashed her head into the ground, and blocked her strongest attacks with nothing but raw strength. The demon of gravity used everything she had. She released long-range attacks and tried to overwhelm him with demonic power. But Ketal treated the whole thing like a fun show. The only problem was that demons could not be killed by brute strength alone, so Aquaz used the power of her god and blessed Ketal's axe with divine power. With that, Ketal finally struck Asetiar down. So how is this musclehead so strong? Let's go back a bit. At the center of the world, monsters dwell on the white snowfield. There are monsters like the white serpent that devour glaciers. There is a gray bear that causes earthquakes. There is even the vile rat that pollutes the seas. In all of these, an emperor returned alive from the white snowfield and said the most dangerous thing isn't the monsters. In the white snowfield, barbarians are seen running around, taking out monsters and eating them for snacks. Among them is our MC, Ketal, and he seems to be the only one with higher intelligence. Ketal always tried to lecture his fellow comrades on some of the dangers of eating poisonous creatures, but these dudes don't care. Ketal then narrates how he never wanted to live amongst clueless and savage barbarians. Ketal's entire idea was to go to a fantasy world, which is a world of magic and wonder. Because of this, he quits his boring job and goes on a journey. He climbed the tallest mountain on Earth, reached the Earth's core. He even traveled to the southernmost point on the planet. However, he found nothing. He realized that reality is very far from fantasy. However, he didn't give up, and every night he prayed that he would wake up in the middle of a fantasy world. And then one day, Ketal's prayers were answered. Now, in the white snowfield, a caravan carrying important goods is passing through, and it is being guarded by a bunch of mercenaries. The mercenaries are hit with so much cold that some of them start to complain that the risk isn't worth the reward. Sitting in one of the couches is Melina of the house Akasha, and she is accompanied by her butler. The butler asks Melina how she is feeling, and she assures the butler that she is fine while the mercenaries outside are complaining of the cold. The butler talks trash about the mercenaries, but Melina tells him not to, since they are the only ones willing to risk guarding them through the supposedly dangerous white snowfield. The butler then asks Melina if she knows what resides in the snowfield, and she says, monsters. The legends once talked about an emperor who wanted to control the whole world, and he also wanted to conquer the white snowfield. Because of this, he led every strong fighter and soldier he had into the snowfield. A few years after this, his empire comes crashing down since its ruler is nowhere to be found. Later on, the emperor returned, but all of his soldiers were gone. He looked really old, and he spoke from a place of horror. The emperor came out with the popular saying that the most dangerous thing in the snowfield is not the monsters, but the barbarians that reside there. The butler believes that this is nothing but a legend. However, Melina begs to differ since the emperor's words carried weight, and most of the creatures that he described were later discovered. However, no one has ever claimed to see a barbarian except for the emperor. Suddenly, the carriage comes to a halt. The mercenaries spot something in the distance, but it doesn't seem clear to them yet. The captain of the mercenaries tells his soldiers to prepare themselves in anticipation. Just then, the unidentified object moves closer to them, and the image of a towering giant man appears right in front of them. His face looked scary, and he finally opened his mouth to talk. It turns out to be our MC, and he reveals that he got tired of the other barbarians, which is why he came for a stroll. Ketal is surprised to have run into outsiders in the snowfield, and he attributes it to luck. Ketal offers his greetings to the mercenaries, and he quickly figures out that they are guarding the caravan. He wants to suggest that they turn back, but he knows that they won't. While he is speaking, the mercenaries are too stunned to speak as they are trying to process what it is that is standing in front of them. Just then, Ketal asks the captain if their employer is in the caravan. He reveals his wishes to be hired just like the mercenaries too. The mercenaries immediately raise their arms against Ketal, but then he makes himself clear. He lets them know that he is willing to help them cross the snowfield. The captain is surprised that Ketal the barbarian is not hostile toward them, but in fact asking for work. Ketal assures the captain that if he meant to do harm, they would all be dead already. The captain reluctantly asks Melina what she wants to do regarding Ketal's request. Melina wants to know what will happen if they fight Ketal, and the captain lets her know that fighting Ketal seems to be out of their options. After weighing what the captain said, Melina agrees to hire Ketal. The captain then walks over to Ketal to tell him the lady's decision. Ketal is glad to hear this, and he walks toward the caravan. The mercenaries have the intention to stop him, but their bodies won't because of the overwhelming aura emanating from Catal. Catal tells the mercenaries that he only wants to speak with Melina. One of the mercenaries wants to protest against this, but the captain reminds them that Melina already approved of it. In addition to this, the captain is wise enough to know that they don't even have what it takes to stop Catal. Catal reaches the caravan, and he asks to come in. The butler almost pisses his pants when Melina tells Catal to enter. Upon entering the caravan, Catal tells the butler to calm his nerves because he has no intentions of harming him. Catal says this while pushing the butler to the caravan walls with his big body. Melina is stunned as she cannot believe that the legendary barbarian is sitting in front of her. The two offer their greetings, and Catal mentions how warm it is inside the caravan. He reveals his surprise that the caravan can retain its warmth through the harsh cold weather in the snowfield. Melina then reveals that this is made possible because of magic. Catal doesn't look surprised as he already knows that this might be the reason. Catal then tells Melina that their chances of passing through the snowfield with mercenaries are quite low. However, he is going to protect them, but he has just one condition. Melina asks him what he wants, and he reveals that he wants information about the outside world. He wants to know what is going on outside the snowfield. Melina is shocked to hear this, but since she is not losing anything and in fact, she has no choice, she assures Catal that she will tell him what he wants to know. Since they will be working together, the two finally exchange names. Apparently, Catal just woke up one day to find himself as a barbarian in the snowfield. He didn't have the time to figure out why this happened to him. The only things that existed there were the terrible cold and ridiculously strong monsters. He is the leader of a tribe in the snowfield, and they hunt to survive. Without realizing it, countless years passed. He tried many times to get out of the snowfield, but there was an apparent system that prevented him from leaving. The system informs Catal that he can only leave when he has completed all the quests. He was about to give up on everything when the Emperor and his men showed up. He wondered why humans would willingly come to a place as terrible as the White Snowfield. This was when he realized that the world outside the snowfield is a world of fantasy and magic that he had so much wanted to visit. Once he figured out this truth, Catal began taking the quest seriously. He hunted down giant lizards and monsters that the quests gave to him. He continued doing this, believing that one day he would get the chance to leave the snowfield. However, until then, he plans to gather information about the outside world, and this is why he is talking to Melina. Catal is glad that Melina is calm, unlike most humans that he has met in the past. Most people he met in the past were violent, but talking to Melina gives him the sense that he is having a conversation with a civilized person. Catal then asks Melina if the caravan is moving weapons. Melina is shocked by the question, and she asks Catal how he knows. Catal replies that he can hear the sound of sharp steel from the wagons, which makes it easy to figure out. He then asks if there is a war on the outside, to which she says yes. Apparently, the Empire and the Kingdom are currently at war. Catal is not totally surprised that even the outside world is not entirely peaceful. Melina reveals that the Empire is currently controlling the battlefield, but the Kingdom is still trying its best to hold out. The Kingdom's swordmasters and heroes are protecting the border to keep things at bay. Catal hears about swordmasters, and he immediately becomes interested. He asks Melina what sort of power the swordmasters are using. Melina then asks him if he knows about mysticism, but he says no. Melina explains that a power called mysticism exists in the world. Apparently, only a few can use or even sense the power. These few are granted one of the 5 ranks of strength. There is the 3rd rank. These are people who can sense the power of mysticism. The 2nd rank is those who can use the power of mysticism. The 1st rank is those who can materialize the power of mysticism into mana or aura. People like knights and wizards usually belong to the 1st rank. However, there are those who have transcended the rankings. These are the people who can dominate mysticism and use it freely. They are capable of doing very powerful things, and this is the rank that the swordmaster belongs to. And when talking about the heroes, they are far beyond everything else. They are basically an influence on the world itself. Melina considers the heroes beings that are out of this world. After hearing everything that Melina has to say, Catal wonders how long he has been trapped in the snowfield. At this point, he doesn't really care again. He just wants to get out of the snowfield and reach the outside world, which is the fantasy world that he has been longing for. Melina then asks Catal if he is a barbarian, to which he says yes. Melina reveals that there is a legend about the barbarians. This shocks Catal as he never knew that something like this existed. He realized that the Emperor must have been the one who went out to spread such. Catal then moves past the legend talk, and he talks about the large number of weapons being moved by Melina. He asks Melina if there is a particular reason for them to go through the snowfield, to which Melina replies that her family needs a whole load of money. Kettle asks her why, and she explains that her family has been in the commercial industry for quite a while. However, they are currently in debt because their rivals found a way to sabotage them. The expedition Melina is embarking on is one that would prevent the total collapse of the family. Kettle is impressed by this, and he mentions that they are selling weapons to the kingdom. Melina is shocked, and she asks Kettle how he knows this. Kettle reminds her that she previously mentioned that the Empire is winning the war, which means they don't need a resupply of weapons. Since the supply of weapons is low, the demand would be high. In return, the price would be high, and because of the situation, Kettle figures out that the weapons would be of high value. For them to even be going through the risky snowfield, Kettle knows that it is quite valuable. Kettle then asks if there is no other way to reach the kingdom without passing the snowfield, and Melina says yes. Melina is shocked by everything she has seen so far, since everything she heard about barbarians is the fact that they are uneducated and they are a bunch of savages. She wonders if Kettle is truly a barbarian, and just then, the carriage runs into a bit of a problem. The carriage has run into a black slime, leaving them scared. Kettle is the only person sitting comfortably in the caravan without any sense of fear. Melina tells him about the records that are being kept concerning dangerous monsters in the snowfield. There are strong adventurers who have entered the snowfield in the past, but little made it out alive. Out of those few are the ones who left records of the monsters that they encountered. Among the said creatures is the black slime. Melina asks Kettle if he knows about the black slime, and he says yes. However, Kettle considers them to be snacks and nothing really dangerous. Melina is shocked when she hears that Kettle eats the black slimes. He then suggests that they catch some so that they can eat, but she immediately refuses. The moment Melina sees that the black slime is posing a threat to the mercenaries, she starts to scream at Kettle for help. However, Kettle refuses to move, telling Melina that he is not going to act unless they come across something that poses an actual danger to them. He tells Melina that the mercenaries should be able to handle the black slime. In addition to this, he wants to gauge the level of strength between the mercenaries. Realizing that Kettle is not coming to help, the captain of the mercenaries starts screaming out orders for his men. He sets up a formation for those who would play defense and then orders some of his men to attack. They manage to hit the black slime, but it doesn't do much damage. The captain has a bit of experience under his belt, and he tells his men to scatter and coordinate themselves since the black slime can only move in straight lines. The mercenaries follow the instructions of their captain, and in a coordinated attack, they are able to hurt the black slime. The mercenaries refuse to back down and only keep the attack going. The captain tells his men to attack the slime and try to look for its core. After some minutes of battling the black slime, they are able to reach the core and destroy it, ultimately defeating the black slime. An echo of victory rises among the mercenaries. They are glad that they managed to take down the scary monster without sustaining any casualties. However, Kettle sits in the caravan, totally unimpressed. Not long after this, they run into another monster, a wolf this time around. The mercenaries carry the morale from their last battle into this, and they are able to easily take down the beast. After taking down their latest beast, the mercenaries start getting cocky, believing that the monsters in the snowfield are not that scary. However, the captain tells his men not to let down their guard since they have not even made it halfway through the snowfield. Whispers start spreading among the mercenaries as they wonder if Kettle is really strong or if he is just lying. They are also mad that he hasn't done anything to protect them since he joined them. In fact, they believe that he is the one tagging along so that they can protect him. Some of the mercenaries believe that it would be much better if they could verify his strength. The mercenaries soon take their complaint to Melina. They talked about how they have risked their lives, but Kettle has done nothing. They tell Melina that they would like to verify whether Kettle is strong or if he is just messing with them. Melina is confused as she doesn't know what method the mercenaries plan to use in verifying if Kettle is strong. The captain apologizes on behalf of his men, telling the lady that he tried to stop them, but he couldn't. Kettle soon learns about the mercenaries' complaint. He then tells them that there is no time to verify his strength yet because they have just received an unwanted visitor. The mercenaries believe that Kettle is just messing around until they turn to see a giant and scary snake standing behind them. The snake is determined to make a meal out of the humans, making it very dangerous. The presence of the snake petrifies the mercenaries. Just then, Kettle speaks to the snake, telling the snake to back off because the humans are under his protection. However, the snake remains stubborn, trying to remind Kettle of the rules guarding the snowfield. Kettle urges the snake to mind its business, but the snake refuses to back down. The snake raises its head, ready to strike, and this is when Kettle loses it. He decides that a good beating will get the snake back to its senses. He approaches the snake, and with just a single punch, he is able to make the snake scream for its life. The hit from Kettle's punch leaves a shockwave in the area. The snake passes out from Kettle's strike, but Kettle decides to finish it off since it refused to heed his warning. With just one more hit that showcases how dangerous Kettle is, He finishes off the beast. After he is done beating the snake to death, the mercenaries all turn to Catal, asking him to forgive them for acting all stupid. Catal acts petty toward them, but the journey continues. The butler then joins the mercenaries outside, leaving Catal with Melina. Kettle then asks Melina why someone who seems to be of importance, like her, is the one running such a dangerous errand for her family. Melina reveals that she is the first daughter of her mother, who is her father's mistress. Her mother is a second wife who came for a political marriage but was used and abandoned. Apparently, Melina and her mother hold no real significance in the family. They are basically nothing, and because of this, they are treated like servants. Melina further adds that she volunteered to go on the mission. Melina admits that the mission is quite dangerous, but someone needed to set an example. After hearing Melina's story, Kittle concludes that she is clever. In addition to this, he believes that she is ambitious. Not long after this, they arrive at the end of the snowfield. They all thank Catal for his assistance. Catal then asks Melina how they plan to return, and she reveals that they are going to go through the Empire since they will no longer be carrying weapons. Melina then asks Catal why he called her a clever and ambitious person. Kettle tells the lady that this is exactly what he means. Since her family is losing their status and they are in debt, Kettle figures out that Melina is using the opportunity to be her family's savior. Even though she is the daughter of the second wife, the people will obviously trust and follow her. Catal has been able to piece together that Melina is trying to seize real power in the family. After hearing everything Catal has to say, Melina confesses that he is not wrong. Melina is shocked at how a barbarian like Catal is so clever. It dawns on Melina that having Catal by her side would actually mean a lot. Melina then offers Catal the chance to follow her out of the snowfield, but Kettle declines the offer, telling Melina that he still has some things that he needs to sort out. Melina is disappointed, but she decides to give Catal her family's crest. She tells him to look for the Akasha family if he ever decides to come outside and show them the treasure. Catal gladly accepts the gift and hopes that they all meet again someday. Melina and her entourage ride off, and Catal returns to the snowfield to take on the quests given to him. 5 years later, Catal finally meets all the conditions set, and he completes the quest. The system informs him that he can finally leave the snowfield. With excitement, Catal takes his first step out of the snowfield into the fantasy world that he has always wanted to visit. Catal steps into the woods, and he takes in all the scents of animals, flowers, trees, and other things made of nature that he didn't have when he was in the snowfield. Catal takes one last look at the snowfield, and he declares that he is never coming back to it. He is finally in the fantasy world that he dreamed of, which he never thought he would reach. Even though everything went wrong from the start, Catal doesn't mind. He has made it to the fantasy world, and he is ready to enjoy himself. He is looking forward to seeing swords, magic, dragons, and elves. He looks further into the forest and feels human presence coming from there. Catal assumes that he is close to a village, and he excitedly walks in that direction. As he approaches the location, he is stuck between what sort of greeting he should go with. Not being able to come to a decision, Catal decides that he is just going to act like a gentleman. Meanwhile, the presence that Catal felt was a bunch of elves finally settling into the environment. An elf elder tells his people to unpack their things and get ready to make the area their home. One of the elves asks the elder if the area is really safe for them, and the elder says yes. He reveals that they are in an extremely remote area that humans rarely come to. This is because the snowfield is close to them, and the elders assure the elves that they have nothing to worry about when it comes to the snowfield. There have not been any reports of anything coming out of the snowfield in thousands of years, so he assures them that they are safe. To be safer, they have set up a barrier around the area. It is a concealment spell that hides the presence of the elves and makes the place look like an ordinary forest. The elder elf reveals that they spent months putting together while following ancient elven magic that they managed to recover. He is confident that no outsider will be able to reach them as long as the barrier holds. However, in a rare case that monsters come attacking, the elder elf is confident that the elf queen will take care of the problem really easily since she is pretty powerful. At the same time, Catal is walking toward the settlement, and he accidentally cuts through the barrier without even realizing it. He continues walking until he runs into an elf child who wandered away from the settlement. Catal is immediately blown away just by the sight of an elf. He considers himself a lucky person since elves are considered to be a rare race. Just then, the elven child also notices the towering image standing above her. Catal waves his hand to the kid, but she immediately passes out in fear. Kettle picks up the girl and decides to return her to the village. Catal is confident that the elves will welcome him with open arms since they are considered to be a peaceful race. Catal arrives at the village only to receive a hostile welcome. The elves are thrown into disarray as they wonder how Catal broke through the barrier. Even the elven elder is surprised to see a human, since the entire area is supposed to be forbidden for humans. The elves soon figure out that Catal has caused a crack in the barrier. The elves start to pee their pants because their queen is not home. She went to scout the area. Catal tries telling the elves that he is not their enemy, but none of them is ready to hear what he has to say. The elves believe that Catal and other humans have come to attack them just like they always do. Catal finally realizes that the elves see him as a kidnapper. He plans to clear the misunderstanding, and to do this, he returns the elven kid he is carrying in his hand. The child turns back to look at Catal, and she only sees the same scary image from before. She runs toward her people in tears. Catal then speaks to the elves, pointing out that he has returned the child, which shows that he is not their enemy. However, this doesn't work as the elven leader orders the elves to attack Catal since the kid has returned to them safely. The elves fire arrows at Catal, leaving him to wonder if the elves are even trying to listen to what he has to say. As the elves attack, Catal reveals his disappointment. With what he heard, he believes that elves are supposed to be gentle, but he realizes that reality is quite different from fairy tales. He figures out that the elves have gotten aggressive because only the fittest win the game of survival. All the elven attacks fail to penetrate Catal's skin, but they keep attacking, believing that he must have a limit. Realizing that the elves are not ready to calm down, Catal claps his hands, releasing a massive shockwave. The shockwave throws the elves in different directions and also leaves a deep crater where Catal is standing. The elf elder is shocked to see this as he wonders just what sort of monster Catal is. Catal realizes that he misjudged his strength, but then he tells the elf leader that he is not an enemy to the elves. Suddenly, a massive fiery arrow hits Catal from behind. The arrow hits Catal on the head, engulfing him in fire. The attack came from the elven queen, Marsaria. The queen demands to know what happened, and the elf leader claims that they were attacked by a human. Marsaria concludes that the area is also not safe for them. Just when the smoke clears, Marsaria and the other elves are left in total shock to see that Catal is still standing. The elder elf wonders how Catal is able to take Marsaria's direct blow and doesn't die. Without hearing from Catal, the queen concludes that Catal is there to hurt them. She prepares to fire another arrow at Catal. Catal wonders why none of the elves are acknowledging what he is trying to tell them, even though they are all speaking the same language. Since the elves are not ready to hear what he has to say, he plans to beat it into them. Marsaria fires her arrow, but Catal punches it back at her. Catal misjudges his strength again, and it almost ends the queen's life. The arrow misses her but destroys everything behind her. Marsaria realizes that the foe she is going up against is pretty strong. She wonders why someone as powerful as Catal is in the area. She immediately orders the elves to run away from the area. The elves adhere to the queen's instructions, and they all make a run for it. The queen then faces Catal, telling him that he will never achieve his sinister goal. Catal is shocked because all he wants to do is talk. The queen then resorts to the last thing she can do when her homeland is threatened. She speaks some chants and summons a giant fiery bull. Catal doesn't feel threatened by this, but he is rather impressed. He realizes that the bull with horns ablaze in flames standing in front of him is a spirit, and this is something straight out of fantasy. Marsaria then orders the bull to annihilate Catal. The bull, Fiego, complains about the summoning, but Marsaria tells it to shut its mouth. Apparently, Fiego is a high-ranking fire spirit that holds flame in its horns. The stronger the spirit, the older and more boastful they get. Marsaria admits that she wouldn't have been able to summon a high-ranking fire spirit like Fiego, but she got help from another tribe, and she barely succeeded in forming the contract. Marsaria then orders Fiego to fulfill his contract. Fiego takes a good look at who he is supposed to annihilate, and he wonders if Catal is even human. Even though Fiego is doubtful, he still has to fulfill his contract. He decides that he is going to burn Catal to ashes. He charges toward Catal, leaving destruction in his wake. Surprisingly, Catal grabs Fiego's horn with just one hand. Fiego almost breaks apart when this happens. Catal admits that he is impressed by seeing a spirit, but at the same time he doesn't mind beating it to death. Catal hits Fiego with a single punch, throwing him several meters away, while also splitting in half. Fiego splitting in half leaves massive destruction where it lands. When this happens, Marsaria falls to her knees in despair. She has done everything in her power, but couldn't leave a scratch on Catal. Kettle walks toward her and she begs that her people be spared. Standing tall and confident, Catal says what he has been saying since the beginning. He tells Marsaria that he is not her enemy, nor is he an enemy of the elves. Marsaria is shocked to hear this, and after a bunch of conversation, the elves finally accept the truth. Marsaria and the elves apologize to Catal for judging too quickly. Catal then assures Marsaria that he understands her situation since she said they were driven to the remote area by humans. He is only sad that the elves didn't hear him out before attacking him. Catal then reveals that it is his first time seeing an elf since there are no elves in the White Snowfield. Marsaria is shocked when she realizes that Catal is from the snowfield where it is said that humans can't survive. Marsaria then reveals her worry. She asks Catal if there are others who can come from the snowfield too. Catal assures Marsaria that the possibility of someone or any monster coming out of the snowfield is very unlikely because there are rules in the snowfield that even powerful beasts like dragons cannot afford to break. He knows that his escape from the snowfield is nothing but an exception. Marsaria is relieved to hear this. Catal then asks her about Fiego since it got split in half. The queen assures Catal that he has nothing to worry about. Since the spirits are beings of nature, Fiego would just return to the spirit realm through reverse summoning. Since she was rude to Kettle, she asks him if there is anything that he wants. She promises Kettle that whatever he asks for, she is going to grant it. Kettle then asks Marsaria if it is possible for humans to form contracts with spirits. The queen reveals that this is not possible, but there are some humans who have become one with nature, and these humans can form contracts with spirits. Marsaria then thinks it over again, and she tells Catal to head to a place called Elfo Sagrado if he wants to form a contract with a spirit. Elfo Sagrado is where the elven divine beings live, and it is considered to be the sacred land of elves. Marsaria tells Catal that what he wants might be possible at Elfo Sagrado. Catal wonders if a human like him can go to the elven sanctuary. Marsaria admits that humans can't get there, but with her permission, Catal will be able to. Marsaria promises to give Catal the location of Elfo Sagrado, but urges him to keep it safe since some vile humans will do anything to reach there. Elves have never revealed the location to other races, but for some reason, the queen trusts Catal with the location. Marsaria conjures what seems to be a GPS tracker for Catal. She tells him to take it with him, and it will lead him to Elfo Sagrado. However, she lets him know that he will be tested by the elven divine beings. Not that Marsaria is worried about this because she is very confident that Catal will pass. Marsaria wishes him luck on his journey, and after exchanging names, Catal leaves. With just a leap, Catal clears a great distance in the forest. Catal continues at this incredible speed, and in no time, he reaches the border of the Barkhan territory, which is in the kingdom of Gehenthra. The guards sense that something is approaching, causing them to panic. When Catal finally emerges from the forest, the guards are left in absolute disbelief. With a calm and happy face, Catal offers his greetings to the guards. The guards are still stunned, and it soon dawns on them that the dude standing in front of them is a barbarian. He walks toward the guards, but they immediately raise their arms at him. They threaten to attack if he comes any closer. Catal urges the guards to calm down because he is not their enemy. The guard captain then asks Catal what he wants from them. Catal points at the city walls, then lets the guards know that he would like to visit their territory. The guards are left in a state of shock as they find it difficult to give Catal an answer. When the captain finally pulls himself together, Kettle is taken into private so that he can be interrogated. The captain asks him how long he plans to stay in the city, and Kettle sincerely tells the captain that he doesn't have an idea. He then asks for his name and identity. Kettle reveals his name, but for identification, he doesn't have. Just then, he remembers the piece that Melina gave him 5 years ago. He brings it out and hands it over to the captain. The captain is confused as he doesn't know what the jewelry is. Catal then explains that it is the Akasha family's crest. He mentions that he received it from a descendant of the Akasha family. When the captain hears this, he realizes that the Akasha family is the merchant family from the kingdom of Denian. Apparently, the family has started gaining influence in recent times, and this was after the head of the family was replaced some years back. Catal then asks the guard if the crest is enough to confirm his identity. The guard hesitates to answer, and Catal asks him if the crest is not from the kingdom. The guard explains that the crest is from the Denian kingdom, but they are currently in the kingdom of Gehenthra. The guard tells Catal that the crest is not a confirmation, but at least it is helpful. He lets Catal know that he can enter the city, but there is a condition that he needs to meet. Apparently, they need confirmation that Catal is not dangerous. The captain informs Catal that he will join a party. There are 3 other people who are trying to enter the territory, and Catal will form a party with them. Catal and his party will then clear the dungeon, which is close to the territory. Without hesitation, Catal accepts the condition. The guard then mentions that Kettle would have to tell them everything that happened while clearing the dungeon. Kettle immediately figures out the captain's game plan. Apparently, he is making people with no identities gather information about each other so he can then use this to filter out the suspicious or good people. Catal is impressed with the guard's way of doing things. The captain asks Catal if he is truly a barbarian, to which he says yes. The captain then stops the conversation and suggests that they get going. Meanwhile, the other 3 guys are in the waiting room. There is the self-proclaimed holy knight, Tyrannus. There is also the thief, Kasan. These 2 seem to have a beef of unknown origin with each other. They continue insulting each other and are even about to fight before the 3rd member of the group steps in. She is a priest of Colossia, and her name is Hayes. The trio is waiting for the fourth member of the party, and they all hope that the last person is normal. Just then, the guard announces the arrival of the fourth person. The door opens, and the giant Catal enters the room. The atmosphere in the room immediately changes with the trio left in shock. Catal breaks the silence in the room as he addresses the group. The trio still finds it hard to say anything as they all wonder if Catal is even human because of how big he is and the amount of pressure coming from his body. The captain leaves, closes the door behind him, and tells the group that he will be back after they are done with introductions. Catal is the first to get down to introductions, leaving the others no choice but to follow suit. Catal is interested in Tyrannus, who claims that he is a holy knight. Catal asks him if he can use holy power, and Tyrannus manages to lie his way out of the situation. When Hayes introduces herself, she reveals that she is serving Colossia, the god of lies and deception. Hayes is not really proud to reveal her profession since the god she is serving is not really popular with the people and for obvious reasons. Moments later, the captain returns to the room, telling the group to prepare themselves. The party members are led to the entrance of the dungeon. The dungeon is a 3-floor dungeon, and the monsters in the dungeon are the undead. Their goal is to clear the dungeon and find the emblem. Before they enter the dungeon, Casan decides to take the leader and create a formation for them to follow. He tells Catal and Tyrannus that they will be the ones to stay up front while he checks for traps. And for Hayes, she's going to be behind them, providing support for them. After laying down his plan, everyone believes that it is all right, and they all decide to follow it. With this, the party enters the dungeon. Upon entering, they notice how dark the dungeon is. Casan observes the area but finds no traces of traps. He is surprised that the dungeon looks suspiciously ordinary. Just then, they run into bones scattered all over the floor. Casan immediately stops their advance, pointing out that the bone fragments are monsters. He reveals that the bones will rise into skeletons and attack if they go any closer. Casan then figures out that the dungeon wasn't for checking the party's sincerity, but it was there to get rid of any suspicious outsiders trying to enter the territory. Catal immediately becomes interested in the skeletons. Casan further explains that the skeletons are dangerous monsters because they can continue moving even after they have lost their limbs. In addition to this, their defense is quite strong since they are made of bones. Casan points out that the dungeon is more dangerous than he anticipated. He orders Hayes to get her divine powers read. He also tells Tyrannus to get his shield up, and he urges Catal to also be ready. Casan continues with his plan. He tells the group that he is going to aim for openings once the fight begins. Since skeleton bodies move even when they have been broken down, he suggests that they aim for the neck. Because of how tough the skeletons are, Casan says they will have to hit them multiple times. Catal acknowledges all of Casan's plans and commends him for being a good leader. Just then, Catal walks toward the skeleton that has already come together. The skeleton is armed with a sword, and while Catal is staring at it in amusement, the others are preparing their battle weapons. Suddenly, Catal slaps the skeleton, and it turns to dust. The other party members are horrified when they see this. As if he didn't do anything spectacular, Catal turns back to look at his stunned teammates. He agrees with Casan, saying the skeletons really do not move again once their head is gone. However, Casan is too shocked to even say a word. What he meant was something else entirely. Skeletons are made of bone, and the skeleton's bones are also made from really hard and unusual material. A skilled swordsman will find it hard to cut down a skeleton in 2 strikes. In addition to this, the skeletons are strengthened by the dungeon's magic. Because of this, the only way to defeat a skeleton is to attack the neck multiple times, just like cutting down a tree. With what Casan knows, it is basically impossible to blow off a skeleton's neck and turn it into powder. Casan can easily see that Catal is strong, but he never thought it was up to the level he witnessed. Casan starts to wonder if Catal is really human. Catal finally kicks some life into the room again when he suggests that they keep moving. In unison, the trio agrees, and they all follow Catal. When Catal notices that they are rushing, he urges them not to rush, and they all obey as if he is their commander. With what they witnessed, they start praying that they don't die at Catal's hands. Shortly afterward, they run into skeletons again. Casan and the others are preparing to strike when Catal asks them for a favor. He tells them to hold off while he deals with the skeletons himself, because there is something he needs to check. Without argument, the trio agrees to Catal's proposal. Catal thanks them and then walks toward the skeleton while his party members wonder what is going on in his head. Catal stares at the skeleton in amusement, wondering what sort of structure it possesses. The skeleton swings its sword at Catal, but he catches the tip and breaks it off. Catal then waits for the skeleton's next course of action. The skeleton still swings at Catal with its broken sword, and this time, Catal grabs the skeleton's right limb. Catal breaks off the limb and crushes it. He then waits to see what the skeleton wants to do again. Once the skeleton realizes that it is missing its right limb, it switches the sword to its left limb. Catal is impressed by this, and as the skeleton rushes toward him, Katal grabs the left limb and crushes it too. The skeleton is now without its forelimbs, but it still tries to take a swing at Katal. Katal crushes everything to the base as he figures out that the skeleton possesses intelligence. Meanwhile, his teammates are sweating really hard as they can't believe that Katal is toying around with a monster that they consider to be very dangerous. The trio agrees in unison that the dude standing in front of them is truly a barbarian. After he is done playing with the skeleton, Katal apologizes to his teammates for the holdup, but they all tell him that he is free to do whatever it is that he wants to do. Kettle suggests that they keep moving forward, and they all comply with no argument. In no time, they reach the second floor. Kasan suggests that they take a rest, and after thinking about it, Katal agrees. Kasan and the other two are glad that he agreed to this, and they immediately sit down to catch their breath. Katal then tells the trio that he has some questions about the dungeon. He apologizes for his lack of knowledge when it comes to the dungeons, but Hayes cuts in, assuring Katal that his quest to know more is a good thing. Hayes asks him what he is curious about, and he mentions the fact that the dungeon is so close to the human territory. He wants to know if monsters don't attack people. Hayes replies that the dungeon monsters do not come outside to attack people. However, there are sometimes exceptions, but in these cases, they are checked and taken care of before they get out of hand. Kasan then adds that dungeons occur naturally. Sometimes they occur in the form of a cave, while others appear in the form of towers. They also appear close to where there is a large settlement of people. Whenever the dungeon appears, the territory in charge checks the danger levels, and then people like Katal, who are outsiders or mercenaries, enter to clear the dungeon. Kettle then asks if the dungeons appear inside settlements, but they say no. It only appears outside of the territories. He also asks if there is a reward for clearing the dungeons, and they say yes. There is usually a boss on the last floor that, if defeated, gives loads of rewards. After hearing all of this, Kettle compares it to a game. Kasan hears him and asks him what he means by game, but lets Kasan know that he was just talking to himself. Kettle then asks one more question. He asks them who makes the dungeons, shocking the trio. Hayes tells Katal that the dungeons appear naturally so that they are not made by anyone, but Katal begs to differ. He mentions the fact that the dungeons appear near places where there are many people. The dungeons appear near where people live and then lure them with rewards. Katal believes that the dungeons are man-made because of the way they operate. Hayes is shocked to hear this, and she starts thinking over the possibility that Katal might actually be right. Kasan also thinks about it, and he realizes that he never questioned the origin of the dungeons since everyone considers it to be an obvious principle. Kasan is shocked that a barbarian like Katal can appear and starts questioning what people like them have believed for years. Because of this, Kasan concludes that Katal is not a normal barbarian. Minutes later, Katal suggests that they keep moving, believing that they have all had enough rest. None of them can disagree with this as they immediately start moving. Not long after this, they find a treasure chest, which is one of the rewards in the dungeon. Kasan mentions that they are free to take it if they can unlock the chest. Kasan then has an internal monologue with himself, talking about how hard it is to unlock a chest of that level. With the type of chest that he is looking at, he believes that it is going to take a thief of high expertise to unlock. Kasan concludes in his head that they would have to give up on the treasure chest. Just then, Katal asks him to unlock it. Kasan is shocked when he hears this, reminding Katal that they are staring at a treasure chest. Katal replies that he is not blind, and since Kasan is a thief, it is his job to unlock it. Kasan knows that Katal is right, but there is a problem. He doesn't have the skills to unlock a chest with this level of protection because if he did, he would be ranked high among the thieves. However, Kasan is scared to death to tell Katal the truth that he is arse at being a thief. He believes that Katal will just kill him if he fails. Scared of what might happen, Kasan proceeds to give it a try. While unlocking the chest, Kasan can see Katal staring at him from behind, and he figures out that it is a game of life or death for him. The moment he fails, he assumes that he is done for. Kasan starts to rack his head. He thinks about all the times he has followed his boss on a raid. He replays everything in his head, trying to find a way through. Since his life depends on it, Kasan puts his all into trying to unlock the chest. After some minutes of working on the chest, Kasan finally unlocks it, and he couldn't be happier or relieved. Every member of the party is impressed with Hayes talking about how only skilled thieves unlock the treasure chests. She is glad that she got to see it in person. Kettle also praises Kasan, telling him that he did a good job. To Kasan, he is in shock because he should not have been able to unlock the chest. But it turns out that he was always able to do it since his survival depended on it. Kasan then realizes that he has not been maxing out his potential all this time. Kettle then asks his party members how much they think the value of the chest is. Hayes reveals that the contents of the chest are enough to feed a family for at least a month while living luxuriously. Katal then tells Kasan to arrange the valuables, to which he quickly responds. While gathering the loot, Kasan's instinct as a thief wants to kick in, but hearing Katal's voice brings him back to reality. Shortly afterward, they run into a bunch of skeletons. Since there are 4 skeletons, Katal tells his teammates that he is going to handle 3 of the skeletons while leaving one to them. The trio accepts the task, and it dawns on them that they are about to get into a real fight. Kasan watches as the skeletons assemble themselves, and it creeps him out. The skeletons come charging at them, and the party members prepare to engage. They take on one of the skeletons while Katal holds down the other 3 so that they won't interfere in the fight. He watches as the trio fight the last skeleton. The trio uses coordinated attacks against the skeleton, trying to take it down. While they are fighting the one skeleton, Katal has casually crushed the other 3 without even realizing it. However, he is glad that he is witnessing how a proper party should move. He stands back to enjoy the fight between the skeleton and his party members. The trio soon realizes that Katal is testing them. It dawns on them that showing any sign of weakness means that they get to die. The fear of death pushes the trio to their limit, and after several attempts, they finally take down the skeleton. Judging from the fight he just watched, Katal realizes that the mercenaries who came through the snowfield 5 years ago are pretty decent fighters. The trio advances into the dungeon and soon gets to the 3rd floor where the skeleton monsters increase. However, the party had no issue going through since they had Katal leading the charge. Finally, they reach the deepest chambers of the dungeon where the final boss resides. They are met with a skeleton knight, and this shocks the party members. Fear grips them because a skeleton knight is a high-level boss and shouldn't be in such a dungeon. Katal asks if the skeleton knight is stronger than the ones they have fought, and they tell him yes. Hayes knows that only a warrior at a knight's level can stand a chance against a skeleton knight. She believes that they have no chance against the monster, and Katal asks them what will happen if they turn back without clearing the dungeon. They reply that the territory usually conducts an investigation, and once they find out that their reason is valid, they come to do the cleanup. Katal hears this and smiles. He immediately walks toward the skeleton knight as it already has his interest piqued. Katal is impressed with the fact that the skeleton can maintain its form without breaking apart like the others. The knight takes its pose and swings its sword, releasing a massive shockwave. Hayes senses the danger and immediately puts up a barrier to protect her teammates. Even with the shield that Hayes put up, the party still feels the effect of the skeleton's attack. This exhausts the party members, causing them to fall to the ground. Tyrannus is shocked that the knight only hit them once, and it caused that much damage. Just then, the skeleton knights charge at them with clear intentions of wiping them out. However, Kettle stands there unfazed, and just as the knight reaches him, he lands a single punch that immediately crushes the skeleton knight. Kasan and the others are left in shock. Even when Kettle asks them if they have cleared the dungeon, they are too stunned to speak. They find another treasure chest, and Kettle asks Kasan if he can open it. Kasan comes clean, telling Katal that the treasure chest is protected with a high-level lock, and he can't disarm it with his skills. Kasan suggests that they ignore the treasure chest, but he hasn't finished his statement when Katal crushes the chest with his fist. Once again, the party members are left in disbelief. Katal then tells Kasan to clean up the treasures. Kasan walks toward the treasure chest while wondering how Katal is able to break it open. It is something he has never heard of in the past, but he wonders why Katal told him to unlock it when he could easily break it. After gathering the treasures, the party exits the dungeon. The moment they step out, the dungeon disappears, and Kasan explains that dungeons usually disappear once it is cleared. The dungeon only remains if there is a secret room, but since the dungeon they cleared disappeared, there seems to be no secret rooms. Katal hears about the secret room and adds it to his list of interesting things. They return to the guard post where the captain is shocked that the team has already cleared the dungeon. He then takes each member of the team into a waiting room to interview them one after the other. He asks Hayes if Katal can stay in the territory, and she says yes, since she didn't notice any problem with him. The captain, on the other hand, is not really concerned about the clearing of the dungeon, but about being able to screen out dangerous individuals. Tyrannus and Kasan also tell the captain the same thing about Katal. When Katal is asked about his party members, he praises them, talking about how they each contributed to the success of the mission. The captain is shocked at this because random party members who have entered the dungeon in the past don't end up praising each other. After looking at all the information, the captain tells them that they are free to enter the territory. He hands them each a permit, telling them that they will be expelled if they ever cause trouble. In addition to this, they are given a reward for clearing the dungeon. He urges them to divide the reward among themselves. Kettle thanks the captain for the reward, and he turns to his party members, telling them that they are going to divide the reward equally. Hayes and the other two nervously tell Katal that they are fine with not receiving anything, but Katal insists since they all cleared the dungeon together. Realizing that Kettle is not going to back down, the trio accepts. After sharing the reward, Kettle suggests that they find a tavern where they can have fun. Kasan and the other two have no choice but to accept, but deep down, they just want to run away from this monster of a man. As the party members walk away, the captain of the guard thinks over what the party members told him. He admits that Katal is really strong since he was able to one-shot a skeleton knight. With what he can see, he figures out that Katal is at least on a knight's level of strength, and he is also not the typical barbarian. He considers Katal to be an anomaly among the barbarians and even humans. The captain realizes that things might be more serious than he thinks, and he decides to go report to the lord of the territory. The captain arrives at the lord's castle, where he meets the ruler in charge of the territory, Luke. The captain goes straight to the point, telling Luke that a barbarian has entered their territory. Luke asks the captain if he was the one who gave the barbarian permission to enter, and he says yes. He assumed that Katal was not going to be a problem, but after learning how strong he is, the captain believes that Katal might actually be a problem. Luke asks the captain how strong Katal is perceived to be, and he reveals that Katal took down a skeleton knight with just one hit. Even Luke is surprised when he hears this since he knows how strong skeleton knights can be. Looking at all the factors, Luke categorizes Katal as a first-rate warrior, and the captain agrees with this. The captain adds that there is the possibility of Katal being stronger than a first-rate warrior. After a quick thought over it, Luke tells the captain to summon Katal. The captain is shocked, and he asks Luke if he is going to be fine being around the barbarian. Luke tells the captain that having Katal roam their territory alone poses a big risk. Luke wants to physically assess the situation himself. When the captain points out how dangerous it is to have Katal in the same room, Luke reminds the captain that he has his own knight to protect him. Standing behind him is his fierce knight, and when Luke asks the knight what he thinks, the knight boastfully tells Luke that he has nothing to worry about since Katal is no more than a barbarian. Since he possesses great swordsmanship skills, which he learned from the great master, he believes that Katal stands no chance. Once Luke gets the assurance from his knight, he urges the captain to summon Katal because he would like to speak to him. Meanwhile, Katal and his party members are at a tavern. Katal is the only one eating and having fun since the other three are so nervous to even be in his presence. Katal talks about how good the food is, and he suggests that the trio eat whatever they want, assuring them that all the bills are on him. Even with this, the trio is still not comfortable. Katal then turns to Tyrannus, asking him what sort of holy power he uses since he didn't see him use any during the dungeon raid. Tyrannus comes clean, telling Katal that he is still in training, which is why his divine power hasn't awakened yet. Katal then moves from Tyrannus to Hayes. He asks her about the said god that she is serving. Hayes reveals that there is no temple that they can worship since the deity is not exactly popular. The deity is in control of lies and deception, which is why she is rejected by the masses. Hayes then throws in a strange question, asking Katal how strong he is. Katal is thrown back with the question, and he tells his party members that he doesn't have an idea since he has always been in the white snowfield. Kettle tells teammates that he is also curious to know how strong he is. Hayes then assumes that Kettle is a first-rate warrior since he was able to take on the skeleton knight easily. Just then, the shop owner shows up, nervously telling the party members that the shop is about to close for the day. Katal apologizes for taking too long and assures the shop owner that they are leaving. After leaving the tavern, Katal asks his party members if they have any plans. In unison, the trio tells him that they are very busy. Katal is disappointed when he realizes that it is goodbye. He wishes that they would meet again someday, but the trio prays that they won't. Kettle then retires at an inn, and he gets a comfortable bed. He has missed sleeping on a bed for so long, since the snowfield is nothing but harshness. Katal has been surviving in the harsh environment of the snowfield, but now that he has found himself in civilization, he just wants to experience and have more feel for how things are. He plans to go on an adventure. On his list is the Elven Sanctuary, the Magic Tower, and even the Royal Capital is not off his list. Katal sleeps like a baby for the night, and he wakes up to the captain of the guard knocking on his door. He walks up to the captain, asking him if there is any problem. The captain coughs to pull his confidence together, and he then reveals that Katal has been summoned by the lord of the territory. Katal is shocked to hear this, and he considers it an honor. He immediately agrees to meet the lord. He tells the captain that he is just going to get his clothes so that they can leave, but the guard is utterly stunned. He didn't think it would be that easy to get Katal to follow him, and he started to wonder if he had come to the wrong place. Katal walks through the streets in amazement, since this is the first time he will get to see the territory during the day. Minutes later, they arrive at the castle, where the lord of the territory is already waiting for them. Luke welcomes Katal and stretches his hand to shake Katal's. Surprisingly, Katal takes his hand and also bows to him in respect. Luke cannot believe that a barbarian bowed his head. Barbarians are known to never bow their heads because strength is everything to them. Luke tries to hide his shock and he tells Catal to take his seat. Catal sits down and he looks around at how beautiful everything is. Just then, he notices Luke's guard and how serious the dude is. Catal has always loved knights since he was a kid, but staring at the knight, he realizes that he is emitting serious killing intent. Luke calls Catal's attention back to reality when he tells him that there is a reason why he called him. Luke informs Catal that there are things he wants to confirm about him. Catal urges Luke to ask him anything he feels like. Luke asks Catal where he came from, and Catal replies that he came from the coldest place in the entire world, which is the White Snowfield. Hearing this, Luke confirms that Catal is truly a barbarian. Catal adds that the Snowfield is a very dangerous place. Luke then asks Catal how strong he is. Luke wants to know how threatening Catal's power is. Catal then tells Luke that he can't answer the question since he doesn't know the power rankings on the outside. Since his power cannot be ascertained, Luke suggests that Catal spar his knight. Luke promises that Catal will be rewarded if he agrees. Luke further adds that it is not going to be a life or death match, and Catal agrees to the proposition. He is excited that he wants to have a sparring session with a knight. And this is not just any knight, but a knight in the fantasy world. Catal cannot pass up the chance to witness what a knight can do firsthand. After Catal agrees to the deal, Luke realizes that Catal is just like the other barbarians who will not shy away from a fight. Catal and the knight then proceed to the arena where the match is going to take place. Once everything is in place, Luke tells the two to get down to the match. The knight boastfully tells Catal that he should consider himself a lucky person since he wants to witness his greatness. The knight soon realizes that Catal is relaxed, and he is even smiling. This pisses him off, and he charges toward Catal, promising to show him the difference in their skill level. He unleashes a sword skill that leaves Catal ultimately surprised. Catal tries to figure out the type of sword skill that the knight is using, but can't seem to. He initially thinks the three swords aiming for him are illusions, but he soon gets rid of that assumption. Even with how potent the skill is, Catal easily dodges. The knight considers this an impressive feat, but he still has more in his arsenal to unleash. Before he can make any more moves, Catal easily grabs his sword and breaks it. The knight is still trying to figure out what amazing power he just witnessed when he is grabbed by Catal. Catal punches him in the chest, shattering his armor and throwing him into the wall. With just a strike, Catal knocks Luke's best knight out of commission, leaving Luke himself stunned. Luke is left to wonder just how strong Catal can be. Catal turns to look at him and he asks if the duel is over, to which he says yes. Luke concludes that Catal's power is easily at a superhuman level since he was able to easily take down a high-level knight. However, he is left to wonder just how strong Catal is since he wasn't even trying. Without a doubt, he knows Catal has what it takes to tip the balance of the world. Realizing how dire the situation is, Luke believes that it is time to inform one of the very people that he knows who has gained the title of Swordsmaster. Speaking of the devil, the said Swordsmaster shows up in Luke's chambers. The Swordmaster is a respectable and feared old man named Cain. Cain takes an interest in what Luke has to say, and he demands further explanation. Luke stands up to greet the Swordsmaster out of respect, and he humbly welcomes him even though he invited him on such notice. Luke then takes Cain to the room where the defeated knight is recovering. The knight apologizes to Luke for messing up, but Cain enters the room, telling the knight not to apologize, as he is to be blamed for everything. He believes that he didn't teach his disciple too well, which is why he lost to an unknown barbarian. Luke takes a better look at the knight and realizes that he didn't sustain any wounds on his chest, even though his armor was completely shattered. Luke then realizes that Catal must have shown restraint so as not to kill the knight. Cain also assesses the situation, and he reveals that Catal is not just a mindless barbarian. He believes that Catal has control over his strength, and he is even precise with it. Cain informs Luke that Catal has surpassed the level of a knight, and he is easily at a superhuman level. Luke then asks Cain how he perceives Catal. Cain admits that Catal might be super strong, but he is confident that there is no way Catal can reach him since he is a swordsmaster. Cain further looks at the knight's injuries and realizes that Catal can't use aura, but he is able to wield such crazy power. He considers this an impossible method with ordinary means, and he assumes that it is the way of the barbarians. Luke then tells Cain that Catal came from the Snowfield. Hearing this, Cain thinks Catal is a heteromorph, but he soon trashes the thought. Cain says Catal wouldn't have shown consideration for humans if he were a heteromorph. However, he wonders why a barbarian emerged from the Snowfield, and he also questions the timing of everything. Luke realizes that Cain is worried, and he asks him if there is anything wrong. Obviously, there is something wrong, but Cain tells Luke that he will hear of it later. Cain assures Luke that it is not something he needs to worry about in the meantime. He then asks Luke if Catal is still in the territory, and he says yes. Cain then decides to take it upon himself to confirm how strong Catal is. Catal is also given the promised reward for the duel. Luke also tells Ketal that he is free to do as he wishes in the territory. Ketal reveals that he doesn't have a plan laid out yet, but he would like to have an identity. He knows that entering dungeons in other territories can be an issue if he doesn't have an official identity. The captain of the guard then lets him know that Ketal can get someone of high status to vouch for his identity. The other way he can get around this is to become a mercenary. Once he builds up his achievements as a mercenary, he will be recognized by the guild, and his identity will be acknowledged. The captain then reveals that Ketal will be treated as a mere errand boy unless he raises his level as a mercenary. The captain assumes that Ketal will go with the method of getting a sponsor to vouch for his identity, but Ketal shocks him when he picks the option to be a mercenary. Since mercenaries fight monsters and take on other dangerous jobs, Ketal is highly interested. He asks the captain where he can go to become a mercenary, and he points him to the mercenary guild. Mercenaries might sound cool on the outside, but they are basically the lowest on the status level. They often die in dangerous dungeons, and they are even subjected to dirty jobs. Because of this, the bottom tier of the mercenary society is always filthy and messy. At the mercenary guild hall, two mercenaries are seen fighting each other while their counterparts are watching. No one tries to separate them, and they are even betting on who is going to win in the end. The attendant, Rosa, is also complaining about how they have been receiving trash recruits. Among the said recruits are Tyrannus and Hayes. Rosa wishes that a handsome knight would just appear out of nowhere to come and register. Rosa's prayers are answered, but instead of a royal princess, Ketal is the one who entered the guild. Ketal's presence in the hall is immediately felt by everyone, and even the two dumbasses fighting are forced to stop their beef. Ketal confidently walks up to Rosa, telling her that he would like to become a mercenary. Rosa is trembling as she faces Ketal. She manages to ask Ketal why he wants to become a mercenary, and he reveals that he wants to become one so he can get an official status. Rosa lets him know that he is going to need loads of achievements to move up, and Ketal assures the assistant that he is fine with that. Rosa asks for his age and name. Ketal only gives his name since he has no idea how old he is. Rosa fills in the details, and she decides to go with an approximate age for Ketal. After this, Rosa presents Ketal with his mercenary badge, telling him not to lose it. Without wasting time, Ketal immediately asks to see the requests available since he would like to start immediately. Ketal is shocked when Rosa brings out a list of F-rank requests for him. They are low requests like gathering of herbs, basement cleaning, night patrol, and a few. Rosa explains to him that he needs to take on F-rank requests and work his way up. Rosa is trembling while saying this, as she expects Ketal to lash out, but to her surprise, Ketal just picks one of the tasks. He tells Rosa that he would like to pick the herb gathering task. Ketal asks Rosa where he is going to get the herb, and she lets him know that he will have to go outside the village. She shows Ketal an image of the herb he is expected to gather. Ketal collects the image and excitedly heads out to complete his task. Rosa is shocked at how chill Ketal is. Ketal arrives at the location where he is going to find the herbs. He realizes that they are herbs for treating injuries. Without grumbling or complaints, Ketal happily gathers the herbs. He soon returns to the guild an hour later with a bag full of herbs. Rosa is stunned when she sees this since Ketal managed to get even more than required. She assumes that Ketal has been sent to destroy the herb field, but her perception of Ketal changes when she realizes that Ketal actually picked the herbs the right way. Ketal didn't pull the herbs from the roots just like other mercenaries would do. Rosa thanks Ketal for his hard work and then gives him a silver coin as payment for his work. Ketal stares at the silver coin, which is not enough to buy a decent meal, but instead of getting mad, he is actually happy because this is his first hard-earned money. Ketal smiles, and it is written all over his face that he is pleased. Ketal tells Rosa that he is satisfied, and he asks to take on another task. Rosa is shocked that Ketal is happy with the reward he got, which is the least thing that she expected. Since the day is still young, Ketal wants to complete as many tasks as he can. Rosa had believed that Ketal was normal, but with this she starts crying that Ketal is just like other weird mercenaries that she has been recruiting. Ketal continues taking on menial tasks, clearing the lists bit by bit. She visits a woman to help clean her warehouse. The woman is shocked by Ketal's arrival, but Ketal ignores her fear and gets down to business. After helping the woman, he jumps on the next task, which is street sweeping. Without hesitation, he picked up a broom and started sweeping. Meanwhile, he is being watched by Kane, who wonders why Ketal is doing menial jobs. He knows Ketal is pretty strong, and just by revealing his power, he can make a good living for himself. He can even change the power scaling of a kingdom, but he's doing menial tasks instead. Kane is even more surprised because Ketal is doing the job with passion. After the day's job, Ketal receives his pay, which is 15 silver coins. Ketal happily accepts the reward, assuring Rosa that he will be back the next day to complete more tasks. The following day, Ketal notices that everyone has their eyes on him. Even kids cry just by looking at Katal. Kettle then heads to the library. He enters, and as usual, the receptionist is stunned. He asks to read, and the attendant provides him with books that will interest him. Kane is tailing him, but he is being careful not to get noticed by Katal. He hides behind a shelf to figure out what Katal is doing, and he wonders why a barbarian known to be crude and savage is reading books. Katal picks up some history books, where he finds out that the Empire won the battle 5 years ago. Since then, the Empire has become dominant and has taken over the kingdom of Barkan as a vassal state. There are still some kingdoms to be conquered, but the Empire seems to be moving at a great pace to take over the world. After he is done looking into history, he decides to learn more about the fantasies of that world. The world possesses the dwarven tunnels, which are overflowing with expensive ones. There is also Pisarapia, the fairy village. Lagameria is the sky city home to the Celestials. He also learns in the book that Elfo Sagrado belongs to the elves, but no one has been able to find it. It is just as Marsaria told him, but now he possesses the ability to go if he wants to. Just then, he realizes that there are other places like the White Snowfield. These are the demonic realms, and they don't entertain human presence. These realms are filled with very scary creatures, but 5 of these realms are the vast ones. One of them is the silent forest that dyes everything in stillness. There is the abyss that drags the world into evil. There is also the deep sea, but this place is strange enough for primates to still breathe. And there is the bottomless hole where nothing exists. Then there is the White Snowfield. Beings living in the demonic realms are regarded as the others. They are very strange and powerful, but humans are lucky that they can't cross over. Katal is surprised to learn about this. He knows the White Snowfield on itself is very large, and to think there are other places like it blows his mind. After gathering all the info that he can, Katal stands up to leave. He thanks the receptionist, who deep down is just glad that Katal is finally leaving. Katal heads back to the guild to ask Rosa if there are any assignments for the day. Rosa is happy to present him with the assignment sheet for the day. Meanwhile, Kane is still watching Katal, and he now sees him as a strange person. Kane decides that the best way to know more about Katal will be to meet him in person. Later that evening, Katal is on his way home when he doesn't look surprised since he knows that Kane has been tailing him all day. On the other hand, Kane is shocked to his bones since he hid his presence with aura, which is supposed to make him invincible. Kane is left to wonder how Katal noticed him since people with the best instincts are not even supposed to catch a wind of him. Katal asks Kane what he wants from him, and before Kane can even talk, Katal jumps to the conclusion that the old man is a bandit. Katal waits a moment, but when he doesn't get a response from Kane, he cements the idea that Kane is a bandit. Kane subtly speaks out, telling Katal that he is not a bandit, and he wonders if Katal will back down if he learns that he is a swordsmaster. However, Katal is already fixated on the fact that Kane is a bandit who needs to be taken in. In fact, he is already thinking about the achievement he will be given by taking in Kane. Realizing that Katal is not going to back down, Kane decides to use the opportunity to test out his strength. Kane prepares to engage Kettle, but suddenly, Kettle vanishes and appears behind him. Kettle tries to grab Kane, but in the last second, Kane manages to move. Kettle smiles, acknowledging the fact that Kane is fast. On the other hand, Kane is terrified since he almost got caught. He knows that Katal would have caught him if he had moved a bit slower. However, he is more shocked that Katal is not using aura, but he is still extremely fast. Kane decides that he is no longer going to test Katal, but is going to go all out against him. Kane charges at Katal, but before he even gets the chance to do anything, Katal easily grabs him. Kane tries to move but realizes that he is not just being grabbed, but the feeling he is getting is that he is thrown between rocks and can't move. Kane screams in pain while gnashing his teeth. He realizes that he can't even win in a contest of strength against Katal. Since it has come to this, Kane resorts to releasing his power. This sudden burst of force is enough for him to break free. Kettle still doesn't feel threatened but only smiles at the amazing technique that Kane used. He teases Kane, comparing him to a bandit and how they have somehow developed several techniques. Kane cannot believe that Katal is comparing his manifestation of mana to that of a bandit. Kane wonders how Katal is still standing since he just hit him with a massive force of mana that is enough to break through solid steel. Kane is blown away by the fact that there is no single scratch on Katal. At this point, Kane is worried since he has never seen anyone defend a mana attack with just their bare body. Katal, on the other hand, decides that it is time to finish their little play. Kane also prepares to draw his sword, but before he can, Katal reaches him and pushes back the sword with just a finger. This finally does it for Kane as he cannot believe that Katal is stopping him from using his sword with just a finger. Kane is trying with his whole strength to pull the sword, but Katal is not even trying. Kane finally gives in, and Katal just grabs him like he is some baby. Katal is disappointed in how weak bandits are, not knowing that he just took down someone who is a swordsmaster. Well guys, that's the end of the video. If you like this video, comment part 2 in the comment section. Also subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and like the video. Thank you for watching and see you next time again. Moments later, Kettle arrives at the security post, carrying Kane with him. The captain of the guards is shocked to see the Grandmaster being held like he is a baby. A lot is going through his head as he cannot ascertain if Kettle attacked the Swordsmaster. He is totally blown away when Kettle addresses Kane as a thief that he caught. Kettle tells the captain that he is there to hand Kane over so he can increase his mercenary achievements. It starts to dawn on the captain what is currently happening. He realizes that the Swordsmaster, who is at the top of the food chain, got himself captured by a barbarian. To make it even worse, Kettle captured him in the worst possible way. The captain finally pulls himself together and he tells Kettle that the person he is holding is not a thief. Kettle still looks confused when the captain says this. He gets more confused when the captain bows his head to Kane, revealing that he is the only swordsmaster in the kingdom of Gehenthra. Kettle still doesn't figure things out, as he believes that swordsmaster is a title given to a thief. Kettle starts arguing with the captain, telling him that the person he is holding cannot be a swordsmaster since he attacked him to take his money. Meanwhile, Kane just remains silent as he is too embarrassed to even say anything. The captain and Kettle continue arguing on whether the person Kettle is holding is a wizard, using a spell to disguise himself. After a back and forth, Kettle finally realizes that Kane is truly a swordsmaster. The captain then leaves to report the situation to Luke. Luke is ultimately shocked when he learns that Kane lost to Kettle. Kettle and Kane are now sitting in a room while trying to avoid eye contact because of their embarrassing moment together. Luke enters the room to find such an awkward sight. Luke expected Kane to take on Kettle, but he never thought he would lose. Luke comes to the bitter realization that Kettle is stronger than the swordsmaster. Luke tries to find comfort in the fact that Kane recently became a swordsmaster. He believes that Kane's rank is low among other superhumans, which is why he easily lost to Kettle. However, he is still baffled by the fact that Kettle could take on someone who is at the pinnacle of swordsmanship. Luke realizes that the two need some space to discuss, and he excuses himself from the room. Kane thinks about the whole thing and realizes how embarrassing it is for him. His pride is shattered, but there is no way he can even try to fix it. Kane finally breaks the silence in the room when he introduces himself. He mentions that he is a swordsmaster, and Kettle asks if swordsmaster is his surname. He explains that anyone who reaches the title of being a swordsmaster automatically loses their surname because it doesn't hold meaning again. Kettle then asks him if the technique he used is particular to swordsmasters. Kane realizes what Kettle is talking about, and he tells him that he is wrong. What Kettle saw Kane use was the manifestation of mysticism, which is also called aura. This immediately piques Kettle's interest, and he wants to learn more. He asks Kane how he can use aura just like he said. Kane then explains that Kettle would have to control aura and manifest it if he is to use it. Kettle then asks if mysticism is mana, but Kane explains that mysticism is the embodiment of mystical energy itself. The art of handling mysticism as a swordsman is what births aura, but for a mage, it becomes mana. Kettle smiles when he realizes that both swordsmen and mages have what it takes to handle mysticism. Just then, Kettle asks Kane if he can teach him how to use mysticism since he is still new to the techniques of that world. Kane is shocked when he hears this, since Kettle is obviously stronger than he is. Kettle admits that he doesn't know anything about mysticism or swordsmanship. He is basically swinging his sword around with no skill. Kane hears this and tries to find solace in the fact that he didn't draw his sword when he fought Kettle. He believed that he would have shown Kettle how to properly wield a sword. Since he is trying to restore his shattered pride, Kane agrees to teach Kettle how to properly wield a sword. Kettle then mentions that he is weak because he can't use a sword. Kane cannot believe that Kettle considers himself to be a weak person, but he goes with the flow, agreeing with what Kettle said. Kettle then continues by saying Kane would have had a better chance against him if he had allowed him to use his sword. He even believes that Kane would have won, but deep down, Kane knows that using his sword or not, he stands no chance against Kettle's strength that he witnessed during their encounter together. However, he hopes to restore his pride by teaching Kettle proper swordsmanship. Kane begins his lesson by telling Kettle that his swordsmanship solely relies on illusion and reality. He asks Kettle what he perceived when he fought his disciple, the knight. Kettle reveals that the knight's sword strike split into 3, and each attack was real. Kettle then figures out that Kane's style is one that focuses on technique and not brute strength. Kane affirms Kettle's deductions, and he adds that swordsmanship is the art of merging the sword with aura to wield mysticism. Those who have reached the top of that art are called swordsmasters just like him. Since Kettle is a newbie, and he might not understand everything he is saying in theory, Kane decides that a practical example will be the best way forward. Kane makes his stance and releases a sword slash imbued with his technique. The sword strike splits into 5 and damages the ground. Cain explains that the illusions might be fake, but his techniques make them real, which is something only his sword style can do. After seeing what Cain did and his technique, Catal tells the old man that he can also do it. As usual, Cain is shocked as he believes that Catal is talking nonsense. Cain has been working on his technique his entire life, and he is confident that Catal cannot just copy it from seeing it once. Catal realizes that Cain doesn't believe him, and he decides to show him instead. Cain brings out his axe, makes his stance, and swings his axe so fast that he creates a bigger level of damage than Cain's technique. Cain is left stunned by this. Cain is able to assess the situation, and he figures out that Catal might have copied his technique, but he was able to do that using his overwhelming strength and speed. Cain then tells Catal that all he did was swing his axe so fast, but there was no technique involved. Catal is confused, and he argues with Cain. Since the technique is meant to be used in combat, Catal believes that he managed to achieve the desired result even though he took the same route as Cain. Upon hearing this, Cain realizes that Catal is not actually wrong with his take. Cain wants to do something that Catal will not be able to, and he proceeds to show another technique. This time around, Cain splits his body into several parts, just like the way he did with the sword. Cain explains that the technique he used is body separation, which is created by controlling his aura to its last limit. Cain then asks Catal if he can also copy the technique he just showed him. Catal accepts the challenge and he steps back before moving his body so fast, just like Cain did. By doing this, he split his body just like Cain did and even left more devastating damage than Cain did. Cain is left in shambles, as he cannot believe that everything he worked for a lifetime was replicated in seconds. He falls to his knees in despair, and Catal teases him for being mentally fragile. However, Catal decides to lift Cain's spirit. He tells Cain that his swordsmanship is amazing. Catal admits that he can't do what Cain is doing because all he did was swing his axe really fast, but didn't imbue Cain's technique in it. Catal admits that he can never reach the top level of mysticism that Cain has gotten to. After hearing this from Catal, Cain pulls himself together with the belief that his technique is unique to him and him alone. He realizes that his swordsmanship is perfect. The only problem is that he went up against someone who is way out of his league. Cain is still confused by the fact that Catal is moving so fast without using aura. This is something that should be beyond human limits, but Catal is doing it so easily. Just then, Catal asks for something really shocking. He begs Cain to teach him how to properly use his technique. Cain agrees and he tells Catal that to properly use his technique, he needs to learn how to control aura. However, to do this, Catal will have to figure out how the mystery works. Cain says there is no mage or swordsman who can get to the top without having a good understanding of the mystery. However, there are a few exceptions, and these are those who believe in gods. Their belief helps them bypass this compulsory factor. Catal then figures out that divine power is different from other powers. Cain reveals that those with divine power get their powers directly from the gods. Cain further explains that mystery is the mysterious power within humans. However, it is up to humans on how they use it. Trying to explain what the mystery is, Cain reveals that there are 5 stages. The basic stage is the detection of mystery, which allows the sensing and realization of mystery. Catal then asks if everyone can feel the mystery, but Cain says no. The mystery can only be felt by gifted people. Those who are able to sense the mystery are called third-rate. Just like Melina explained to him 5 years ago, Cain explained again. Cain tells Catal that there are 5 levels, and these are the third-rate, second-rate, first-rate, superhuman, and hero levels. Cain then adds that the power gap between each level is significantly huge. Since Catal has no sense of mystery whatsoever, Cain wants them to start with the first stage, which is mystery detection. Cain tells Catal to max out his senses so he can feel everything around him. From the touch of the earth to the shifting in the wind, Cain tells Catal to feel everything. Catal sits down to meditate and follow all of Cain's instructions. But after a few minutes, Catal comes clean, telling Cain that he doesn't feel anything. Cain is shocked to hear this since he believes that someone as strong as Catal would easily be able to sense it. Cain starts to wonder if Catal is an exception because of where he came from. Cain tells Catal that it might not be easy for him to release the mystical right from the start. Cain offers to push power directly into him and guide him along the path of mysticism. Catal is immediately excited when he hears that Cain is about to transfer aura into him. He urges the old man to get down to it quickly. Cain stands up and stands behind Catal to get started. Just as he touches Catal, Cain is stunned. Instead of feeling a body, what he feels is solid rock. He cannot believe that human muscles can be so compressed that they feel like solid rock. Catal notices that Cain is not doing anything, and he calls his attention back to him. Cain then begins the process of transferring aura into Catal. He plans to awaken the dormant mysticism in his body. Cain is confident that this is not a difficult process, and he can easily get it done. Just then, Kane realizes that he has hit a brick wall. In fact, Kane figures out that it is worse than he thought. In trying to reach Kettle's mysticism, Kane feels like he is in a deep sea with no end in it. Kane finally comes to the conclusion that there is no way he can awaken Kettle's mysticism. Kettle asks if he has no talent, but Kane assures him that it is not the case. Kane tells Kettle that he will need to find his own path and awaken his dormant power by himself. Kane informs Kettle that he couldn't find the path in his body. Kettle is worried that he cannot sense mysticism at all, but Kane lets him know that this is not the case. Kane tells Kettle that he couldn't confirm the basis of mysticism in his body. Kane puts it into perspective for him, telling him that his body is exceptional. He tried filling it with aura, but it didn't reach anywhere. Even Kane is blown away because this is the first time he will be witnessing such. Kettle is disappointed in the entire process, as he now believes that he might not be able to use mysticism since a swordsmaster couldn't help him. Kane then suggests that Kettle visit other swordsmasters who are better at handling aura, or he can even visit the magic tower. Kane apologizes that he couldn't help, but Kettle doesn't take offense. He assures Kane that he might not have gotten his desired result, but he was able to learn a lot from their time together. Kettle thanks Kane for his help, leaving Kane in a state of mystery. He wonders why Kettle is so different from the other barbarians that he has met in the past. Kane then tries to play his hand. He asks Kettle if he is interested in settling down in the kingdom. Kane tells Kettle that he would be given a title if he pledges loyalty to the kingdom. But without thinking twice, Kettle refuses the offer. He tells Kane that he is not interested in pledging his fealty to anything or anyone. Kettle basically wants to be a free bird so he can do whatever it is he wants. Kane knows how powerful Kettle is, and he wishes that he could get him to support the kingdom so that they can have a chance against the Empire. Kane reminds Kettle that he will be given a title, but Kettle sternly maintains his stance and Kane immediately backs off. Kettle then thanks Kane for his assistance, assuring him that he won't forget how he tried to help him. After their conversation, Kane walks through the hallway thinking about how foolish he is that he thought he could control Kettle into doing what he wants. With what Kane has seen, he is confident that no one can influence Kettle. He is a man of his own and will only do what he wants. Kane believes that Kettle might even be more dangerous than the other barbarians who came from the demonic realm, since Kettle came from the White Snowfield. Kane then holds a meeting with Luke. He tells him about the Emperor's desire to conquer the demonic realm, which has claimed the lives of several scouts. Kane urges Luke to be prepared in case he gets an Imperial summons in the future. Kane mentions how a lot of strange things have been happening, from the Emperor trying to conquer the demonic realm to the news of the demons making a move. Kane reveals that dungeons are appearing at an abnormal rate, and it seems the demonic realm is slowly seeping into the human world. Kane knows that something mysterious is happening, and with the way it is going, he is confident that it is not something that would benefit humanity. To top it all off, a strange barbarian has walked into their midst. However, Luke and Kane are relieved that Kettle doesn't appear to be an enemy yet. Kettle continues with his day-to-day activity, and one morning, he decides to figure out why people are always staring at him. Kettle comes to the conclusion that everyone is always staring at him because he is not wearing a proper outfit. Since everyone is wearing proper civilized clothes and he is wearing animal hides, Kettle assumes that they consider him a weirdo. However, Kettle is basically misunderstanding the entire situation and couldn't comprehend that his presence alone causes people to stare at him. Kettle then heads to a clothing store to try and get himself a new outfit. As expected, the shop owner almost fainted when Kettle entered the shop. Kettle wants to buy himself a new outfit, but the shop owner tells him he doesn't have anything that can fit him. He then offers to make him a custom outfit. Kettle agrees to the shop owner's offer, but at the same time, the shop owner is worried that Kettle will just kill him if the outfit he makes doesn't suit his taste. Kettle leaves the shop, promising to come back once the outfit is done. On his way to the guild, Kettle finds a weird glowing bead on the road. He picks it up with the intention of asking Rosa about it. He arrives at the guild, and he shows Rosa the bead. Rosa picks it up to get a better look. Just by touching it, Rosa reveals that it was carefully polished by someone. As she continues to dig into it, Rosa suddenly zones out. Kettle is quick to notice this, and he snaps her out of it. Kettle asks her if she is fine, and she says yes. Kettle lets her know that she was weirdly drawn to the bead, but Rosa didn't even know this. Rosa then mentions the strange energy coming from the bead. She wants to appraise it, but Kettle tells her not to. He lets her know that he will dig into the bead by himself. Kettle then asks Rosa if there are job requests that he can work on. As usual, she brings out the list of tasks that Kettle can easily pick from. That night, Kettle lies on his bed, reminiscing about the fulfilling day that he had. His attention comes back to the bead as he wonders what it is. While staring at the bead, he suddenly hears a voice from inside the bead. The voice gives Kettle instructions on where to go. Excited to see what or who is behind the bead, Kettle leaves his room. He soon finds himself in a dark cave, and upon entering, he can hear the voice getting excited that another sacrifice has come to him. The voice is glad that he managed to get his hands on a barbarian, as this would be sufficient for what he wants to do. Sitting in the dark cave is a dark sorcerer, talking about resurrection. There was a time in the past when many kingdoms came crashing down. The person behind this chaos was an evil sorcerer who manipulated everyone by messing with their emotions. He got so far with his evil doings until he was discovered and the heroes defeated him. Before he was defeated, he managed to transfer his soul into a life vessel, thus becoming a lich. With this, he achieved immortality that will remain until his life vessel is broken. Since he became a lich, the evil sorcerer has been planning his resurrection. To resurrect himself, he needed lots of human sacrifices, and to get this, he lured in people. His goal is to create a mana core that would be needed for his resurrection, so that he can once again conquer the world with his power. His plan was going smoothly, but now, Katal has somehow entered his hideout. The lich wonders why a barbarian is in the area since they rarely come down from the north. It turns out that the lich placed a spell on the bead to attract those who can't see the mystical presence. Since Kettle has somehow wandered into his domain, he is confident that Kettle can't feel the presence of mystery. Katal opens a giant door and steps into the room where the lich is waiting. Kettle is shocked to see a lich right in front of him. He has always been fascinated by liches as they are considered to be villains in the fantasy worlds. The lich realizes that Katal doesn't seem to be affected by the bead, and he is forced to ask him who he is. It finally dawns on Katal that the lich has been using the beads to lure people into his hideout. The lich remains confused at what is happening since he can't sense any mystical presence in Kettle. Since Katal is not affected by his charm, the lich assumes that he is carrying a mental defense artifact. He adds that the artifact must be a high-grade one since he can't sense it, but he wonders how a barbarian is able to get his hands on such a thing. Katal then tells the lich that he is not with any artifact. The lich doesn't believe this and decides that it is time that he crushes Katal with force. The lich summons his minions, which are skeletons. The skeletons run at Katal, but it all ends the same way it did in the dungeon. Katal takes out the skeletons with just one hit. The lich is surprised at this, but decides to raise more skeletons to take on Katal. He orders his minions to cut Katal down, but all it takes for Katal to take down the skeletons is nothing but a clean punch. In no time, Katal takes out every skeleton that the lich sends his way. In fact, Katal is disappointed because the skeletons are not stronger than the ones in the dungeon. He believed that the lich would at least control the skeletons with his power. The lich is left in total shock, and he decides that it is time to finally crush Katal. Using his amazing power, the lich raises a skeleton knight. Katal is excited to see another skeleton knight in action. He wonders if the skeleton knight will operate just like the one he fought in the dungeon. The skeleton knight runs at Katal, and Katal meets the skeleton halfway with a punch to the middle part of its body. Even though Katal landed a sure hit on the skeleton knight, it managed to survive. Katal is glad that the skeleton knight is much better than the one he fought in the dungeon. The lich is maxing out his mana to make sure the skeleton knight remains functional. The skeleton makes another run at Kettle, and this time, it is faster. This time, Katal aims for the skeleton's head and crushes it with a single hit. The lich is ultimately stunned, leaving him to wonder just who Katal is. He has assessed Katal and realizes that there is no sign of mysticism coming from him. In addition to this, he doesn't think Katal is using any artifact because he would have sensed the mana from it. The lich comes to the bitter realization that Katal is relying on his brute strength. The lich admits that Katal is special, and because of this, he decides to take on Katal himself. The lich unleashes his dark aura, which envelops the entire area. Kettle is amazed, but the lich mistakes his amazement for fear. The lich tells Katal to prepare himself to be crushed since he wandered into his domain. Katal argues that he didn't wander, but was invited by the orb he saw. He blames the lich for this, since he was the one who spread the orb everywhere. The lich then shuts Kettle up, telling him that he is the great sorcerer, Kartos. He once brought the kingdoms to their knees, and he is ready to do it again. He plans to use Kettle as the cornerstone for his resurrection. Kartos then hits Kettle with a spell that manipulates human emotions. This spell draws out the negative feelings in humans, shattering their minds in the process. Once Kartos believes that Kettle is under his influence, he prepares to take Katal into his study so that he can know more about him. Kartos orders one of his skeletons to subdue Katal, but suddenly, Katal kicks the skeleton into the air, shattering it. Kartos almost pees his pants when he sees this. Kartos doesn't want to believe that Katal was able to fight off his mind control spell, which should have worked perfectly. Katal is disappointed in Kartos for sending his minions to their deaths without trying to fight. Katal tells Kartos that his tactics are pretty boring. Katal's words pierce Kartos' soul and body. Since humans are creatures that are driven by emotions, Kartos believes that the spell he used on Katal should have worked. Katal then suggests that Kartos use fireball magic instead of mind control. This gets Kartos mad as he believes that his magic is superior to the type of magic Katal is suggesting that he use. Kartos then resorts to a powerful spell. He consumes the entire room in the spell just to make sure that Katal is completely engulfed. Kartos also used all of his mana to make sure that the spell was successful. He is confident that no matter how strong Katal is, he definitely fell to his last attack. When the dust clears, Kartos freezes in fear when he sees Katal standing in front of him, completely fine. Katal even mocks him, asking him if he has tried everything that he wants to. Kartos is left in a state of shock and horror since the spell he used is the most powerful spell in his book. This is a spell that makes heroes bow down, but somehow Katal is still standing. Kettle walks up to Kartos, telling him how disappointed he is. He unsheathes his axe as he tells Kartos that it is his turn to bring in the heat. Kartos then starts assuming the wrong things. He says Katal came specifically to kill him. He believed that the Empire managed to track him down and they sent Katal to annihilate him. Apparently Kartos heard that there is a facility in the Empire where they train people to be more brutal. Kartos believes that this is where Katal came from, as he has been specially designed to take him down. However, Kartos is not ready to back down. He plans to kill Katal and take over the Empire using his body. Kartos' essence then flows from inside his life vessel and settles into Katal's body in an attempt to take over his body. He plans to use Katal's body for the rest of his life, but suddenly, Kartos realizes that he is in a mess. Inside Katal's mental realm, Kartos finds nothing related to the Empire, and to make things worse for him, he doesn't have a space to plant his roots inside Katal's mind. Not being able to sustain himself inside Katal's mind, Kartos fades away. Kettle stands there confused and disappointed that Kartos didn't offer him more of a fight since he is supposed to be the final form of a mage. Kettle concludes that the liches in this fantasy world are not that impressive. Since he has defeated Kartos, Katal decides to pack the rewards in the room. He picks up Kartos' staff and he removes the gem from the staff. Katal plans to keep the gem to himself and not tell anyone. He also finds a jug that appears to be Kartos' life vessel. He plans to take it back to the guild so that Rosa can appraise it. After Katal is done gathering all the rewards in the room, he prepares to leave, but he keeps getting the idea that something is off. He decides to take a second look around the room, and this is when he discovers a secret chamber. He breaks through the barrier and enters the chamber. Inside the chamber are people who have been captured by Kartos. However, they all remained motionless, mute since Kartos' spell is in effect. Katal tries to get them to move, but his attempts fail. Since he doesn't know how to help them, he decides that he will return to the guild and inform them about his discovery. Moments later, Katal shows up at the guild, holding the rewards he found in Kartos' chamber. Rosa is excited to see Katal, as she is expecting him to request for tasks, but Katal reveals that something came up. Rosa becomes curious, and Kettle reveals that the situation that came up is about the orb that he found the day before. He explains everything to Rosa, who immediately doubts his story. Apparently, there are only 5 liches in the world, and she is not confused that one of them would choose to settle close to their territory. Since Rosa doesn't want to believe him, Katal shows him the life vessel he brought with him and suggests that she appraise it. Rosa appraises the life vessel, and it finally dawns on her that Katal is telling the truth. Katal explains further, telling Rosa that there are still people in Kartos' chambers. He lets her know that he couldn't help them, which is why he left them there. This is when it dawns on Rosa that there have been cases of missing persons lately, and they have not been able to find any of them. Rosa realizes that the situation is even more delicate than she thought. She immediately reaches out to the captain of the guard, who runs over on short notice. Katal assures the captain that there is nothing to worry about since he has taken care of the situation. The captain is horrified when he learns that Katal went up against the evil Kartos. Everyone knows Kartos as the magician who almost destroyed the world 100 years ago. He developed a spell that messes with emotion, and he used this to cause chaos everywhere. The captain cannot believe that Kartos somehow became a lich, but he is even more surprised when Katal says Kartos is not powerful. Katal also mentions that Kartos self-destructed, but didn't mention the part where he was trying to take over his mind, which is why he self-destructed. The captain wants a detailed explanation, but Katal says there is nothing more to say about it. After hearing everything Katal has to say, the captain heads to the Lord's castle to report to him. The captain explains everything to Luke and also includes the testimony of the already rescued victims from Kartos' chamber. Luke is worried that the Empire might dispatch investigators to check out the territory if they find out that a lich has settled in the territory. He is more worried that everything is going south when Cain is not available. Luke then decides to send a message to the kingdom. Luke and the captain consider the territory lucky because they would have fallen victim to Kartos' wrath if Katal had not discovered his hideout. Luke knows that Katal's deeds deserve an award, but he is not sure if his territory has the resources to provide such an award. The next day, Luke wakes up to the news of something shocking. He is informed that the heretic inquisitor of the sun god, who goes by the name Aquaz, has just shown up in the territory. Luke is shocked to hear this. In panic, he starts to question why Aquaz is in the territory. Later that day, Luke meets with Aquaz. Aquaz thanks Luke for the hospitality even though she didn't inform him beforehand. Apparently, Aquaz is the youngest to hold the title of the sun god inquisitor. She took down 7 warlocks who made pacts with demons, and she by herself stopped a large-scale ritual from happening. She is currently the most formidable inquisitor on the continent. To show how influential she is, even the Empire bows to the sun god's order whenever she is present. She basically transcends every other rank on the continent, leaving Luke to wonder why someone of such status would come to his territory. Aquaz reveals that she heard some interesting things about the territory. Luke assures Aquaz that they have resolved the issue of the dungeon, and he uses this to figure out if she knows about the Lich or not. He is relieved when he realizes that Aquaz has no idea about the issue of the Lich. Luke then asks the Inquisitor why she is in the territory. Aquaz reveals that she is there to speak to Luke about the Oracle. However, she wants confirmation about the things happening in the territory before she divulges what the Oracle said. Luke then explained everything to Aquaz, including the presence of Catal in the territory. He also mentions the fact that Catal defeated the Lich who was Kartos. He shows Aquaz Kartos' life vessel as proof that he is not lying, and this is enough to get the lady's attention. Things are more serious than she anticipated, and he immediately demands to see Catal. Aquaz also learns from Luke that Catal is from the White Snowfield. She is surprised that something from the demon realm has suddenly decided to emerge into the human world. In addition to the fact that Catal defeated Kartos, Aquaz believes that she must have been sent to the territory because of Catal. Meanwhile, Catal is in his room, staring at the jewel he took from Kartos' chambers. He figures that it is some sort of artifact that uses magic, but he doesn't know much about it. He plans to ask any mage he finds about the artifact. Just then, the captain shows up at his door, telling him that Aquaz would like to see him at the church. Catal wastes no time getting himself ready. He joins the captain, and together they head to the church of the sun god. The captain leaves Catal at the entrance, telling him that someone will guide him once he enters the building. He enters and is welcomed by 3 sisters. They offer to take him to the room where Aquaz is waiting for him. Catal meets Aquaz and they get the introductions out of the way. Catal takes a good look at Aquaz and realizes that she is young but skilled. He smiles after making this deduction, and Aquaz notices, leaving her to wonder why Catal is smiling. Catal then asks the lady why she invited him. Aquaz reveals that she invited Catal because of his encounter with Kartos, the evil one. Aquaz doesn't seem to believe Catal's story, but Catal lets her know that he has no way of proving what he saw and encountered. Aquaz then suggests that they allow the sun god to observe their conversation. Catal is confused by what the lady meant, and she explains that any lie will trigger a negative reaction. Catal realizes that Aquaz is talking about a divine lie detector. Deep down, Aquaz believes that Catal will reject the proposition since this is the way of the barbarians. She then tells Catal that he is free to decline, but Catal shocks her when he reveals that he has no interest in declining. This is a chance for Catal to witness the power of a god, and he is not about to pass it up. He excitedly tells Aquaz that they should start with the process. Aquaz asks him if he is bothered about the suggestion, but he says no. Catal says he is going to get a chance to see a god watch over him, so it is a good deal for him. Catal assures Aquaz that he has nothing to hide and he hasn't told a single lie from the start. Once they are both in agreement, Aquaz proceeds. She recites a chant to invite the sun god to observe the conversation between her and Catal. A bright light appears from above, radiating upon Catal. Catal feels the god's presence from beyond the light, creating different emotions in him. When everything calms down, Aquaz is relieved that there was no negative reaction. She then tells Catal that the real conversation is about to begin while the sun god observes. She lets him know that all lies are forbidden, and Catal assures her that he is ready and on board. Once Aquaz gets a positive reaction, she realizes that Catal wasn't lying, but she assumes that Kartos was unable to use his magic, or else Catal wouldn't have survived. She considers him a lucky dude, and once Catal figures out that she is done with her inquisition, he asks her if she has cleared her doubts already, and she says yes, urging Catal to forgive her rudeness. Catal assures her that he has nothing to be angry about because he enjoyed the entire procedure too. Aquaz then asks Catal if she is free to ask him one more thing, and he assures her that she can. Aquaz proceeds to ask him the burning question in her mind, and this is whether Catal is truly from the White Snowfield. Catal is surprised that she even doubts him in the first place, and he assures her that he is from the Snowfields. Since they are exchanging questions, Kettle tells Aquaz that he also has a question for her. Kettle asks her why she came to the territory, and Aquaz mentions that she has some personal business. Kettle then asks if the said personal business was to confirm that he is an evil person. Aquaz initially tries to play a fool to say she doesn't know what Kettle is talking about, but then she remembers that they are under the gaze of God, and lies are not permitted. She is forced to tell Kettle that he is not entirely wrong with his deduction. Aquaz says there was a divine revelation when she arrived in the territory, and she believed Kettle was the subject of the revelation. But it turns out that she was wrong. Aquaz apologizes for hiding her intentions from Kettle, but Kettle doesn't mind because he enjoyed the way everything has been so far. Kettle then asks one more thing, and he mentions his curiosity about what the divine revelation said. Even though they are not allowed to share the contents of a divine revelation with anyone they don't fully trust, Aquaz feels the need to tell Kettle. Aquaz splits open the hidden divine revelation to Kettle, ultimately shocking him. Later on, Aquaz meets with Luke, and he can clearly see that she seems troubled. Aquaz tells Luke that she has met Kettle, but her interaction with him only left her even more confused. Luke then asks her what kind of species Kettle is, and Aquaz confirms that he is a barbarian from the snowfield. Luke is surprised to hear this, and Aquaz says she might not have gotten detailed information about the snowfields, but it is confirmed that he is truly from there. Deep down, Luke was expecting Kettle's claim to be a lie, but with Aquaz's confirmation, it appears that he wasn't lying. Luke knows that the world will lose its mind if they ever find out that Kettle is truly from the snowfields, because there are many people who are interested in the snowfields. Luke is hit with a sense of fear when he realizes just how chaotic things would be if the Emperor decides to make a move. Aquaz then tells Luke that he has nothing to worry about because they are going to handle Kartos' case. And in addition, they are going to make sure that Kettle's presence doesn't get to the public. Luke is relieved to hear this, but at the same time, he is worried that all the barbarians in the wastelands are like Kettle. He quickly trashes the thought because they definitely would have already left the snowfields in an attempt to conquer the world. It is common knowledge that barbarians are incredibly strong, but they are dumb upstairs. However, Luke knows how catastrophic it is going to be if the barbarians manage to gain intelligence. Luke then tells Aquaz that he heard about the current king of the barbarians and the fact that he is different. Basically, he is one who has both strength and intellect, and Aquaz says she has only met the barbarian king just once. However, Aquaz confirms Luke's thoughts, saying the king is definitely different from his other gullible subjects. Luke then tells Aquaz that it would be a big deal if Kettle and the said king are to meet. Apparently, the relationship between the barbarians and those who serve the gods is shaky, which is why their growing power is concerning. Luke suddenly asks Aquaz about the divine revelation and why she had to meet Kettle alone. Aquaz then replies that she had to confirm something, but this only gets Luke more curious, asking her what she wanted to confirm. Aquaz replies that she needed to know if Kettle is human or just a demon pretending to be. Luke asks about the revelation again, and Aquaz finally caves in, telling him about the hidden and powerful revelation. Luke has the same reaction just like Kettle, leaving him to start questioning why something like that would have happened. Later on, Luke meets Kettle, and Kettle thanks him for the warm hospitality that he has provided for him in the territory. Kettle then asks Luke why he summoned him, and Luke mentions that there is something he needs to tell him. However, before that, Luke thanks Kettle for keeping the territory safe from Kartos. Luke is pretty sure that the territory would have been wiped out if Kartos had gotten the chance to organize himself. Suddenly, Luke starts to apologize, and Kettle wonders why the dude is apologizing to him. Luke drops the bombshell that Kettle's achievement against Kartos will not be made known to the public. Apparently, Kettle defeating Kartos is a really big achievement, but Luke knows that they can't allow the Emperor to know about this. It is pretty obvious that the Emperor is going to take things into his hands if he ever finds out about this. Luke hopes that Kettle will be able to give up his glory for this. Luke is shocked when Kettle tells him that he really doesn't care. Luke then informs him that he has prepared a reward for him for saving the territory as a way of apologizing. Just then, a leather pouch is dropped on the table for Kettle, and he is informed that it belongs to him. However, Luke assures him that it is not an ordinary pouch, but he would have to check himself to confirm this. Kettle opens it, and he realizes that it is a pocket-type artifact where he can store items according to the size of the pocket space. Luke mentions that the space in the pouch is approximately the size of the room they are currently sitting in. Kettle is absolutely blown away by the pouch, since it's his first time seeing one in person. Luke explains that even if the item is bigger than the leather pocket's opening, he can still put it in. Luke then decides to test it out by trying to place his giant axe inside the pouch. When trying to put it in, it appears that it would not enter, but suddenly the axe gets sucked into the pouch. Luke then tells him that whenever he wants to take things out of the pouch, he should just think of it. Kettle tries it out, and it works just like the way Luke said it would, ultimately shocking him. Luke mentions that the pouch is his reward for saving the territory, and he hopes that Kettle likes it. Kettle gladly tells Luke that he likes the pouch, and he promises to make sure he puts it to good use. Luke is relieved to hear that Catal likes the pouch, meaning that he has just one thing to worry about. He remembers Aquaz telling him about the revelation. Apparently, a great evil will descend on the territory, and surprisingly, Cain had told him that monsters were appearing out of nowhere. To make it worse, the evil will descend on the territory before spreading to the rest of the world. The Barkan territory has many villages that are organically connected, and because of this, the villages keep in contact with each other. But then suddenly one of the villages stopped responding. People didn't initially notice this, but after a few days of no contact, people were sent from a nearby village to check. The scouts sent to check also didn't return, and the Lord sent guards to confirm what was happening. However, the result remains the same, and then suddenly, the Lord realizes that something sinister is happening. When Catal visits the guild, he learns about the village that lost contact. Catal is told to go there and confirm what is happening, and it turns out that the reward for the mission is quite high. Catal immediately takes an interest in the mission, and he takes the job because of this. When preparing for the mission, Catal surprisingly prepares a new outfit, shocking Hayes. Catal says the one he is wearing is getting torn, and he needs a new one. Hayes compliments the outfit, saying it has a unique design. It turns out that Hayes has come to join Catal on the mission, but he is surprised that the other two members are absent. Hayes tells Catal that they must have intentionally refused the mission, since it was communicated to them. Catal also notices that other adventurers going on the mission are quite few, unlike what he was expecting, since the reward money is huge. He takes a head count, and he realizes that there are not even up to 10 adventurers opting for the mission. Hayes then tells him that the mission is a bit difficult, and Catal is shocked to hear this. Catal says the mission is pretty simple, and Hayes agrees with him, but the rumors about guards going and not coming back make things complicated. Kettle then says no matter how difficult and dangerous the mission appears to be, he was expecting at least 10 people to show up. This is when Hayes mentions that there is another rumor that has surfaced. In a shocking turn of events, it appears Aquaz will be accompanying them on the mission. Because of this, most adventurers backed out because they were obviously scared of her. Even Hayes is scared that Aquaz might just smash her head open, but Catal assures her that she has nothing to worry about because Aquaz is actually polite and kind. Hayes is shocked by the way Catal is complimenting Aquaz, forcing her to ask if he knows the lady, and he says yes. Kettle mentions that Aquaz is his friend, but this further adds to Hayes' shock and disbelief. Just then, the said person of interest shows up, and Kettle addresses her as his friend, but Aquaz burns him, saying she doesn't remember becoming friends with Catal. Catal smiles in embarrassment and finally summons the courage to ask Aquaz if she would like to be his friend. Before giving her answer, she asks Catal if Hayes is a worshipper of the god, Colossia, which is an entirely different god from the one she serves. Kettle is shocked when he realizes that Aquaz has easily sensed Hayes' faith. He then asks her if there is any problem with Hayes serving another god, but Aquaz says no, since the followers of Colossia are currently on a rest period. However, those in high-ranking positions can move freely. While Catal and Aquaz are busy discussing this, Hayes stands in the distance, crippled with nervousness. Momentarily, the guard captain shows up to welcome the adventurers who accepted the request. Once he makes sure that everyone is prepared, he suggests that they get a move on. As they make their way to the village, Catal compares it to a raid. He then asks Aquaz if she thinks the time of evil has come, since she has decided to make a move. Aquaz replies that she cannot answer the question because she doesn't have an answer to it. Apparently, her god didn't reveal an exact time when the evil would happen. Aquaz doesn't want to freak out yet because she thinks the village losing contact might actually be a simple issue. However, there is a slight possibility that it is related. Catal, on the other hand, is totally excited about the entire prophecy because he wants to see where it leads. Soon afterward, they arrive at the village, and everything appears normal. Aquaz mentions that she can't sense anything coming from the village, and the captain assumes that the villagers ran away. The captain orders the adventurers to spread out to look for tracks. The captain is pretty sure that there is a clue somewhere because there is no way an entire village disappeared without a trace. Moments later, one of the adventurers runs over to inform the captain that he found food in one of the houses. The captain doesn't think this is a big deal because the villagers might have left it behind before vanishing. However, the adventurer tells him that he is wrong because the food is still warm, as if it has just been prepared. The captain is shocked to hear this, and when he enters the house, it is just as the adventurer said. The captain remembers that contact with the village has been lost for days, and none of the emissaries that were sent came back. The captain then asks the adventurer if there was any sign when he found the food, but he says no. The captain says there is no single sign of people leaving or even hiding. The captain then tells the adventurer to keep looking. It is evident that there are signs of life, but there is no single trace of humans anywhere. Moments later, the captain gets a report from other adventurers, and they inform him that the situation is basically the same everywhere. There is proof that there were humans in the village until recently, but there is no single trace of life. The captain then turns to Aquaz. asking her if she knows anything, and she says no. He also asks Katal, but his answer is the same as Aquaz's. The captain is already going crazy about everything, and Katal suggests that they ask the one close to them. The captain believes he is going mad when he says this, but Katal suddenly mentions that there is someone in the distance, and Katal is surprised that they can't see the said person. Just then, the captain looks harder and realizes that there is a strange woman standing in front of them. This catches the captain's attention because the woman wasn't there when they initially entered the village. The moment the lady senses that she has been found out, she smiles, asking Katal how he was able to see her, since she was under perfect camouflage. Katal tells her that there is no way he is not going to notice the sudden appearance of a stranger. The woman argues with him, saying he is not supposed to even perceive her presence. She mentions that Aquaz wasn't even able to sense her presence, but it was Katal who did. Because of how Katal is able to easily pull this off, the strange lady is forced to ask him who he is. The captain is gripped with fear and he orders everyone to spread around. He turns to see Aquaz frozen in one place with fear, talking about how she senses nothing. This immediately sends fear down to the rest of the group because Aquaz is the inquisitor of the highest existing church, and she was unable to sense anything. This basically means that there are two explanations for it. It's either that the lady is not demonic, or she is of a higher demonic standard that is way above everyone else's level. Just then, the strange lady mentions that she finds Kettle interesting and would have loved to follow him and see his domain. The lady concludes that Kettle is an amusing barbarian, and she immediately transforms into her scary demonic form, while telling Katal of her plan to drag him to hell as her personal slave. She snaps her fingers, and a dark aura envelops the entire area, scaring the entire group to their bones. The other adventurers waste no time turning back to run, but they couldn't, since the demon had placed a barrier around them. She mentions that they are now in her domain, where none of them will be able to escape. She mentions that they are all her prey, but while she is smiling and thinking of how to consume them, the adventurers are panicking. Hayes is pissing her body because a demon is the last thing she expected to see. Katal, on the other hand, is totally clueless because he hasn't seen a demon before. Hayes tells Katal that the demon standing in front of them is dangerous because it even has a name. Hayes immediately starts praying to her god to save her, but Kettle pats her on the head, telling her to calm herself. Kettle assures her that he is by her side, and since he has no idea what Hayes means by a demon with a name, he decides to ask her. Even in their dire situation, Hayes offers to explain. Apparently, not every being called a demon in this world is powerful, since they are all referred to as demons just for the sake of it. In everything, there are only fragments of evil and demonic energy, but there are certain beings who are without a doubt called demons. The demons are born in the dark with no parents, and of their own volition, they claim a name for themselves. Hayes says no matter how weak the demons are, as long as they are with the ones with names, they have more than enough power to make a kingdom tremble. After her explanation, Katal finally puts it all together that the demon in front of them is a named demon. Hayes explains that a demon with horns shaped like the one they are staring at is a Setiar. She was a demon who appeared centuries ago, but Hayes wonders why such a powerful demon would show herself in the remote village. Kettle touches the barrier and notices that it is solid, and Hayes mentions that they can't break it because the entire village is already the demon's territory. Hayes says the only way to get out of their precarious situation is to defeat the demon. Katal finally understands everything, but instead of acting right away, Katal decides that he is just going to watch a bit longer. Hayes is surprised to see Katal joking around when they are all fighting for their lives. On the other hand, Aquaz and Asetiar are having a discussion about their situation. Asetiar smiles while saying Aquaz is supposed to be intrigued with the presence of life in the village, but with no humans. Asetiar mentions that it is a simple demon trick, which is employed in toying with people. Aquaz is visibly pissed, but the demon couldn't care less. While the two are arguing with each other, Katal is busy enjoying the show as if he is on a cinema date with his popcorn in hand. Since it's a named demon, to summon it would have required a bulk load of sacrifice, and it is pretty evident that there is no way a small village would be enough for the sacrifice. The fact that the demon even claimed her territory without anyone noticing is considered basically impossible. Aquaz is left with the desperate question of how the demon was able to descend into the world. Asetiar laughs at Aquaz, letting her know that there is no way she is telling him how she was able to emerge into the world. Aquaz calls Asetiar a filthy dog, but Asetiar has a laugh about it before turning to Aquaz with all seriousness to ask her if she really thinks her god can save her. The demon then tells Aquaz that the world is fracturing already, and it no longer belongs to the humans alone. Apparently, several centuries ago, humans and the gods joined hands to fight against evil, and this resulted in the victory of the gods and humans. The moment the evil was defeated, it was banished from the world. Asetiar then tells Aquaz that she has been waiting for the day she is going to emerge again. Asetiar is known as the demon of gravity, and she plans to start the war all over again. But this time, she is aiming for victory. Aquaz angrily tells Asetir that she has no right to do this, because the world belongs to humans and the gods alone. Aquaz starts cooking up her magic while urging Asetir to return to the hell where she emerged. Enraged, Aquaz summons her golden battle armor. She looks absolutely gorgeous in it, but Asetir is in no way scared to take her on. Without wasting time, Aquaz charges toward the demon and tries to smite her with her weapon, but she dodges while toying with her. The clash between the two leaves the weaklings grabbing their ears in pain. Asetir then decides to fully play with Aquaz by whipping out her own weapon. Aquaz dashes toward the demon, but before she can even reach her, she suddenly vanishes out of sight. She reappears behind Aquaz and swings her weapon at her, ready to crush her, but Aquaz manages to react just in time to block the attack from coming into fruition. However, her shield feels the intense pressure from Asetir's attack, and she gets pushed backwards. Realizing that she is about to lose to the demon's immense strength, Aquaz taps into her material powers, the Holy Scriptures, to quote some verses to empower. This increases her strength, forcing Asetir to retreat. Asetir is impressed that Aquaz has what it takes to read the Holy Scriptures, even though she is still very young. Aquaz is not ready to slow down as she quotes another verse in the Scriptures to increase her mana output. With the new power pulsing in her, she dashes toward Asetir in an attempt to strike her down. However, Asetir leaps backward before launching a counterattack that sends Aquaz on her back. With sweat running down her face, Aquaz can feel the immense strength that the demon possesses. However, she is not done yet, as she resumes her full-on attack mode. The two clash with each other halfway, leaving a huge level of destruction that shatters the ground like a nuke. Even the onlookers feel the intense pressure of the battle unfolding right in front of them. While everyone else is panicking and trying to make it to safety, Katal is enjoying every bit of the moment. Hayes notices how hyped he is, and she suggests that he help Aquaz. Katal admits that it is easy for him to help Aquaz, but he suddenly hits Hayes with the surprising question of why he should help her in the first place. Kettle says he is only going to interfere and ruin the fight, and his words shock Hayes. Katal admits that he also has a strong desire to fight a demon, but he would prefer to observe the fight first. Hayes almost loses her mind when she hears this because everything Katal is saying doesn't even sound right. Meanwhile, the fight between the two drama queens continues, and Asetir figures out that she has the edge when it comes to raw power, but Aquaz is also tough, thanks to the gods backing her. Suddenly, Aquaz lands a powerful hit that sends Asetir to her knees, shocking her. Asetir is forced to make a retreat because she can clearly see that the battle is just going to drag on if she doesn't take things to the extreme. She figures out that she has to use a dark method if she wants to win. Suddenly, she turns away from Aquaz and she dashes toward the helpless adventurers watching the fight in the distance. Before she gets the chance to kill them, Aquaz catches up to her and blocks the attack with her shield. Aquaz is pissed that the demon is trying to take crude ways to get her victory. Asetir laughs hysterically, asking Aquaz if she was seriously expecting a demon like herself to fight free and fair. This only makes Aquaz angrier, and she taps into another verse from the Holy Scriptures. The verse that she uses creates a protective domain, and she tells the adventurers to enter the domain so that they can be safe. The adventurers waste no time running into the domain, and Asetir laughs at Aquaz, asking Aquaz if she's really doing the right thing with the Holy Scripture. Aquaz screams at her to keep her mouth shut before dashing toward her with more anger than before. Asetir also flies toward Aquaz, but just as they are able to hit each other, Asetir leaps into the air, while telling Aquaz that her efforts are simply going to waste. Asetir urges Aquaz to get rid of the holy domain that she is using to protect the adventurers if she wants to have a chance at defeating her. Aquaz is shocked by the sudden and stupid request that Asetir is making of her. Realizing that Aquaz is not ready to cooperate, Asetir decides that annihilating her is the way forward. Asetir leaps into the air and finally shows what it means to be serious in battle. She unleashes a dark, powerful aura from her body that overwhelms Aquaz, and while she is trying to stay on her feet, Asetir dashes toward her. Aquaz almost gets hit, but at the last second she moves out of the way. Asetir's attack hits the ground, shattering it into pieces. However, Asetir is not done yet, as she makes her way toward Aquaz, looking all menacing and dangerous. Fear grips Aquaz as she finds herself in the middle of a really terrifying power. She tries to recite the scriptures to try and get herself out, but Asetir grabs her mouth shut to stop her. Asetir knocks Aquaz to the ground and overwhelms her. However, before she can get the chance to finish Aquaz off, Aquaz manages to get back on her feet to block the attack with her shield. Even with her struggles, Asetir maintains the upper hand, and Aquaz soon finds herself bound by Asetir's dark chains. As Aquaz loses hold of her power, the shield she created for the adventurers starts to crack too. The adventurer immediately concludes that they are all going to die with the way things are going. Asetir even smiles at them, telling them how she plans to eat them as snacks once she is done with the annoying Aquaz. She drags Aquaz close, ready to bite down on her neck just so she can get a taste of what the god's servant is. Suddenly, Ketal grabs Asetiar on the shoulders, telling her that she has done enough. Asetiar is totally shocked when she sees Ketal suddenly standing beside her because she didn't even get the chance to sense his presence. Ketal grabs Asetiar, and he throws her off like a tennis ball. Asetiar hits the ground, leaving a loud explosion and destruction. Aquaz is shocked when she sees this, but it then dawns on her that Ketal is fiercely strong because he was able to easily defeat Cain, the powerful swordsmaster. Just then, Asetiar gets back on her feet, talking about how pissed she is that Ketal interrupted her delicious meal. Ketal casually tells Asetiar that Aquaz is his friend, and he can't just stand by to let her die. Asetiar is enraged when she hears this, and she lets Ketal know that he has finally crossed the line. She wanted to keep him as her toy before, but Ketal quickly clears the air, saying he has no interest in becoming Asetiar's toy. Asetiar pulls out her weapon, ready to send Ketal to the afterlife, since he is stubborn enough to defy her. Ketal then turns to Aquaz, telling her to step back, but Aquaz is skeptical, and she tells Ketal that he can't defeat Asetiar. Ketal then tells Aquaz that he might not look like it, but he is quite strong. Aquaz then replies that it is not a case of being strong or not, because only divine power has what it takes to banish a demon from the world. Aquaz claims that this has been the law since the beginning of time, when evil and gods existed. In addition to this, Aquaz believes that they have no chance at all because they are in the demon's territory. With her explanation, Ketal asks her if she is saying only a god can defeat a demon. Ketal is not ready to argue with her deductions, but he reminds her that she is currently in a bad shape, and in her current shape, there is really nothing she can do. Aquaz insists that she is the only one who can, since she is the servant of a god. Ketal is impressed with Aquaz's determination, even though she is badly beaten. He pats her on the head for being courageous, but urges her to leave the fight to him. Ketal smiles while saying it is one of his dreams to fight a demon. Asetiar laughs when she hears this, telling Ketal that he has no chance at defeating him. Ketal then asks her if she is ready to test out her theory. Asetiar takes it up, and she creates a portal right in front of Ketal to get to him in an attempt to catch him off guard. Asetiar looks totally menacing as she prepares to land a hit on Ketal. Aquaz freezes in fear when she sees this, but unknown to her, Ketal is getting his punch ready. Just as Asetiar gets close to him, Ketal makes his move, and he completely removes Asetiar's head with just a punch, leaving Aquaz in total disbelief. Aquaz stands still in silence, trying to piece together whether Ketal just smashed the demon's head with a single punch. Ketal is also surprised, but suddenly Asetiar's demon core helps her regenerate, and this time, she looks more pissed. She angrily asks Ketal what he is, and Ketal replies that he is nothing more than a simple barbarian. Asetiar doesn't believe this, and she employs her demon eyes to check Ketal's buildup. She is surprised to see that Ketal truly has no mana or aura, meaning he is just an ordinary human. She decides to thoroughly check things to know if she is wrong or not. She opens a portal, and she appears behind Ketal with the hope of striking him down. Ketal feels bad about having to strike an enemy that appears to be in human form, but he knows that he has no choice because it can't be helped. This time around, Ketal punches through Asetiar's chest, shocking Asetiar herself. She screams in pain, and Ketal throws her into the distance with blood spilling out of her mouth. Asetiar finds herself on the ground, utterly wounded from just a single punch. She can't believe that a regular punch that is not strengthened by aura or magic has what it takes to really damage her. Even with the severe damage to her body, Asetiar still has what it takes to regenerate. This gets Ketal really curious, and he dashes toward Asetiar at a blinding speed that leaves his launch area shattered. Asetiar senses him coming, but she doesn't have what it takes to react. She can only watch as Ketal gets to her and punches her head into the ground. She loses her head again, but just like before, she regenerates. Ketal finally figures out that whenever her entire head goes off, she gets a new body. This leaves Ketal wondering if Asetiar's core is in her head. On the other hand, Asetiar is pissed that Ketal is trying to fight her with brute strength. Asetiar then decides to open her big mouth to mock Ketal, telling him that he has no chance against her with just brute strength. Ketal then claps back, telling Asetiar that her power doesn't appear to be all that impressive, and this totally crushes Asetiar's pride as a demon. Asetiar loses herself in rage, and she angrily dashes toward Ketal, ready to smack him with her big mallet. However, Ketal proves just how insane he is again by easily blocking Asetiar's weapon like there is no force behind it. With ease, Ketal breaks through the weapon before punching her head off again. Just as usual, she regenerates, but she is starting to get frustrated with the regular punches she is suffering from Ketal. She knows that at full power, she can imbue a hammer with the weight of fortress walls, but Ketal easily blocked it and broke it like it was nothing. She can't believe that Ketal is just a simple barbarian with no idea of what mysticism is. Frustrated, Asetir unleashes a long-range attack at Ketal, but he easily blocks it. Ketal's fist is able to send a counter-wave through the demon's attack. This shatters the attack pretty easily, shocking her and even Aquaz. Centuries ago, Asetir was so powerful that she took down a kingdom with ease, but here she is struggling against a mere barbarian with nothing but punches. Ketal manages to beat Asetir down so badly that he even places his leg on her, but he has confirmed the fact that demons can't die from brute strength. While she is getting pinned down, Asetir honestly asks Ketal what he is because he has a crazy amount of power. Ketal replies that he is just a simple barbarian, but she is not ready to believe this one bit. Since Ketal appears to be all-powerful, she decides to try out something crazy. She dashes into the air and releases a massive and overwhelming aura while telling Ketal of her plan to shatter him with every power that she possesses. Instead of being scared, Ketal is excited that he is finally getting to see what demon power truly looks like. Meanwhile, Aquaz is ready to help with the fight because Ketal's raw strength won't be enough. Asetir unleashes sharp spikes at Ketal, but he easily throws all of them off with his axe. Asetir is left stunned because of just how easily Ketal is doing it. She's still trying to wrap her head around this when Ketal runs toward her at great speed. At the same time, Aquaz imbues Ketal's axe with divine power. Ketal is blown away because it is his first time witnessing the power of a god.
Aquaz then tells Ketal to take Asetir down with the axe. Even though Ketal wants to see more of the demon, he knows that he can't waste any more time. Before making his move, Ketal lets Asetir know that she actually put up a good fight. Asetir watches in horror as Ketal lands a fatal blow on her chest with the axe. Without overthinking it, Asetir figures out that she has lost. Ketal's overwhelming strength, including the divine power, is enough to put Asetir in the dirt. As she fades back into hell, Ketal tells her that she provided good entertainment for him. Even though she lost, Asetir believes that she was able to take one thing back with her to hell. And this is the fact that someone as strong as Ketal exists. Asetir asks him for his name, and Ketal foolishly reveals it before Aquaz can stop him. Without wasting time, Asetir announces to everyone in hell to be wary of Ketal. She tells the other demons to feast on her memories about Ketal, and the moment Aquaz hears this, she freaks out. A giant ball of eyes appears right above Ketal to try and overwhelm, but Ketal absorbs it like it's nothing. Asetir is totally stunned when she sees this, because Ketal should have been torn to shreds. Before she can pull off further stunts, Asetir finally disappears into dust. Ketal feels nothing, and he just stretches his body in relaxation that they are done with the mission. In the Barcan territory, in the kingdom of Gehentra, news starts spreading around about the village they lost contact with. When Luke hears about Asetir's involvement in what happened, he almost loses his mind. He can't believe that they just finished dealing with a lich, and a demon appeared right after. Luke cannot believe that a mere tiny region is getting hit with several calamities over and over again. The captain tells Luke that the rumor is already spreading across the region. Luke thinks the only positive out of everything that has happened so far is the fact that Aquaz was able to send the demon back to hell. Luke concludes that their next step is to find a way to handle the current crisis. Meanwhile, Aquaz is weak, and Ketal is the one watching over her. When she managed to gather a bit of strength, she stood up to leave, saying there was no time to waste because she needed to make her report to the Holy Land without delay. Since she is adamant, Ketal has no plan to stop her. Just then, Aquaz bows her head to Ketal, thanking him for saving her life. She is pretty sure that she would have been a toy in the hands of the demon if Ketal weren't present. Ketal then shocks her by telling her that she has no reason to thank him because he is simply doing what any friend would do. Since Aquaz hasn't given him an official answer about their friendship status, Ketal asks her again. Aquaz is stunned by the way Ketal casually handles things, and she asks him if he would still like to befriend her even though she is a heretic inquisitor of the sun god. Ketal shocks her by asking if there is any particular reason as to why he shouldn't. Aquaz starts stuttering, and Ketal tells her that she doesn't need to overthink things. Aquaz lets off a little smile before agreeing with Ketal. Ketal then tells Aquaz that there is something he needs to ask her. He wants to know if it is true that one is not allowed to speak a demon's name. Aquaz then reveals that the reason for this is because of something called the mark. Apparently, a demon inscribes a seal of darkness onto the human soul via its name, and this draws malevolent beings toward them. Basically, anyone bearing the mark will become prey sought after by dangerous predators. Those who received the mark in ancient times either got saved by receiving baptism from the gods or were hunted down and killed by the evil. Ketal then asks her if he is marked, but she says no. Nonetheless, she lets him know that his name would have reached the ears of those ruling in hell. Aquaz assures Ketal that he has nothing to worry about because they won't be able to find him without the mark. They only know his name, but they don't know anything else about him. Aquaz says that unless he crosses paths with the demons again, he shouldn't have any issues. Ketal then mentions his worry that the demon could not be killed by brute strength. Aquaz explains to him that this is the true nature of demons. She narrates that after the gods shaped humanity, humans were foolish and ignorant, causing them to act only on instinct. Even with this, the gods did not intervene in the human realm. However, beings from beyond got interested in humanity. They desperately crossed dimensions and started wiping out humans. Tired of the massacre, the gods descended into the human realm. They sided with the humans and named the creatures from beyond demons. With the interference of the gods, the demons were driven out. After this, humanity created a church to honor the gods who saved them. With the help of the divine beings, humanity gained rapid growth. However, as time went on, demons started getting involved in human affairs again. Because of this, the gods chose their followers and granted them power, since demons can only be defeated with divine power. It finally dawns on Cattle that he couldn't defeat the demon because she was from another dimension. Akvaz confirms this, saying the demons never truly belonged in the world. Kettle says it would be catastrophic for demons like a CTR to pop out everywhere. Just then, Akvaz clears the air, saying a named demon cannot appear so easily. However, it appears that the demon realm is suffering, which is affecting the human world. Akvaz then narrates that it all started a year ago. When Akvaz says this, he remembers that he was still in the snowfield trying to complete his quest. After she is tired of talking, Akvaz says it is time for her to leave. She assures Cattle that he is going to receive a great welcome if he ever comes to visit their church. Cattle is glad to hear this, and Akvaz immediately gets into a carriage to leave. Even though she is not fully recovered, she figures out that reporting the issue to the saint is paramount. Although Akvaz wonders why the sun god hasn't released any prophecy concerning Cattle. Later on, Cain heads to the Tower of Magic, where all sorcerers gather. At the tower, he meets one of his colleagues, a suspicious dude with a cool aura. Cain asks him why he is there, and he reveals that he is there to report on his mission. As for Cain, he is also there to report the outcome of his mission, which was a scouting mission into the demon realm. The mission was inside the Forest of Silence, where the laws of the world don't apply. Cain mentions that the things he found in the forest were truly horrifying. Basically, the forest was living up to its name, since there was silence everywhere. Cain mentions that even the sense of magic in the forest couldn't be detected. Cain shouted at his best, not even vibrations echoed back to him. Cain passed out, and when he woke up, the soldiers had started disappearing. The silence in the forest was so terrifying, and it was basically an unpleasant place. Cain wonders why the Emperor would launch a crusade into a place like that. His colleague tells him that the Emperor is most likely after world conquest, which has made him go mad with power. However, the dude believes the demon realm is a really cool place. Nonetheless, Cain is not interested in getting dragged into anything related to the demon realm. Suddenly, the dude snaps his finger, and he catches Cain in a spatial magic, preventing him from escaping his domain. It turns out that he has attached the Eye of Observation to Cain before he knew it. He mentions that he already attached it to his body the last time they met. Since the tracker has been on him for quite some time, Cain wonders what else the sorcerer wants to ask him. The sorcerer mentions that he is actually interested in what Cain thinks about Cattle. Cain replies that he doesn't know everything just yet, and the mage expresses his shock that Cattle was able to defeat Cain, and even Kartos. Cain is surprised when he hears that the Lich was defeated, and the sorcerer tells him that the lord of the region is currently keeping it under wraps so as to prevent panic everywhere. However, the stories of this are already spreading throughout the tower because Kartos, who once put the kingdom in fear, was easily defeated. The sorcerer mentions that he actually paid his respects to Kartos because he was his friend. Cain is surprised to hear this, and the sorcerer says they are friends from old times. However, he is surprised that there is no report on any artifact inside Kartos' lair. Cain asks if all of his artifacts were not recovered, and the sorcerers say most of them were, but the most precious one was missing. The sorcerer then asks Cain about his thoughts on everything. He wants to know if Cain truly believed that Kartos was defeated by Cattle. Cain gives his honest opinion, saying it might actually be possible. The sorcerer then asks him if he has told the Emperor about it, but he says no because the ruler is already wasting money and resources by sending adventurers into the demon realm. He is quite sure that there will be chaos if the Emperor finds out that the Barbarian exists. Cain is pretty sure that things won't end well for the Empire if the two end up clashing. The sorcerer is surprised to hear this, and he asks Cain if he thinks Cattle is strong enough to take on the Empire. Cain replies that he is not sure, but he felt the same terrifying aura that he felt the first time he met the sorcerer. The sorcerer believes Cain is already putting Cattle at the top of the food chain, the hero class. However, Cattle replies that he doesn't have the ability to make such a judgment. After hearing this, the sorcerer mentions that he would like to meet Cain because he appears to be valuable. Later on, Cattle is walking through the market when a lady trips and almost falls, but he catches her. He urges her to be careful, and he gently helps her up. Their eyes meet, and Cattle fears that the lady is just going to run off like everyone else does. Surprisingly, the lady bows and thanks him before leaving. Cattle is still surprised by this until he suddenly realizes something shocking. Everyone in the market is not running away from him, and this is entirely strange. Momentarily, Cattle heads to Luke's palace to talk to him. Luke asks about his well-being because he heard about his encounter with the demon and the fact that she almost branded him. Luke is not worried because he doesn't even know what branding means in the first place. Cattle then tells Luke that he is getting the feeling that things have changed because the people are not running away from him. Luke then mentions that this is happening because of the rumors spreading around. Apparently, the guards and mercenaries who made it back alive spread the story. Apparently, while they were fighting the demon, most of them passed out only to wake up when Cattle was about to deal the finishing blow. They saw Cattle's axe radiating with divine power, causing them to believe that Aquas lent him her powers. This basically earned him the title of the one who fought alongside Aquas to take down the demon. Cattle finally realizes what happened and Luke tries to apologize for the misunderstanding. But Cattle doesn't care. He only cares about the fact that his perception of the people has changed. Luke says they basically see him as someone dangerous to demons. When Cattle returns to the guild, Rosa congratulates him, telling him that he has received an upgrade and he is now C rank. Cattle is shocked to hear this because he just went up 3 levels at once. Rosa tells him that he doesn't need to act all surprised because he actually earned it. Rosa mentions that he will be getting a new mercenary tag, but it might take some time because it is custom made. Basically, Cattle is getting a custom tag because, from C rank, all mercenaries are considered true mercenaries vouched for by the guild. In addition to this, he gets access to most places because he is C rank. He can now enter the kingdom's capital, churches, and other important places without having to go through much trouble. However, the imperial capital is still out of the question of places he can visit. Cattle is surprised to hear this, and he concludes that the empire is quite strict. Rosa mentions that he needs the recognition of a noble to enter the capital. Rosa then whispers, saying no one really knows what is going on inside the capital, but there are some unnerving rumors from there. In fact, the guild has less intel on it than they have on the demon realm. Rosa then moves away from the capital and the rumors, telling Cattle that he can now accept almost any request thanks to the fact that he is now C rank. In fact, he is allowed to enter a ranked dungeons as long as he forms a party. Cattle is glad to hear this because he just got the chance to explore even further. After leaving the guild, Cattle sets up a meeting with his runaway party members. They learn about the fight with the demon, but Cattle assures them that there is nothing to worry about because Aquas already told them that everything is settled. Cassin is surprised at just how powerful Aquas is to have defeated the demon, but deep down, Hayes is boiling on her chair because she is the only one who knows the truth. Hayes didn't pass out like the others, and she got the chance to see just how crazy Cattle really is. He was basically toying with the set here and beating her up like trash. Hayes is pissed that Aquas only swooped in at the last minute to take the credit for the battle. Cassin then asks Cattle what he plans to do since he is now C rank. Cattle says there is nothing different from what he has been doing before because he is just going to continue his job as a mercenary. While the other party members are looking at Cattle as one cool person, Hayes is freaking out because what she witnessed is practically unreal. Cattle then asks the team what their plans are, and they mention that there is nothing for them to do since they are trash F-rank mercenaries. Deep down, Cassin believes he is just going to live out his life as a trash person. However, his mindset has changed, and he tells Cattle that he wants to live his life to the fullest, just like Cattle. Tyrannus wastes no time making fun of the dude, and this sparks another stare down between them. Cattle then asks Hayes what her plans are, and she mentions that she wants to follow Kalosha's will at all times. Cattle then mentions what he heard from Aquas about the followers of Kalosha being in a state of rest aside from the high-ranking officials. Hayes is shocked to hear this, and she tries to clear the air, saying she is a regular priest. Cattle is not in the mood to argue, and he tells Hayes that she is free to believe whatever makes her sleep better at night. Later that night at the guild, Rosa is preparing to leave because it is already late when a strange dude in a hood shows up to post a request. Even though she is tired and stressed already, she attends to the man, asking him what type of request he wants to set up. The man reveals that he wants to request an escort for himself and a young woman. Rosa asks him the destination he is heading to, and she is ultimately shocked when she learns that it is the Denian kingdom. Rosa wonders why the man is posting a request at such a request guild. With the way she sees things, she believes that the man and whoever is with him are trying to hide their identities. Rosa then decides to play her hand, and she accepts the request, but asks the man if he has anything to verify his identity. The man hesitates for a brief second before presenting a small silver tag, and Rosa's eyes widen the moment she sees it. This is because the tag bears a mercenary guild emblem, and it's not something just anyone can obtain. After checking it out, Rosa's face stiffens from suspicion, knowing that the man in front of her has a special status. However, she confirms his identity without any further questions. She then asks him to hand over the commission fee, and from his sleeve, he carefully presents a gold coin. Rosa studies it carefully, and it turns out to be a pure gold coin, but when she informs him that one gold coin can only hire one person, the man is shocked to hear this. He gave her the gold coin, hoping to hire a whole team, only to be told he could only get one person. Rosa tries to explain that the mission is sensitive because it's a request for a bodyguard. But the man remains puzzled. Rosa further explains that hiring just one mercenary as an escort comes with a lot of risk, and the distance to the kingdom of Danian is quite far. It could take nearly a month to get there if anything goes wrong, so it is perfectly reasonable for the commission to be higher than a regular quest. Even though the man gets what Rosa is trying to say, he still tries to convince her to make an exception and hire more people. Rosa says it's possible, but it will mean hiring 2 lower-ranked mercenaries instead of 1 high one. She lets him know that to get a reliable bodyguard, they will need at least a D-rank mercenary. Rosa's explanation makes sense to him, so the man agrees to settle for 1 skilled mercenary. But he still begs her to try to get 2 good ones, if possible. This request raises all the red flags in Rosa's mind because of the man's desperation. To make him see reason, she tells him that it's already difficult getting any mercenary from such a remote territory to take on a bodyguard request. However, she promises to try to get 2 people, but she lets him know that it's probably impossible. Hearing this, the man decides to leave it at that and hope for the best. After he leaves, Rosa begins to examine the gold coin to see if she can get any details about the shady dude. She notices that the gold coin is small but has a very high purity, but the edges have been filed away on purpose, as if the man didn't want his identity to be exposed. After her analysis, Rosa concludes that this request is going to be a troublesome one. Elsewhere, the suspicious man arrives at a rundown shack, and when he knocks on the door, a beautiful girl from inside asks for his identity. The man then pulls back his cloak, saying he's her loyal servant, Aaron. Hearing this, the beautiful and elegant girl, whose name is Aline, opens the door, telling him to come inside. Upon entering the house, Aline asks Aaron about his trip to the guild, and Aaron tells her that their request was accepted. Aline is relieved to hear this, and asks how many guards he was able to recruit. Aaron hesitates for a brief moment before replying that he could only hire 1 person. Aline's expression drops when she hears this, causing Aaron to apologize, and explain that it is because he didn't have enough gold. Aline assures him that it's fine since they can't help it, but Aaron blames himself for being scammed out of all their money. Aline reassures him that it isn't his fault, saying it might have been even worse if it were her. Before long, tears fill their eyes as the 2 broken comrades start wailing uncontrollably to share in each other's misery. They continue to cry until a voice next door yells at them to be quiet, ending their private waterfall show. Since they can't even cry in peace, Aaron and Aline decide to stare at each other with teary eyes while they quietly grieve. After the emotional roller coaster, Aline asks how long it would take for the guild to hire the mercenary. Aaron replies that he doesn't know since finding someone trustworthy might take some time. Aline then decides it's best for them to just wait patiently, so she tells Aaron to rest up for the night and commends him for doing a good job. Even though he feels like crap, Aaron accepts the commendation, despite feeling like he let Aline down. However, a few days later, Aline began to feel anxious because no one at the guild had accepted their request. Now Aaron was beginning to feel like a total failure, and he never expected it to be this hard to find a trustworthy mercenary escort. Aline worries more because they are starting to run out of food, so she tells Aaron that they need to go on a hunger strike for now. This only makes Aaron feel worse than before, as he blames everything on himself, but Aline reassures him that he's not to blame. For a moment, Aaron considers telling the lord of the territory about their situation, but Aline has already forbidden it, and seeing how she shivers just from hearing it, leaves him helpless. Aline sternly lets him know that they can't trust anyone, and even hiring guards is still dangerous for their situation. Knowing they can't afford any more risks, Aline warns Aaron to remember why they fled their kingdom in the first place. She reminds him that they couldn't even tell their foe or friend anymore, which is why they fled. Aline mentions that the danger is even more terrifying since they haven't heard any news despite having left home for a long time. After she finishes admonishing him, Aaron apologizes to Aline, saying that his resolve to keep going has weakened. Aline hopes that everything will be resolved when they get to the kingdom of Danian, and Aaron agrees that Danian should be able to protect them since the king of Danian made a vow to protect Aline, the princess, when she was born. He also hopes the king can help them get revenge, so he calls Aline by her full name, telling her that she must survive. Aaron fears that their kingdom might be gone forever if the princess is lost. Elin is determined to stay alive, but she wonders if they can trust the mercenary who will escort them to Danian. Aaron tells her not to worry and assures her that the guild will definitely send someone reliable since they paid in gold. Elin is so relieved when she hears this that she begins to imagine what the mercenary would look like. Nevertheless, she hopes he will be the stereotypical handsome hero type. Elsewhere, Cattle is chilling, doing absolutely nothing, which equals torture to someone like him who likes thrills. His boredom leads him to wonder how his brainless barbarian friends are doing in the white snowfield. They were the only ones who didn't avoid him, and they followed him around like a pesky fly. Cattle concludes that they must be living as foolishly as usual. Thinking back to his time in the white snowfield, he wonders if the quest is over for good. Back then, when he first woke up in the snowfield, the quest window was always by his side. At first, he thought it was just some bad dream, but after feeling the cold biting his skin and seeing the insane monsters, Cattle realized it was his new crappy reality. The very first quest the system gave him was to survive for a week in that freezing wasteland. And there, the quest window became a sort of compass for him. However, no more quests have appeared ever since he left the white snowfield. Cattle is bored out of his mind now that it is quiet, with no quest window sending him on any adventures. He wonders if the quest window is limited to only the snowfield. But even though he can't seem to figure it out, Cattle is still grateful to the system. Since he promised to thoroughly enjoy this fantasy world, Cattle heads to the guild the next day, where Rosa gives him the bodyguard request. Rosa explains to Cattle that it's a bodyguard request to escort 2 clients safely to their destination. However, Cattle is a bit disappointed because it doesn't sound exciting, but Rosa lets him know that it will take at least several days of traveling. Besides that, all the preparation for the journey falls solely to the mercenary. Hearing all this, Cattle is more certain that the request is too boring and sounds like a thankless job. But Rosa informs him that the pay is good, but the job is suspicious. This immediately piques Cattle's interest, and Rosa further tells him that the request reeks of trouble. She tells him that he can simply decline, but Cattle's attitude suddenly switches, leaving Rosa confused. With a huge smile on his face, he lets her know that a job reeking of trouble is what makes it a good fit for him. However, Rosa can't seem to understand what he means, so Cattle simply brushes it off as he goes over the request brief. In the brief, he notices that the destination is the Danayan kingdom, which sounds familiar to him. After thinking about it for a while, Cattle recalls the girl he escorted through the white snow field, Melina of House Akasha. The girl from the merchant family, who gave him a pendant and asked him to drop by if he ever visited the kingdom of Danayan. Cattle is more excited to take this request, as this gives him even more reason to go to the Danayan kingdom. The moment he accepts the request, the quest window immediately pops up, scaring Cattle off his seat. The quest is for him to escort the client safely to the Danayan kingdom. Cattle is stunned to see this, and wonders why it's suddenly showing up now. But before he can figure it out, Rosa's voice brings him back to reality, and without responding to her, Cattle bolts out the door, leaving her puzzled. Meanwhile, Aaron returns to the inn early, making Aline worried that trackers might have found them. Aaron lets her know that it's because their request for a guard has been accepted. Aline is stunned to hear this, as Aaron happily announces that the request was accepted by the only C-rank mercenary in the entire territory. Aline is over the moon when she hears this, and Aaron tells her that they're meeting him the next day, so he asks her to rest easy. Back home. Cattle is still staring at the quest window, trying to figure out why it showed up after it's been quiet all this time. After thinking about it for a while, he concludes that the quests are not limited to the white snow field as he had thought. However, he still suspects there might be more to it than meets the eye. The following evening, Aline and Aaron waited anxiously at the guild for their escort. Aline wonders what kind of person he is as she begins to imagine what he looks like. Since he's a mercenary, she wonders if he'll be rough and sharp, or covered in scars and bald. Nevertheless, she just hopes he looks cool, the flashy blonde hair, 8-pack hero style. A few minutes later, Cattle arrives, and the moment the door opens, Aline turns around. Brimming with expectations. However, what she ordered is not what they delivered, as a towering, 6-foot-something scary-looking dude who could probably see her future from up there walks into the room. All the anticipation and hope in Aline's eyes instantly disappear as her brain loses connection for a moment. Aline soon stands on her feet, and as she tries to wrap her head around this failed Temu order, she begins to feel dizzy. While Aline's brain is buffering, Cattle greets her, which only makes things worse as she fumbles for proper words to respond. Confused and unable to load her brain, Aline's soul soon vacates her body in fear as Aaron frantically tries to resuscitate her. Unable to do so, he barks at Cattle, demanding to know who he is, but Cattle, as usual, is as clueless as a big golden retriever. Looking at the situation, he remembers that this is how people used to react to him in the territory until he helped Aquas defeat a demon. But ever since then, it's been a while since he has seen such a reaction. He then asks Rosa if the 2 scaredy mice are his employers, and Rosa replies that she then calmly makes the introduction and introduces Cattle as the barbarian mercenary escorting them. Aaron is shocked when he hears this and begins to protest, requesting an immediate replacement. At this point, Rosa is already pissed with Aaron's demands, and sternly asks if he's questioning the guild's judgment. Seeing she's displeased with him, Aaron quickly explains that he didn't mean it that way. However, Rosa decides to call off the deal and return their deposit since they don't trust the guild. Aaron feels terrible for ruining things, while Cattle is uneasy with the whole chaotic situation. By now, Aline's spirit has returned, and she immediately agrees to let Cattle be their guard. Erin tries to protest, but to Cattle's surprise, Aline ignores Erin as she extends her hand for a shake, introducing herself properly. The following day, Cattle and his clients set off on their journey, but Cattle notices that they're keeping their distance from him. He tries to convince them to come closer, but Erin and Aline are too scared as they stick to each other. Trembling away from Cattle, they pretend not to be scared and assure him that their distance is fine since there's no danger around. Even though he doesn't get their logic, Cattle lets them be since they insist on keeping their distance. As he continues to walk, Erin and Aline quietly wait for him to put a little distance between them. Meanwhile, Aline is anxious because they had no choice but to choose a scary barbarian as their escort. Last night at the guild, she shook hands with Cattle after agreeing to let him be their escort. Even though Cattle happily introduced himself like a normal dude, Aline still felt uneasy and scared. Cattle even tried to get her to trust him by guaranteeing her safety no matter what. Nevertheless, Aline was scared of him and wished she could swap him for the 8-pack blonde-hair flashy hero type she was expecting. While clueless Cattle towered over her, smiling like a golden retriever, Aline was terrified and weeping in her heart. A few hours into the journey, Cattle suddenly announces that they'll need to spend the night in the dark forest. Aline's heart drops when she hears this, while Cattle simply asks if they're okay with his decision. Stammering for words, Aline agrees with him, but as if sensing her unease, Cattle explains that they need to stop because it's too dark to see the road. And besides, this happened because they insisted on leaving late in the evening. Faced with such reasons, Aline agrees they should stay the night while Erin stands in front of her, as if Cattle might pounce on Aline at any moment. Cattle notices this and knows that they're still scared of him because he is a barbarian. He can't help but wonder how long they plan to avoid him like the plague. He decides to ignore the hostility and just set up a place to sleep. From his storage bag, Cattle pulls out a tent, causing Erin and Aline's eyes to almost pop out in shock. They can't believe a barbarian owns such a high-level artifact. Seeing the expression on their faces, Cattle casually explains that he got it as a reward for hustling hard on quests. Erin and Aline's heads almost exploded seeing how he's casually saying a thing like that. Since there's only one tent, Cattle offers it to them, asking if it's okay for them to share it between themselves. Aline wonders where Cattle is supposed to sleep, but he tells her that he doesn't mind and explains that he's used to sleeping outside. As for Cattle, sleeping in such a warm climate is heaven, compared to digging a hole in a glacier back in the white snowfield. Cattle also cheerfully offers to stand on watch the whole night while they rest without worries. This is nothing for him, since he once stayed awake for a whole month in the snowfield while being chased by monsters. Compared to that, this is a cakewalk for him, so he tells Erin and Aline to rest easy while he does his job. However, Aline immediately refuses and tells him not to push himself too hard. She says they'll take turns standing watch, but Cattle lets her know that he doesn't mind. Ron and Aline refuse to back down, resulting in an awkward silence between the three of them. Since they're the clients and he can't force them, Cattle has no choice but to agree. He was hoping to gain their trust by standing watch for the whole night alone, but they seem to pity him. Unbeknownst to Cattle, Erin and Aline are just afraid that he might suddenly eat them while they're asleep. The following day, Aline wakes up looking like an extra zombie from The Walking Dead. She couldn't sleep a wink last night because of the anxiety that Cattle might jump them. Erin was also going through the same ordeal, as he plopped to the ground, looking half dead. To make matters worse, Aline's stomach begins to growl violently to the point where Cattle notices and asks if she's hungry. Aline is stunned to answer, but Cattle knows she's probably hungry since they've not had any proper meals. He then tells Aline to wait while he whips up breakfast, but Aline doesn't believe a barbarian can make anything decent. However, a few moments later, Cattle begins to cook like a skilled chef, leaving her speechless. She can't believe a barbarian is cooking, and Erin soon joins her as their mouths water at the sight of the food. Still drooling, Erin asks Cattle where he learned to cook, and Cattle simply says it's just a hobby. Back in the white snowfield, the dumb barbarians didn't. Instead, they stuffed their bellies full with raw meat, blood, and everything edible. But Cattle was different and cooked with monster scraps. However, with the limited ingredients, cooking was a dangerous thing to the point where Cattle almost joined his ancestors several times. After countless trials and errors, he finally managed to perfect his cooking, becoming a self-proclaimed wild chef. For the dude who mastered cooking, where even starting a fire was a challenge, cooking in this fantasy world is a breeze for him. And Cattle considers it way too easy. Once Cattle is done cooking his garlic butter shrimp pasta, he tells Erin and Aline that he's done. Looking at the delicious pasta, Erin and Aline almost bathe themselves in saliva, but Aline quickly snaps herself out of the temptation and rejects Cattle's food. Despite dying of hunger, she claims that she doesn't like greasy food, and pulls out a small packet of beef jerky from her sleeve, telling him that it's enough for her. Erin has no choice but to follow suit, leaving Cattle wondering if they have a few nut screws loose in their brain. Since they prefer stale jerky, Cattle immediately scarfs down his delicious pasta while they watch helplessly. Aline wishes she could join him, but since Cattle is a barbarian, she doesn't trust the food he made. By the night of the third day of their journey, they still had not eaten any food, and Aline was beginning to feel the effects. Her feet were also in bad shape. Aaron worries that they've been walking the harsh road without proper food for 3 whole days. And this is not something Aline is used to, as the only thing she's known most of her life is love and comfort. Aaron blames himself for not being able to take care of her, but Aline reassures him that she's fine. She then apologizes for making him worry, and checks on his health since he also looks like crap. Apparently, due to Aline's condition, Aaron has been staying up on watch for both of them. Aaron assures her that he's fine, and lets her know that old men don't need to sleep that much anyway. Moved by his comfort, Aline thanks Aaron, and shortly after, she falls asleep. Aaron can't help but watch her with pity. He then vows to protect her even if it costs him his life. The following day, Cattle happily grills his perfectly seasoned steak and fish, while Aaron and Aline drool, watching him while they cling to their stale jerky. After drooling and quietly staring at him for a while, Aline suddenly stands up, startling Aaron. Her expression darkens as she excuses herself for a moment. Cattle asks if she needs to use the restroom, but she suddenly snaps, calling him rude. Even Aaron is shocked by the sudden outburst, and Cattle quickly apologizes for meddling. Aline is surprised that a barbarian knows how to apologize as she quietly leaves and heads into the bush while Aaron and Cattle watch in confusion. After she leaves, Cattle breaks the silence as he tries to reason with Aaron. He tells Aaron to at least trust him a little since he's their guard. Cattle lets Aaron know that he's also human and he can be hurt because of their actions. Aaron feels terrible and ashamed when he hears this, because they've treated Cattle like trash. Seeing that his words have the required effect, Cattle offers Aaron some delicious grilled venison meat, asking if he wants some. Aaron is hesitant as he stares at the plate for a while, thinking about what to do next. Elsewhere, Aline is bawling her eyes out by a river while chewing on her stale, dried jerky. As she laments about the hunger in her aching leg, she begins the waterworks afresh. Despite this, Aline refuses to be a sellout for barbarian food as she pushes herself to endure the pain. Since Aaron is definitely having it worse than she is, Aline decides to hold out. But the moment she returns to their camp clearing, Aline is shocked to find Aaron tearing apart the venison meat like a hungry wolf. He was even seated beside Cattle like they had been buddies for a long time. Before long, Aaron senses Aline's presence, and as she calls out to him, he drops the meat on the ground, completely shocked. He stares at her in shock as he tries to cook up an explanation that makes sense. Cattle, on the other hand, is surprised when he overhears Aaron calling Aline princess, and he quietly stares at her as he begins to piece things together about their real identity. Meanwhile, Aline is furious because of Aaron's betrayal and his pathetic attempt to explain it away when he was caught red-handed. Aline is even more furious because Aaron was the one who said they should be wary of Cattle since he's a barbarian. Aaron also told her that they must stick together and protect each other, but he turned around and broke their promise. Aaron tries to explain that he didn't mean to break their promise, and he also points out that Cattle isn't as dangerous as they thought, so there's no need for them to guard against him. However, Aline refuses to listen to Aaron's pathetic excuses. Fed up with the back and forth, Cattle suddenly interrupts them, telling Aline to calm down, sending shivers down her spine. Cattle then mentions that he finally understands that she didn't want to eat his food and insisted on splitting the night watch with him because she doesn't trust him. He also admits to himself that he made a mistake from the beginning. Aline tries to deny the accusation while Cattle tries to figure out how to fix the issue between them. However, he doesn't even know how to go about it, especially since the fantasy world already has a deep prejudice against barbarians, and Cattle doesn't even know why, since he's been trapped away in the white snowfield for so long. He guesses that barbarians outside the snowfields must have done so many terrible things to earn people's hatred. Cattle considers lying that he isn't a barbarian, but with his looks, no one would believe him. He grins as he suddenly gets the perfect idea on how to make them trust him. Cattle then tells Aline that she's misunderstood him, and after a nerve-wracking silence, he confidently declares that he's not a barbarian. Aaron and Aline are confused to hear this as they try to wrap their heads around such an absurd revelation. Cattle then explains that he was born a barbarian, but he wasn't raised as one. Despite hearing that, Aaron and Aline are lost, as the whole thing sounds like a major calculus problem to them. Cattle begins to cook as he reveals that his tribe perished a week after he was born. According to him, he was a foundling picked up and raised by an adventurer. Aaron and Aline were starting to eat up a long tale, but only Cattle knows that he just made this up on the spot. However, he didn't care, because sometimes, a little white lie is all one needs to make the world a better place. He then continues to brainwash them, saying that he might have been born a barbarian. But he grew up as a civilized person. Even though his story is hard to believe, Aaron and Aline were already eating it up. And Cattle was playing their conscience like a pro. He tells them to understand that he is not different from normal people, even though that is clearly a fat lie coming from a clueless, 6-foot-something monster who enjoys chaos. From the looks on Aaron and Aline's faces, Cattle can tell that they buy his story and even pity him. Aline especially feels terrible for how she treated him. Just because of the word barbarian, she treated him like side trash and rejected his kindness and food. But despite everything, Cattle still respected her choice and was considerate to them. She reasons that Cattle must have lived his life enduring ridicule and discrimination while being branded as a brute barbarian. Feeling very remorseful, Aline apologizes to Cattle for not trusting him until now. Cattle tells her not to worry and assures her that he understands. Aline is taken aback by how magnanimous this dude is, while Cattle secretly celebrates finally winning them over with his perfectly tailored, soapy tale. Meanwhile, Aline continues to feel remorseful and ashamed that she doubted such a nice guy. To cheer her up, Cattle stretches his hands forward for them to start over again. Aline is taken aback by this and hesitates. But the welcoming smile on Kettle's face clears all the doubts in her heart as she happily smiles back at him, agreeing to start over. While they're shaking hands, Lich, Grand Magus of the Magic Tower, disguised as an adventurer, secretly watches them from afar. He is surprised that they're suddenly getting along and watches them using the Eye of Contemplation. However, this magic skill is basically a surveillance camera with no audio recording function. So the Magus cannot hear what they're saying. After observing them, the Magus is certain that Cattle is as unique as the old Swordmaster Cain described. Cattle's uniqueness makes the Magus wonder how a barbarian like this exists inside the white snowfields. Once again, he uses the Eye of Contemplation to spy, wondering how Cattle is even more socialized than the normal barbarians outside the snowfields. The Magus is about to move closer so he can spy properly when Cattle directly glances at him. This spooks the Magus, who can't believe their eyes just met. As Cattle continues to look in that direction, Elaine notices and asks him if something is wrong. Cattle then tells her that someone is in the bushes, and Elaine is spooked to hear this. So Cattle tells her to wait there while he checks it out, and he immediately heads over. Leaving Elaine puzzled, he suddenly picks up speed as he dashes into the forest, and before the Magus can do anything, Cattle appears above him. The Magus is too utterly shocked, and after screaming like a banshee, he hurriedly activates a shield, but Cattle jumps right in. An explosion immediately erupts, but shockingly, nothing happened to Cattle. And worse, the barrier the Magus set up was nowhere to be seen. As Cattle's hand aims for his neck, the Magus tries to figure out what the hell happened to the barrier he deployed earlier. Apparently this shield is supposed to withstand a nuclear disaster, but this monster in human form named Cattle broke it without breaking a sweat. It was as if the Magus had resigned to his fate after seeing his shield useless against Cattle. A few minutes after slamming the Magus face into the ground, Cattle keeps a tight hold on his neck, warning him not to do any. He threatens to snap the guy's neck if he does anything remotely suspicious. Left with no other options, the Magus decides to play another card as he lies through his teeth that Cattle is his idol. Cattle, ever clueless, is confused to hear this and asks again just to confirm the guy is talking about him. The Magus answers yes, and Cattle demands to know his name. The guy replies that his name is Patrick, and a few moments later, Cattle brings him before Aaron and Aline, carrying him like a trash bag. Patrick sheds a few tears, wondering how a powerful Grand Magus like himself ended up in this situation. However, he consoles himself with the fact that Cain must have ended up in the same pathetic situation. Aline then asks Cattle about the trash bag, and Cattle explains that Patrick has been tailing them and claims to be a fan. Aline finds this ridiculous and suspicious, but Patrick swears that he's telling the truth. He explains that he wanted to become a strong adventurer for a long time, and so he was hooked when Cattle showed up after helping Aquas defeat a demon. Patrick confidently declares that Cattle is his idol and the ultimate goal of his life. After hearing this, an awkward silence follows, as they all stare at him like an unwanted specimen. However, Patrick is uneasy, as he hopes they bought his lie since he just made it up on the spot. He reasons that his story is not far-fetched since his goal is to get close to observing Cattle, but Cattle suddenly asks him again to confirm that Patrick has been following him. Patrick then chuckles nervously as he confirms the story, explaining how much he admires Cattle and couldn't help but secretly follow him. Despite the properly cooked lie, Cattle refuses to let Patrick just run around. Since there's no proof that Patrick is safe, Cattle tries to figure out what to do with him. As usual, before long, he gets one of his bright ideas as he stares at Patrick mischievously. The look on Cattle's face leaves Patrick feeling uneasy as he begins to dread what Cattle plans to do with him. Speaking about Patrick, he is one of the greatest mages in the world and the master of the Magic Tower. He possesses the body of a lich, and now this very powerful being disguised himself as a common adventurer just to observe Cattle. But right now Patrick is tied up and captured as he questions the very reason that led him into the hands of this large psycho. After securely tying up Patrick, Cattle is satisfied with himself and decides to continue the journey, while Aaron and Aline stare at him in confusion. Even the so-called powerful Grand Magus is shocked at what he has been reduced to. A few moments later, the group quietly resumes their journey while Patrick continues to think about his situation. This is the first time in his life he's been held captive, but Patrick feels the situation isn't so bad since he can observe Cattle more closely. From everything he has seen today, Patrick finally understands what Cain meant when he said Cattle possessed speed beyond human understanding. Cattle also holds power that destroys magic with nothing but sheer force. Patrick had seen firsthand how fast and strong Cattle was. Even though he is in such a small body, Patrick still possesses power that could easily handle an expert-ranked opponent. However, Cattle easily subdues him, making Patrick wonder if Cattle is in the hero class. Patrick's line of thought is interrupted when Aline suddenly calls Cattle, saying she has something to tell him. As if he already knows what she's trying to say, Cattle turns around, asking if she's finally ready to talk. Aline is taken aback by his response as she wonders if he already knows what she's been hiding. Cattle says it's obvious she is hiding something because of how jumpy they've been. On their day of departure, she insisted on leaving at night and taking a detour off the main road. Cattle lets Aline know that it was easy for him to figure out they're hiding something. He explains that he didn't want to bug her since it must have been hard for her to trust him. Aline then apologizes for hiding the secret and decides she wants to share it with him. She tells Cattle to choose if he wants to stay or leave after hearing the whole story. However, before Aline can begin the story, Cattle stops her, saying some uninvited guests have arrived. Cattle is spooked when she hears this and suspects it might be the trackers from her kingdom. Just as she feared, a group of knights soon steps out of the bushes and Cattle immediately recognizes that they're there for Aline and Aaron. Aline's heart instantly drops when she recognizes one of the knights as Lucento, who immediately introduces himself as the captain of the Turquoise Knights. He then greets Aline, calling her the first princess of the Luton Kingdom. Patrick's interest is piqued when he hears that they're from the Kingdom of Luton. Lucento then tells Aline that they've been searching for her for a while and asks her to come with them because her father, the king, is worried. Aline remains calm and quiet when she hears this, completely ignoring the captain. Lucento then turns to Cattle and, after confirming he's the mercenary escorting Aline, tells him her true identity as the princess. As if he's just hearing it for the first time, Cattle wonders why the princess is here instead of in her kingdom. Lucento explains that it's because she ran away from home a while ago and took Aaron, a loyal retainer, with her. He then tells Cattle that they'll be taking over, but Aline suddenly refuses to go with them. Her expression darkens as she sternly demands to know Lucento's real identity. Lucento is taken aback by the question and asks what she means, but this only infuriates Aline as she forcefully repeats the question. Lucento is tense and stammers as he states his name and position as captain of the Turquoise Knights of the Luton Kingdom. At this point, Aline is enraged as she yells at him, saying she doesn't know him. She explains that she knows a Lucento, but the man in front of her is not the real Lucento. She further adds that whatever has taken Lucento's place also invaded the royal castle and started taking the place of her friends and family. Apparently, they had the exact same faces as her family, but they were not the real people. Furious, Aline demands to know their true identity and what they did to her family and everyone else in the castle. Aline's claims get Patrick invested, and despite the restraints on him, he secretly deploys inquiry magic into Lucento with the flick of his finger. However, after running the test, Patrick is surprised that Lucento is actually human. But Aline stands her ground and remains adamant that they're not human. She accuses them of trying to devour her and take over the Luton Kingdom. Trembling, Aline vows never to let them have their way, and with renewed determination. She challenges them and swears to take revenge for everyone who disappeared. Aaron is moved to tears by her words, while Cattle just quietly stares at her. After Aline's outburst, the atmosphere around everyone becomes tense, and after a brief silence, Lucento accuses Aline of suffering from delusions. Aline is enraged to hear this and yells at him to stop saying nonsense. However, Lucento refuses to back down as he points out that everyone in the castle is the same except for the princess, who has become strange. He then tells her to think it through, and Aline begins to waver in her resolve. Lucento pushes further, explaining that Aline needs to return home to receive treatment as soon as possible. He then stretches forth his hand, telling her to stop messing around and follow them home. But Aline is confused as her mental power begins to collapse. She desperately prays for someone to save her, and just then, Cattle's voice pulls her out of the darkness. He then steps in front of Aline, separating her from Lucento, who angrily tells Cattle to move. But with a cheerful smile, Cattle lets him know it's not possible, and Aline is moved by these simple, defiant words. After threatening to use force if Cattle refuses to move, Lucento immediately charges forward to attack him. However, Cattle effortlessly halts him in his tracks with a single hand on his head, leaving Lucento utterly bewildered. Before he can react, Cattle casually slams him backward, sending him sprawling. The other knights watch in stunned confusion, wondering what happened to the captain who had been confidently running his mouth just moments earlier. As Cattle slowly turns his gaze toward them, Lucento's minions begin to tremble, nervously asking what he intends to do. Cattle calmly reminds them that their captain was the one who attacked first. Since they came as enemies, he simply has to do his job, driving away anyone who threatens his client. After breaking a few bones, Lucento manages to get back up, but refuses to leave without Aline, who he claims is very sick. He tries to convince Cattle not to believe her delusions, but to his surprise, Cattle refuses to back down. He lets Lucento know that trusting a client's word no matter what is common sense for a mercenary. Aline is touched to hear his words as it begins to dawn on her that someone trusts her. Lucento calls Cattle a lunatic for refusing reason, but Cattle decides to see who has the last laugh at the end. He then turns to face Aline, telling her that the knights appeared out of nowhere without a sound. However, Aline doesn't understand what he means, so Cattle breaks it down. According to Cattle, the knights suddenly popped out of nowhere, which is definitely sus. Aline is shocked to hear this, while Patrick reasons that Cattle is actually right. Cattle then asks the knights how they suddenly appeared, but no one answers him. They instantly go silent like Siri when I ask her for $1 million. After the sudden silence, Lucento tells Cattle that where they appeared from doesn't matter since they came all the way here to find the princess. He then warns Cattle to stop nitpicking and just let them get what they came for. Seeing as they have no intention of answering him, Cattle announces that he will be escorting Aline to the Danaan kingdom as requested. Aline is touched to hear this because no one ever believed what she said about the body snatchers. No matter how much she explained, they isolated and treated her like some delusional girl. Seeing that Cattle plans to stand against them till the end, Lucento and his minions prepare to take him down. Cattle then tells his travel group to step back, and Aline tells him to be careful. Apparently the knights are supposed to be the strongest knight order in the kingdom of Lutane. As they prepare for battle, Lucento orders his men to draw their swords, but Cattle is amused because for him, such a scene is all fun and games. With his eye of contemplation, Patrick realizes that the knights are second-rate since they can control aura. He also notes that Lucento might actually be a first-rate. Meanwhile, Lucento orders his minions to attack the Barbarian and eliminate him at all costs. The knights immediately charge forward to attack, while Cattle remains unconcerned as usual. Once this dude reaches him, Cattle effortlessly punches his gut backwards and swiftly takes out 2 more with a single punch on both sides. Like One Punch Man, he knocks out a dozen more without breaking a sweat, but the more he keeps punching, the more of them swarm toward him. Because of this, he notes that dealing with groups can be tricky. As if sensing what Cattle is thinking about, Lucento orders his men to keep attacking all at once. Unfortunately for them, Cattle isn't your average hero as he grabs 2 of the knights by their skulls, swinging them around as heavy machinery to take down the others. Just as Cattle finishes the swing attack, taking down a bunch of knights, Lucento tries to sneak attack from behind, calling Cattle a monster. Thinking Cattle is done for, Aline yells for him to watch out, but to her shock, Cattle grabs Lucento's sword with his teeth like a rabid dog. Even Lucento is utterly bewildered, and to everyone's shock, Cattle actually shatters the sword with his teeth. He then punches Lucento, and as he falls a distance away, Lucento tries to wrap his head around what he just witnessed. After taking down the ringleader, Cattle flexes his fist, asking them if they want more. Unfortunately, the knights are all out of juice, so Lucento orders them to retreat. In less than a second, every single one of them vanishes into the nearby bushes. Once the commotion is over, Aline checks on Cattle to make sure he's not injured, and Cattle assures her that he's fine. He then promises to fulfill her request to get her to the Danaan kingdom. However, he demands to hear the fool just first. After a little hesitation, Aline agrees to tell him everything. Meanwhile, Patrick can't stop thinking about how Cattle broke through an aura-covered sword with his teeth. Speaking about aura, it is the crystallization of mysticism, and it tears through steel like paper and slices through magic. So, basically, there is no material capable of destroying aura, and yet Cattle caught it with his bare teeth without breaking a sweat. Patrick finds it hard to wrap his head around the fact that Cattle possesses a physical body capable of nullifying mysticism. He then concludes that Cattle's very existence is a mystery in itself. That evening, after camping for the night, Cattle asks Aline to tell him everything, and after a brief pause, Aaron begins to narrate the story. He reveals that the kingdom of Lutane has been replaced by something else, and by the time he and the princess realize the truth, the kingdom had already collapsed. Cattle guesses it must be the reason they fled the kingdom in a hurry. Aaron says they had to leave because they would have been replaced if they had stayed. He then narrates that the whole thing began a year ago, which Cattle finds suspicious, making him wonder if it's just a simple coincidence. Cattle also recalls that Aqua said something similar when she told him that the demon realm, which should be sealed, has been leaking its influence into the world. According to Aquas, dungeons are spawning at an abnormal rate, and countless evil beings are beginning to reveal themselves. Aquas had told Cattle that all these mysterious things started happening a year ago, but Cattle didn't pay much attention to what she said back then. However, now Aaron was saying something similar, which raises suspicions. Thinking back to his time in the white snow fields, Cattle recalls that one of the monsters he killed was also spouting nonsense similar to this. He faced the monster during one of the system's quests, and Cattle thought it was just one of the rants of something about to die. But thinking back to it now, he realizes there was more to the monster's words. Just then, Aaron's voice pulls Cattle back to reality, as he continues to talk about how they first noticed something was wrong. According to Aaron, after he and Deline felt something was fishy, they consulted mages and mystics to investigate. However, none of them could find the cause, and before long, the mages and mystics were soon replaced. Cattle then asks how Eren noticed something was wrong, and Eren reveals that it was just a feeling he cannot describe. However, the air around everyone they used to know suddenly changed, and even though they talked and moved the same as they always did, he couldn't shake off the feeling that something was wrong with them. Cattle reasons that it must have been Eren's gut feeling. Eren then reveals that Deline was actually the first to notice, but when she told him, he found it hard to believe until strange things started happening around him. Eren's job was to manage and supervise the servants within the royal castle. Southwest He had close dealings with them. He first noticed the changes in a timid maid named Kathy, who was always spooked after listening to ghost stories at night. Every morning after the story night, Kathy couldn't sleep a wink because she was scared. And the next morning she would yawn through her duties. Eren found this amusing, so he always teased her with scary stories very often. However, all that suddenly changed, and Kathy stopped reacting to the ghost stories. Eren says he just assumed she grew up and isn't scared of the stories anymore, but something happened to Kathy that made him realize Deline might be right. Apparently Kathy was in charge of cleaning the castle statues, but she was always trembling that they would fall and crush her since the statues were heavy and huge. However, an accident happened one day, and one of the statues fell toward Kathy. Luckily, she wasn't seriously hurt, but it was still a scenario she had always feared. So Eren expected her to react differently. However, Kathy didn't show a shred of fear or terror at the fact that she almost died. Instead, she was more worried about getting punished or fired. It was at this very moment that Eren realized that the Kathy in front of him was not the same Kathy he knew from before. He couldn't place his hand on how a timid, shy girl suddenly changed. However, this new Kathy remained and acted the same as always, but Eren could no longer see her as Kathy. After that, Eren says he tested a few more people in the castle, but most of them had already been replaced, just like Kathy. After hearing the story, Cattle asks why they escaped, and Eren explains that they fled because they feared getting replaced if they stayed. Cattle asks why they're specifically heading to the Danaan kingdom since they can get their protection from other places as well. Elaine replies that it's because only the king of Danaan can issue a human declaration. Cattle wonders what a human declaration is, and Elaine explains that a long time ago, humans used to live alongside other races. However, there was a man who wished to build a kingdom solely for humans, so he sought the help of a nameless god and stated his wish. This god granted the man power to distinguish between what is human and what is not. Cattle guesses that the kingdom built with the god's power must have become the modern-day Danaan kingdom. Elaine confirms this and lets him know that those who carry the blood of the king can perform the human declaration. As usual, Cattle finds it interesting that such a power exists, and he concludes that this fantasy world never has a boring day. Since Elaine plans to use the power of the king of Danaan to back her claims, Cattle commends her plan. Elaine then asks if he's okay to continue with them, and Cattle reassures her that nothing about their deal changes. He lets her know that he'll escort her to Danaan as promised. Touched by his words, Elaine sincerely thanks Cattle, and promises to grant him whatever he desires after the escort mission is complete. Cattle is excited about her promise, and he lets Elaine know that he'll be looking forward to it. Later that night, Eren thinks the princess was reckless to basically give Cattle a blank decree. Later that night, Patrick quietly asks Cattle if he believes everything Elaine and Eren said earlier. After a brief silence, Cattle tells Patrick that he isn't 100% sold out on their story. But he believes it to be possible. Patrick then tells Cattle that the Turquoise Knights from earlier are all human, and since Cattle clashed with them, he should already know that. Cattle agrees that they're human, and Patrick lets him know that his actions constitute becoming the #1 enemy of an entire nation. As Cattle quietly considers his words, Patrick tells him that even though Elaine is telling the truth, it doesn't matter, as this would only put a target on Cattle's back, and whatever they're running from will seek to kill Cattle just for knowing their secret. Patrick then asks if Cattle accepted such a request only to fulfill a contract. Cattle thinks about it for a moment before saying that the contract was just part of the reason he accepted the request. He then rises to his feet, and to Patrick's shock, Cattle reveals that the most important reason why he accepted it is that it would be such a great loss for him to miss out on such an interesting quest. Patrick can't believe what he just heard, and looking at the expression of joy on Cattle's face, Patrick wonders if this huge dude is insane. He finds it unbelievable that Cattle is equating this strange situation to fun, and the pure look of joy on Cattle's face confirms that he's actually enjoying the whole thing. Patrick can't wrap his head around the fact that Cattle only needs a request to be fun. No matter how dangerous it is, Cattle happily continues to muse over the situation, and how interesting it is that the entities in the Lutane castle replaced everyone without anyone noticing. After thinking about it, Cattle concludes that this journey is going to be so much fun. Looking at him, Patrick wonders what type of mindset that is, and he questions if this is a trait possessed by the barbarians from the White Snow Field. Patrick finds this intriguing, and he can't wait to study every inch of Cattle's mind and body just to figure out how exactly he works. The following day, as the group resumes their journey, Patrick continues to mull over how intriguing he finds Cattle. The fact that Cattle is from the white snow field and only chases after amusement is something that Patrick wants to study. Patrick wishes he could start immediately, but he decides to exercise control for now because right now, he's just an ordinary adventurer who looks up to Cattle. Suddenly, an arrow flies out of nowhere and heads directly towards Cattle, but Cattle easily catches the arrow with his hands, leaving Patrick stunned. Elaine and Aaron are also spooked, except for Cattle, who grins at the knight's new tactics as he looks forward to another interesting day. Before long, the knights leap towards Cattle from every corner, but Cattle is not concerned. As he says their new strategy is not the right one. He then slightly tilts towards them and, without much effort, swats them to the side like pesky little flies. Just from one effortless punch, Cattle shatters one dude's armor, drastically rearranging his organs. After Cattle finishes knocking them all down without breaking a sweat or moving from the same spot, the captain tells his team to retreat, calling Cattle a monster. Cattle is a bit disappointed as he watches them scurry into the bushes. Elaine and Aaron are amazed by Cattle's strength, knowing that the turquoise knights are no pushovers themselves. But Cattle casually brushes off Elaine's remark as if taking down the knights is nothing remotely major for him. Elaine then asks why he keeps letting the knights leave alive, because she's noticed that Cattle keeps beating them just enough to keep them alive. She reasons that he must be doing it out of consideration for her. But Cattle ruins her delusion, letting her know that it has nothing to do with her. Embarrassed, Elaine wishes for the ground to swallow her up whole. Cattle then calmly tells her that he's letting them leave barely alive just to test out a theory. A few hours later, the knights appear again, completely unharmed, demanding that Cattle hand over the princess. Cattle notes that they keep coming without getting tired, and as the leader yells at him to release Elaine, Cattle spots something suspicious. And a few minutes later, he has finished knocking down the group and grabs the leader by the neck to observe him properly. After studying the dude, Cattle points out that his armor is the same one he smashed a few hours ago. Aaron and Elaine are puzzled by how he's so sure, and Cattle explains that he remembers the scratch marks on the armor. Cattle seems to be enjoying the mystery behind the whole thing as he lets go of the dude. And they scurry into the bushes, scared. After they leave, Elaine tries to wrap her head around what it means for the guards to be wearing the exact same armor. Excited, Cattle explains that the knights are not just being resupplied, but their armors and swords are restoring themselves perfectly to their former condition. He wonders if magic is being used for this, and Aaron confirms that magic can be used. However, such a cycle requires an enormous amount of equipment, and it would take at least a full day to complete. Cattle points out that this theory isn't possible for the knights, since he smashed that armor about 5 hours ago. He then considers other reasons for a minute, and finally, it all begins to make sense. Cattle notes that after he chases them away, the knights retreat beyond a certain distance. And their presence completely vanishes. A few hours later, they show up again, almost as if respawning. Now that he has this figured out, Cattle decides to try out one more thing, and like clockwork. A few hours later, the same knights appear, saying the exact same thing they said before. Cattle then turns to Elaine as if asking for approval to carry out his experiment. Elaine quietly nods, giving him the green light, and Cattle, for the first time, pulls out his giant axe from behind, determined to test out his newest theory. A few minutes later, blood drips down the axe, and it is revealed that Cattle's plan is to test out what happens when the knights are really erased. Even though everything is going according to plan, Cattle feels a bit guilty, since the knights still have a human form. However, he believes that this is necessary to confirm whether his theory is correct or not. As they continue the journey, Cattle notices that Elaine seems down and guesses she must have known the young dead knight. Elaine replies that she knows him, and sometimes, she even saw him training when she passed by the castle's training grounds. Elaine knows he's no longer the person she used to know, but seeing him die in front of her still hurts. Suddenly, a voice yells at them to stop, and Elaine's eyes widen in shock, seeing the same guy whom Cattle murked a few hours ago. Like some unhinged NPC, the knight repeats the same words in the same position, leaving Eleni and Aaron stunned. It was definitely the same guy Cattle chopped up, and now that he has somehow respawned. Cattle is over the moon that his theory was right. Later that night, while they're resting for the day, Elaine struggles to come to terms with the fact that the dead guy somehow came back the same. Shivers run down her spine just thinking about the fact that she's been living with such creatures all this time. After quietly observing her, Cattle mentions that he noticed the knights are not afraid of death, just like the maid Aaron mentioned earlier. He reasons that it might be because these beings are immortal, but one thing is sure. And it is the fact that they're definitely not human. Cattle then offers Elaine some food, and with excitement in his eyes, he asks if she has any idea what the creatures might be. Elaine replies that she has no idea what they are, and nothing comes to mind, no matter how she looks at it. However, Elaine points out that since the intruders keep coming back to life, they're definitely not living creatures, so the only explanation is that they are beings from the demon realm. Cattle wonders what type of place the demon realm is, and Elaine explains that it is a twisted place beyond human comprehension. She believes everything makes total sense if the entities invading her kingdom are from this so-called twisted realm. Just then, Cattle's quest window pops up, telling him to successfully escort the target to the Dinayen kingdom. Cattle realizes this is why the quest window popped out at the guild, and he also wonders if it only happens when the quest is related to the demon realm. Shortly after, Aaron tells Elaine that her theory is wrong, because beings from the demon realm cannot cross over into this world. Cattle wonders what he means, and Aaron further reveals that the demon realm beings have never once stepped into this world since the creation of the demon realm a long time ago. However, Cattle chalks up Aaron's deductions to a theory based solely on experience and history. Elaine also tells Aaron that his beliefs are long outdated since the world as they know it has been getting too weird lately. Hearing this, Aaron's view begins to waver, and Cattle notes that Elaine must be talking about the distortion that started 1 year ago. He figures that this distortion must have also affected the demon realm, so it's definitely possible for the beings from there to show up in the human world. Cattle ponders on the matter for a while before mentioning that the horrifying beings coming out of the demon realm must be a very bad pest problem. Seeing how serious Cattle looks, saying this, Patrick is stunned by his dumb cluelessness about the fact that he's literally talking about himself. The following day, like clockwork, the same Luton Knights appear with the same old routine. This time, Elaine and others just stared at them blankly as this whole routine was beginning to turn stale. The only person who seems to be having the time of his life from such a boring game is Cattle. A few months later, Cattle eliminates them without batting an eye and mentions that he has killed the Knights 3 times today already. He's amused by how they keep respawning to the beginning, looking perfectly fine. But Elaine doesn't find this funny at all. After erasing them over and over again, Cattle begins to wonder what their goal is. Elaine believes that their goal is to devour the kingdom of Lutain and expand their territory without anyone noticing. She points out that the kingdom is probably their stepping stone to conquer the continent. However, Cattle feels there is more to it than just conquering the whole world. As he continues to explain, the Knights begin their routine attacks, and Cattle tackles them while talking. He explains that the entity should have just killed Elaine if their sole goal was to swallow the kingdom, instead of constantly trying to take her back. He also points out that they had plenty of chances to eliminate Elaine over the past year, but they didn't. Another thing he finds bizarre is the fact that they only attack during the daytime and never at night. Just like humans. They rest at night. And Cattle points out that their hit-and-run attack tactics make no sense at all. Since they're immortals, Cattle doesn't get why they won't just attack at once with a large number instead of splitting up and attacking in waves. Even though they die, they can simply just revive and keep coming at them endlessly. But they choose to act human. Cattle then concludes that they're not acting like monsters and whatever they do is carefully planned not to stray outside the bounds of humanity. From how they behave, it is almost as if these monsters truly believe they're human. After finishing his analysis, Cattle comes up with yet another one of his brilliant ideas. However, knowing him all too well, Aaron and Elaine are far less enthusiastic. Rather than excitement, they can only brace themselves, already dreading whatever outrageous scheme Cattle has thought up this time. However, this time, Cattle only captured one of the Knights as he struggled, cursing and demanding to be untied. Meanwhile, Aaron, Elaine, and Patrick wait anxiously to see what happens next. Cattle, on the other hand, is excited to have a chat with what appears to be human but is not. As excited Cattle is, Patrick realizes that this dude is completely insane and unhinged. Even Aaron is bewildered as he questions what Cattle is trying to do. Cattle casually explains that he's about to have a heart-to-heart conversation with whatever is disguised as the Knight. Aaron yells at Cattle for being absurd and trying to reason with a monster. The Knight is offended when he hears Aaron calling him a monster. He then angrily yells at Aaron, declaring that he's human and not some monster. Infuriated, Elaine barks at the dude to shut his trap and calls him a disgusting monster for trying to mimic the real Knight. Her expression darkens as she reminds him that he has already died and come back to life several times, so there's no need to keep pretending to be human. However, the Knight tells Elaine that she's mistaken and continues to insist that they're humans. At this point, Elaine is already frustrated as she barks at him to stop making her look like a lunatic. She lets him know that she has already noticed all their secret moves and how they plan to eventually turn her into a monster just like they did to her family. Aaron then questions if they're trying to replace everyone and conquer the continent. But the Knight confidently denies it, telling Elaine that she will remain the same as she is right now. Elaine and the others exchange confused glances, wondering what he means. However, the man is unable to provide any reasonable explanation. Instead, he simply repeats that Elaine must return to the Lutane kingdom immediately. By now, Elaine is fed up with the knight saying the same thing without offering any useful information, and she eventually concludes that there is no point in trying to communicate with a monster. Just then, she notices Ketil staring intently at her, deep in thought. When she asks what is wrong, he simply shakes his head as though he has just uncovered some fascinating secret. Then, out of nowhere, he asks if she considers herself human, and without the slightest hesitation. Elaine answers that she does. At that moment, Ketil's gaze seems to deepen. Elaine is about to confidently assure him that she has not turned into a monster when blood suddenly splatters across her face. She freezes, and for a moment, her mind goes completely blank. Looking down, Elaine realizes with shock that Ketil has struck her abdomen without warning. And his face shows no reaction at all. As her life flashes before her eyes, Elaine struggles to understand what the hell just happened. A few hours later, Elaine wakes to the sound of someone frantically calling her name. Gasping for air, she sits up and clutches her head while Aaron checks on her, worry written all over his face. Elaine then asks where they are, but before Aaron can answer, she immediately tells Elaine that she was struck by Ketil. She quickly checks her abdomen, only to find no sign of a wound. There isn't even a single blood stain on her dress to prove that any of it happened. Confused, Elaine struggles to make sense of it all just as Ketil walks into the tent. An awkward tension fills the room as their eyes meet, after which Elaine immediately turns to him, frantically asking for confirmation that she had really died. Ketil confirms that he killed her and explains that she suffered a fatal wound, one that should have finished any normal human. However, judging by the fact that she is still alive, Elaine is clearly far from human. This news comes as a shock to Elaine, and she refuses to believe it, but Ketil lets her know that it is exactly as she thought. He lets her know that she was restored as if nothing ever happened, just like those nights. Elaine is horrified to hear this, but before she can digest what she just heard, Ketil drops another bombshell. He reveals that while Elaine was unconscious, he confirmed that Aaron is exactly in the same state. Elaine begins to tremble when she hears this, as she can't accept the fact that she's already one of the very things she loathes. Ketil feels bad for her as he stares at her with pity in his eyes. A few moments later, Ketil leaves the tent and as soon as he steps out, Patrick, who has now been untied, asks him about Elaine. Ketil tells Patrick that Elaine is perfectly fine physically, but mentally, she seems quite confused. Seeing how calm Ketil looks throughout the whole ordeal, Patrick questions when he knew that Elaine was from the same entity as the Knights. Ketil considers this for a moment, before casually revealing that he knew from the very beginning. Patrick is utterly stunned to hear this as Ketil continues explaining that he felt a strange but familiar aura around Aaron and Elaine the very first day they met at the guild. At first, Ketil wasn't sure what that strange aura was, but after his encounter with the Knights, he was convinced that none of them were humans. Patrick is taken aback by this revelation because even a grand magus like him couldn't detect the so-called aura even with the eye of contemplation. This makes him wonder if Ketil can see the aura due to some sort of connection between entities from the demon realm. Ketil then tells Patrick that the aura wasn't the only thing he found strange about them. He explains that, at the beginning of their journey, Elaine was too afraid to even accept his food. Because of that, she survived on a ridiculously small piece of jerky for 3 whole days while still keeping up with the gruesome journey. With all these conditions, even a grown, sturdy dude would have been exhausted. However, a frail, overpampered princess from the royal castle survived despite the insane situation. Ketil knows Elaine couldn't possibly have endured it all through sheer willpower alone. Hearing all these, Patrick is amazed that Ketil had been observant of every minor detail all along. This makes Patrick even more intrigued with Ketil than he was before, and he finds it hard to believe that Ketil is a barbarian. Just then, Elaine steps out of the tent, calling Ketil's name. She then firmly tells him that she wants to keep going to the Denayan kingdom. Ketil simply chuckles as he points out that she must have properly organized her thoughts. However, the next moment his smile vanishes as he glances at a spot next to their tent, telling the uninvited visitor to show his face. Elaine looks at the same spot but is puzzled when she doesn't notice anything out of the ordinary. Then, out of nowhere, a strange voice emerges asking how Ketil detected his presence even though there was no sign of any magic. A bright light begins to flicker from the bush as Ketil casually says he detected the visitor thanks to his intuition. Finally, the uninvited guest materializes out of thin air, and it turns out to be a mage. Elaine immediately recognizes him while Patrick carefully observes the whole thing unfold. Ketil, on the other hand, lights up at the sight of the mage's invisibility magic like a kid who has just seen a multicolored candy. The mage then stomps his staff on the ground, introducing himself as Adamant Rajesh, a member of the Polychromatic Orb faction and the chief mage of the Lutan Kingdom. Adamant announces that he only came to talk, a declaration Ketil finds somewhat disappointing since he had been hoping for an exciting showdown. However, Adamant calmly tells him that there is no need for them to fight. Having overheard Ketel's conversation with Elaine, Adamant turns to face her, calling her a tomboyish princess, and orders her to return to the kingdom with him. He reminds her that crossing into another country could spark a major diplomatic incident. Everyone freezes when she hears this, and as her resolve begins to falter, she starts to abandon the mission, convinced that she is nothing more than a monster imitating the real Elaine. However, Adamant reassures her that they are not monsters. Though they have changed from who they once were, he argues that it does not make them any less real. He firmly declares that he is still Adamant, the chief mage of the Luton Kingdom. The only difference, he adds, is that they have become more perfect. He then assures Elaine that she is still the princess of the Luton Kingdom. To her shock, he boldly proclaims that she is the one destined to become the kingdom's perfected queen. The whole situation then begs a big question, which results in using the ship of Theseus as an analogy. Apparently, the people of Athens carefully preserved the ship of the hero, Theseus, for generations, and whenever one of the ship's planks grew and started rotting, the people of Athens would simply remove the old one and replace it with stronger, new planks. With time, every single plank on the ship was replaced, which eventually comes to the big question of whether the ship could still be called the ship of Theseus. Looking deeply into it, Catel can only see the kingdom of Luton as the ship of Theseus. Adamant continues with his plea, urging the princess to come with him because the only place she belongs is the kingdom of Luton. He makes it so convincing that it leaves Elaine completely confused about what to do. Seeing how confused she is, Catel steps in, assuring Elaine that he is going to follow her wish, so if she refuses, he will have no choice but to chase Adamant away. Elaine looks into Catel's eyes like her knight in shining armor, but this only makes Adamant angrier. He urges Catel to step aside, reminding him that they are not the same just as they have seen, so he has no reason whatsoever to interfere in their business. With a stern and strong voice, Catel tells Adamant that he doesn't really care what they are and what they want. He mentions that his only goal is to protect his client, which in turn means he has to stop them. Hearing this, tears from Elaine's eyes, and she reminds Catel that she is not even the real Elaine. She is about to continue talking down on herself when Catel cuts in, telling her that she is still the real person to him. Basically, he doesn't even know the Elaine before her, but the Elaine who hired him and the one he's traveled with is the one right in front of him, so he plans to protect her. This leaves Elaine completely speechless until Catel asks her what she plans to do. After the assurance from Catel, Elaine has enough confidence to speak up, revealing that she is not interested in going back to the kingdom. Catel is pleased to hear this, and with a smile on his face, he turns to Adamant, telling him that he can clearly hear what Elaine just said. Adamant realizes that he's hit a brick wall and wouldn't be able to convince Elaine, which means the only path left is the path of combat. Since Adamant is not going to back off easily, Catel leaves Elaine and Aaron in Patrick's care. Adamant can see how eager Catel is to fight him, and he asks him if he is enjoying the whole situation, to which Catel clearly tells him that he is. Deep down, Catel wonders what kind of magic he will get to see from Adamant, since he appears to be a capable mage. Suddenly, a terrifying aura swells around Adamant as he promises Catel that he is going to regret standing in his way. Adamant gets into a prime position to cast his spell, and as he starts chanting the activation words, Catel surprises him with a speed attack. He dashes toward him, and all Adamant could see was Catel's heavy punch reaching for his head. With no room to react whatsoever, Catel tears his head off with a single punch. His blood spills everywhere, and Catel declares with a smile that the first rule of fighting a mage is to make sure they never get the chance to activate their spell. As expected, Adamant regenerates through the red particle dust, but instead of being excited that he is back, he is completely left in a state of confusion. He has never faced someone like Catel before, and it is written all over his terrified face. Adamant realizes that Catel is so fast that he didn't even get the chance to react to him. Catel is still asking him if there is a limit to his regeneration when he notices that the ground around him is coming together. Catel watches in amazement as he didn't expect Adamant to be able to use earth magic too. Catel gets swallowed up by Adamant's earth magic, but Adamant has no intention of stopping there as he tightens his grip on Catel by using vines to tie up the earth cage. He then proceeds to unleash an overwhelming fire spell on the cage with the intention of burning Catel to ashes. The whole cage goes up in flames, so scary that Aline screams out Catel's name believing that he is dead meat. Patrick, on the other hand, is terrified at the mere thought that Adamant is able to spam spells with high mana consumption, which means his mana can also reset once he regenerates. The thought of a mage with infinite mana scares the living shit out of Patrick, and he knows that a lot of people will also freak out if they hear this. However, Patrick is not worried about Catel's safety as he knows that he is the worst opponent Adamant could have faced. Basically, he sees Catel as an anomaly when it comes to the world of monsters itself. Suddenly, Adamant senses an overwhelming pressure around him, and before he knows it, Cattle has appeared behind him. Cattle is basically smiling as he tears Adamant's head off because he is clearly having one of the best times of his life. However, Cattle notices something different after punching Adamant's head off, and his blood remains in his hand. Adamant soon regenerates with an annoying voice, calling Cattle a monster, while demanding to know who he is. Cattle casually replies that he is just a regular barbarian, but this only pisses Adamant off more because he believes that Cattle is messing with him. Adamant finally decides to tap into his full power to deal with Cattle, and the whole scenario changes as he leaps into the air, with the ground around them shaking. Cattle, being Cattle, just smiles at this, and he lets Adamant know that he is looking forward to seeing what he is capable of. With Adamant pulling out his trump card, Patrick quickly puts up a barrier to protect himself, and the two Cattle left in his care. Adamant summons a huge tornado that shoots up into the sky, but instead of being scared of this, Cattle is amazed that Adamant could do something like this. Cattle even thanks Adamant for giving him a good show, and just then Cattle stomps his foot into the ground to unleash a force so massive that it shatters Adamant's magic and leaves a cloud of dust in its wake. Sweat runs down Patrick's face when this happens because he clearly didn't sense any form of mysticism, which means what just happened is clearly Cattle's overwhelming strength. Just by stomping his foot hard into the ground, Cattle had left a big crater right there. The force from his attack has also knocked Adamant to the ground. Adamant is completely speechless and overwhelmed, as his magic has never been nullified in such a barbaric way before. Adamant is thinking about the impossible feat that just happened to him when Cattle descends upon him and delivers a massive punch to the back of his head to crush him. Just like before, Adamant regenerates and admits that Cattle is strong, but he lets him know that he can't defeat him. Cattle agrees that he is right, since normal methods wouldn't even leave a scratch on him. But it turns out that Cattle already figured something else out. Cattle clenches his fist so hard that he crushes Adamant's piece of clothing that is with him. By crushing the fabric with an overwhelming strength, it gives off a demonic energy, and when everything clears off, what remains in Cattle's hands is some pixie dust type of substance. Adamant freaks out when he sees this, and Cattle confidently tells him that he can finally see what his true nature is. Adamant yells out in anger, calling Cattle a bastard, but Cattle casually asks him if he would like to continue the fight. Cattle points out the fact that he must be aware that from that point forward, any attempt to fight him would mean a risk to his life. Realizing that Cattle is actually right, Adamant angrily leaves the scene, but before leaving, he assures Cattle in typical villain style that he is going to pay for messing with him. After the whole scene with Adamant, the group continues their journey, and in no time they arrive at the gates of the Denayan Kingdom. Patrick mentions that he won't be able to go further because it is a foreign country, which will make it a bit awkward for him to enter. Cattle consoles him on this, but he assures Cattle that he was already prepared for something like this from the very beginning. Patrick tells Cattle that it was fun traveling with him, and Cattle tells him that he hopes to see him again. As Patrick leaves, he tells Cattle that they will most likely see each other very soon. After Patrick's departure, the trio proceeds further, but just as expected, the soldiers at the border immediately put up their arms, telling Cattle to step back. Cattle is not surprised, since this is the usual reaction he gets. But just then, Elaine steps forward to introduce herself, while ordering the soldiers to open the gates. Moments later, Cattle finds himself in the royal castle's guest room, and this is thanks to Elaine's intervention. Cattle takes in a breath of fresh air as he lies on the big bed that is provided in the room. It turns out that he has cleared the quest, and the system lets him know that the rewards will be distributed soon enough. Cattle wonders what the reward is going to be, since he has never received anything directly before. Later, Elaine shows up in his room, asking him if he has a minute to talk, and Cattle assures her that she is free to speak. Cattle asks her how the request went, and she mentions that they are going to be having a meeting with King Barbossa the next day. Elena believes that by tomorrow, everything will come to an end, but Cattle believes that there is a possibility that it is just the beginning. Elaine admits that he is right, and she asks him if he knows about the monsters who took over their kingdom. Cattle replies that he has a few guesses on this, and Elaine asks him if he can tell her what she and her kingdom have turned into. Cattle then brings out the dust he obtained from the last fight with Adamant, and he shows it to Elaine. Elaine asks him what it is, and he replies that it is the true identity of the things that replaced her and her kingdom. Elaine is left in complete shock, as she has never seen anything like this before. Cattle lets her know that it is something that he forced into a lump, revealing that it was originally so small that one would not be able to see it with the naked eye. Seeing how quiet she is, Cattle wonders if she will be able to understand what he is trying to say. He knows that he might be in a fantasy world, but it doesn't remove the fact that it is still set in the Middle Ages, and it is an era where microscopes don't exist, so there is no assurance that they will have any idea what something means to be microscopic. Surprisingly, Elaine tells him that she totally understands. She makes her own example of the situation, revealing that neither mana nor aura can be seen, but when gathered together, they become visible to the naked eye. She mentions that it makes sense to her by looking at it from that angle. Cattle is impressed that she is able to put meaning into it, and he hits the nail on the head, telling her that her entire existence has been replaced by the cluster of dust that he is holding. He reveals that every atom of her body, from brain to blood, has been replaced by them. Hearing this weirds her out, and she touches her body as if she can feel them moving. Cattle asks her if she is fine, but she finds it hard to reply, and Cattle lets her know that he is pretty sure that it is an unpleasant feeling for her. Elaine asks him if the ones she is currently looking at are dangerous, but Cattle tells her that they are already deactivated. He mentions that they break down when exposed to strong physical force, and to make everything simpler, Cattle suggests that they call them nano. Cattle explains that each nano is an independent entity, and instead of a single organism, countless organisms gathered together to form a humanoid shape. He lets Elaine know that this is exactly why she doesn't die, even if her body gets damaged. He puts it into a simple perspective that a lake can't be killed by splashing its water. So the same applies to the nano. Elaine makes it even simpler, saying she considers it immortality, and Cattle tells her that she can call it this because nano has no concept of death. Hearing this, Elaine tells Cattle that there is something completely strange because, unlike the nano, she is afraid of dying. She tells Cattle that if his guess is right, this means she should not be able to comprehend death as well. Cattle tells Elaine that she is actually right, but he admits that he is just guessing. However, the likely scenario is that Elaine is a mutant, and this shocks her. The next day, while Elaine is meeting with the king, Cattle lies in his bed comfortably, wondering what the king of a kingdom feels like. He is excited to meet the king, and this shows on his face as he smiles from ear to ear. Soon afterward, a knight of the kingdom, Maximus, shows up in the room, looking all cold, while telling Cattle that the king would like to see him. On their way to the throne room, Maximus warns Cattle about his conduct when he comes face to face with the king. Cattle, who is already excited to see the king, assures him that he is going to keep this in mind. They soon arrive at the throne room, and Cattle spots the king sitting comfortably on his throne with a commanding aura around him. Standing beside him is the same long-haired man Cain met at the tower. Cattle walks up to the king and he bows to him, offering his greetings to the ruler while introducing himself to the king. Barbassa and even Maximus are left in complete shock when this happens, as it is completely unheard of for a barbarian to show courtesy. Barbassa mentions that he can now see that the reports about him are true, and Cattle replies with a smile that it is just as they said. Deep down, Cattle can already figure out that the barbarians in the outside world are not that different from the ones in the snowfield. Just then, Cattle notices the long-haired man, and he appears to recognize his aura. In surprise, he spills his name, calling him Patrick, but Barbassa cuts in, telling Cattle that the person he is looking at is the Grand Magus of the Great Magic Tower. Barbassa says Patrick was just a citizen of the Barkon territory. The mage quickly jumps on the wagon, agreeing with the king that he is the Grand Magus and has never heard of the name Patrick. With a smile on his face, he tells Cattle that he is most likely confusing him with someone else. Deep down, the mage is wondering how Cattle figured out that he is the same person as Patrick. Since the Grand Mage is not going to accept it, Cattle apologizes. The Grand Mage accepts the apology, saying anyone can make a mistake, and deep down, he is thankful that Cattle was only taking wild guesses. Basically, the Grand Mage prides himself on his puppet magic because he considers it flawless. Apparently, the puppets he controls are different in appearance and even in mana patterns, which also carries over to personality. Since this is the case, the Grand Mage doesn't think there is any way Cattle would recognize him just from seeing him for a little time. Cattle, on the other hand, has decided not to talk about it, since the Grand Mage would prefer to delude himself. Cattle then turns to Elaine, asking her how the meeting went, and the king cuts in, saying they are humans. He mentions that their ancestors already said that if they believe that they are humans, then it means that they are humans. Seeing how calm Elaine is, Cattle realizes that Elaine really wants to be human, even though she is calling herself a monster. Cattle expresses his relief that it has come to this, and he asks Barbassa why he called for him. Barbassa replies that he has heard about the nano from Elaine, and it is sad that they have swallowed up his close friend and his child. He reveals that the Grand Mage is currently protecting them, but this is also temporary. Barbassa expresses his fear that the whole continent will soon be replaced by the nano if it continues this way. The king says he was informed that Cattle has a way of killing them, and this is what he wants to confirm. Cattle smiles when he realizes that the king already has a subjugation plan in mind, and at the same time, the system gives Cattle a quest to conquer the nano of the demon realm. Not long after this, the knight who was captured is brought before the king, and the Grand Mage mentions that it is actually best to gather as much information as possible before they finally go up against the entities. He mentions that he has tried several methods, but it has refused to show its true form. However, he believes that Cattle should be able to help with this, since he has made direct contact with them in the past. He assures Cattle that he is free to go all out because he has isolated the entire area with a barrier. The knight acts as humanly as possible, asking Cattle and the others why they are treating him so unfairly. Cattle ignores him because he is busy thinking of the best way to handle the situation. He soon gets the best approach he can use, and he unleashes his killing intent, which unveils an overwhelming amount of pressure that puts Mama's fear in the knight. Even those who are not inside the barrier are crippled by the overwhelming killing intent from Cattle. The king opens his mouth in disbelief, while Aline almost loses her composure because of how insane Cattle is. Even the Grand Mage is completely astounded at the fact that Cattle is able to do this with just his killing intent. In fact, he is more impressed because they are only feeling a mere fraction of the killing intent that is directed toward the knight, which means the knight, who has never had a feeling of death before, is currently having the worst time of his life. With the fear creeping into every corner of his body, the knight finally gives in, and the nano in him shows its true form, which is a hazy, dark red figure. The nano questions Cattle, asking him what he thinks he's done, but Cattle simply offers his greetings, telling him that it is nice to meet him. He lets him know that he would like to have a chat with him, and since it is nothing but a chat, the nano agrees to this. The first thing the nano does is to ask why they are being rejected, and the question alone pisses Aline off. She yells at the nano, telling it that they have basically killed and devoured her people. In the nano's defense, it claims that they merely made Aline and her people perfect. So it doesn't see any reason why she should be angry. Cattle finally understands what is playing in front of him, and he asks the nano if the reason they want Aline back is that she is actively rejecting them. The nano replies that it is not obligated to answer this, but Cattle decides to play on its intelligence, telling it that humans are creatures who only act based on reason. Cattle tells the nano that, based on the answer that it provides, Aline might actually change her mind and join them. Cattle urges the nano to explain itself in detail so that Aline might be a bit convinced to join them. The nano takes a minute to think about this, and it finally gives its answer, revealing that it is all based on replication. It mentions that at the moment, their numbers are small, and to increase their population, they have to replicate. For the replication to be efficient, they actually need as many entities as possible. However, for some reason that they don't know, Aaron and Aline are resisting them, which makes the whole thing look like an anomaly. Cattle then asks the nano what they plan to do by replicating and increasing their numbers. The nano proudly replies that they plan to make the world perfect, since they believe that it is currently flawed. Cattle then puts it into simple terms, which is basically saying that they are going to replace everything in the world. The nano proudly mentions that there is no reason to refuse this offer, and it suggests that Aaron and Aline come with it, so that they can help the world. Cattle takes the nano's suggestion into consideration, and he turns to Aline asking her what she thinks. Aline doesn't even think twice about it before replying that she is not interested. The nano hears this and flares up in anger because it has finally realized that Cattle tricked it. It starts raging, promising to devour everyone present in the room, but just then it hits the barrier wall, which keeps it in place. The Grand Mage makes fun of the nano, asking it if it seriously believes that there is Northwest countermeasure in place. Before the nano can cause more nuisance, the Grand Mage snaps his fingers to close the barrier and shrink the nano into a small cube. The Grand Mage acquires the cube with the sole purpose of digging further once he returns to his lab. Barbasa then mentions that it is pretty risky to leave the nano to run free because it might cause more problems in the future. He then asks Cattle if he is sure that he can exterminate them, and Cattle confirms this. He asks if they can head out immediately, but at the same time he is worried about the distance. Just then, the Grand Mage solves their little problem, telling him to come closer because he is going to teleport them to Luton. Cattle is blown away, yet again, when he hears that the Grand Mage is capable of teleportation. Just as they prepare to leave, Aline stops them, telling them that she would like to follow them. Aaron freaks out when he hears this, and he tries to call the princess to order, but Aline mentions that she really wants to know whether she will lose her sense of self in the face of death, just like the usual nano. She is also interested in knowing what makes her different, even if she is different. All of this goes down to the question of whether she can truly remain herself. Her words are convincing enough for the two, and they agree that she should join them on the trip. With the princess going, Aaron quickly jumps in, telling them that he has to go with them too. Cattle doesn't even argue with him, but he urges them not to do anything careless. The Grand Mage activates his teleportation magic, which leaves Aaron and the others wowed. Within the blink of an eye, the four find themselves at the entrance of Luton's royal castle. Being back home leaves some sort of sensation on Aaron and Aline, but nonetheless, the two agree that they should get the mission underway. Cattle then expresses his concern about the mission, saying they might make a scene, which will draw a lot of attention. However, the Grand Mage comes to the rescue once again, telling Cattle that he doesn't have to worry about this because he has set up a barrier covering the entire royal castle to block out both sight and sound. This leaves Cattle completely overwhelmed, and before he is done celebrating this, the Grand Mage reveals that he is done. Cattle is left with questions, since he didn't hear the Grand Mage cast any spell. He asks him if he has done anything, and the Grand Mage replies that he has just covered the entire royal castle in a barrier, which means not even a single ant can leave the vicinity without his permission. The Grand Mage boasts about how spells of this magnitude take less than a second for him to cast, and Cattle commends him, telling him that it is quite impressive. Cattle is glad that he is finally getting to see a hero-class mage in action. Since the Grand Mage has fixed the pressing issue, Cattle mentions that they are free to proceed. He starts walking towards the gate, and the Grand Mage asks him what his plan is. Cattle simply replies that they are on a visit, so it is a courtesy for them to knock. However, Cattle shows them his own version of knocking as he leaps towards the gate and delivers a powerful punch that shatters the gate. The shockwave from the punch immediately kills all the soldiers standing behind the gate. The other three watch in complete disbelief at how overwhelming his strength is. The noise immediately attracts Adaman's attention, and he comes out of his hole, asking Cattle if he is out of his mind. Cattle smiles at him, telling him that it is nice to see him again. Adaman angrily holds out his staff, and he prepares to cast a spell, but Cattle is not ready for his usual theatrics, and he dashes toward him before he can even react. Cattle smiles evilly at him while telling him that he is not there for him, and he renders him headless with just a flick of his finger. To the knight's surprise, Adaman fails to regenerate because of the overwhelming strength that Cattle used in crushing him. Cattle smiles, and he urges the core of the nano itself to show itself before it is too late. Just then, the nano placed in the knight's body starts gathering, and in no time, the entire royal castle is filled with red particles. Surprisingly, Aaron and Aline are not affected, and they ask the Grand Mage what this means. The Grand Mage realizes that since they are not reacting to the hive, it means the princess's worries have just been cleared out. He tells her that just as she had hoped, she is completely different from the rest of the entities. The Grand Mage tells her that if she and Aaron were not different, she would have transformed to become one with the hive's core. The entity finally reveals its true form, which is a humanoid shape with a single eye and a ripped body to go with it. The nano expresses its disappointment that Cattle is messing with their grand plan, which they believe is mercy. Even though the entire area is under the influence of the nano and the pressure from its body is crazy, Cattle maintains his smile, telling the nano that its definition of mercy is quite interesting. The nano mentions that they had no intention of revealing themselves because they wanted to respect humanity's will and grant them their freedom. The nano turns to Aaron and Elaine, expressing their discontent at the fact that they were still rejected after they showed them the mercy of letting them live the lives that they desired. Cattle smiles, saying he finally understands why the nano decided to stay hidden. However, he is not impressed because all that is left are monsters mimicking the dead, and hearing this pisses the nano off. They unleash their anger, telling Cattle that they are going to erase him completely. But Cattle smiles, telling the nano that they might run into a bit of a problem here. The nano then unleashes a bunch of nano projectiles, which are all aimed at their nemesis, Cattle. The projectiles hit really hard, leaving a massive shockwave in their wake. But Cattle does the unthinkable. He pulls in the energy from the blast and hurls it at the nano. It travels at a blinding speed with an overwhelming force. It barely misses the nano's head, but gives the nano a Toji kind of appearance by tearing through their upper body. Cattle laughs casually as he tells the nano that it wasn't his intention to miss. The nano are left in so much fear that they call Cattle a freaking monster. But Cattle returns the jab, reminding them that they are the actual monsters. Cattle's attitude makes the nano angrier, and they transform into a more deadly version of themselves with the intention of throwing everything they have at Cattle to make him disappear. Cattle, being Cattle, smiles like a baby because he is finally getting to see the nano enter phase 2. The nano lunges at Cattle with the intention of striking him down in one go, but Cattle jumps to his left to dodge the strike. However, the nano doesn't stop there as they spin around with insane speed and force to slap Cattle into the distant wall. Cattle hits the wall so hard that it leaves a crater in it. Cattle becomes a bit serious when he realizes that the nano are already coming after him again. This time around, they have transformed their arms into a blade, aimed at cutting Cattle's head off. Cattle bends to dodge the strike, but this doesn't help much as they unleash a projectile from their chest to surprise Cattle. The projectile delivers a powerful force that sends Cattle crashing into walls like plastic. Before Cattle can take a breather, the nano has transformed into a dragon, and they swallow Cattle up whole. Eleni panics, and she screams out Cattle's name, but the Grand Mage, on the other hand, stays still, watching the whole scenario unfold. He is impressed with how tricky it is to deal with the nano, but he is even more impressed with Cattle's style of fighting. He can see that Cattle is basically fighting the monster with little to no effort. Months later, Cattle becomes bored with the whole situation, and he unleashes a force from his body to disintegrate the nano that has swallowed him up. The nano is preparing for another attack when their tingling sense warns them of danger. However, they could only receive the warning, but there was no time to react. Cattle appears behind them in a flash and delivers a powerful blow to their head to shatter it. The nano is sent flying into the distance, but they are still able to regenerate their missing head amongst the chaos. With the nano staying back and observing the situation, Cattle teases them, asking them if this is all that they have to offer. The nano then admits that they would have to use every bit of power that they have to take Cattle down. The nano gets into business and starts pulling in every single bit of particle out there. They plan to sacrifice a major part of themselves as long as it provides an avenue for them to kill Cattle. Cattle realizes that the nano are already resorting to a life-risking attack, and he is disappointed at the level of strength that they have, which is nowhere near what he faced in the white snowfield. Cattle reaches for his axe, and just as the nano rushes toward him, he lets them know that they provided some level of entertainment for him, so it was fun while it lasted. The nano rushes in head-on, but this turns out to be their end as Cattle delivers a powerful and single slash to cut them down and destroy every nano atom present on the scene, while leaving a huge cut in the Grand Mage's barrier. Cattle's strength shocks Elaine, and even the Grand Mage, who thought he had seen everything Cattle could do. Even in their last words, all the nano could say is that someone like Cattle has no right to exist in the world. With the nano defeated, the system informs Cattle that he has completed the quest, and just like before, the system lets him know that the rewards will be distributed later. The Grand Mage joins Cattle where he is, and he commends his strength at smashing up the nano. Elaine walks over, asking Cattle if it is over, and Cattle replies that it appears to be over. The nano has been deactivated, and all that is left is pixie dust lying around. The Grand Mage asks Cattle if he is fine, and Cattle says he is, but he wants to know if the Grand Mage is good because he shattered his barrier with his last attack. The Grand Mage nervously smiles at this, as he never expected his magic to be destroyed with a single swing of an axe. The Grand Mage mentions that the shockwave was overwhelming, but he already took care of it. Cattle curiously asks him how he took care of it, and he replies that he put everyone in Lutain to sleep. This insane level of magic control leaves Cattle amazed, and he asks him if this is even possible. Cattle celebrates like a little boy, telling the Grand Mage how amazing he is, but the Grand Mage is left without words, since Cattle is the amazing one. The Grand Mage mentions that it might be over, but cleaning up the whole mess is going to be a headache. He suggests that they return to the kingdom in the meantime, and before he knows it, Cattle suddenly appears behind him. The Grand Mage almost dies from a heart attack as he asks Cattle what his problem is, and Cattle points to the remains of the nano, asking if he can take it. Cattle puts on a baby face while asking for this, and the Grand Mage simply tells him to do whatever it is that he likes. Later on, the Grand Mage walks into Barbassa's chambers to find him stressing out. Barbassa mentions that the whole situation is a mess because even when he tries to explain to the nobles, they wouldn't listen to him. He mentions that the nobles are doing more than just putting political pressure on him as they are now adding the title of a mass murderer to his name. The Grand Mage is not surprised by this, and he tells Barbassa that it is hard to accept the fact that their entire royal castle was replaced by entities from the demon realm. The Grand Mage then asks Barbassa how Eileen is coping, and he replies that Eileen is feeling much better than expected. Barbassa says Eileen is holding her ground well while making sure she is not giving in to threats from her kingdom. It is as expected, since she is the only remaining bloodline of the royal family and the demon realm entity, which is their sworn enemy. Even though she is most likely confused about everything that is going on, Barbassa has no choice but to commend her resolve. The Grand Mage mentions that Eileen has been through a lot already, but he believes that there is something acting as her pillar of support. The Grand Mage then talks about how weird the entities are, which begs Barbassa to ask the Grand Mage how strong Cattle is. The Grand Mage answers with all honesty that even he cannot fathom Cattle's limits. Not long after this, Cattle prepares to leave, telling Eileen that he knows someone in the Denine castle and would like to go see them. Eileen then offers her apology that she is not able to give Cattle what she promised at that moment. Seeing how worried she is, Cattle quickly cuts in, telling her that he is aware that the country is in chaos, but he believes that there will be some stability very soon. He promises Eileen that when everything finally settles down, he will come to collect his reward then. Eileen is left speechless by this, and she tries to talk down on herself again by saying she is a monster, but Cattle cuts in, telling her that he doesn't see her as a monster. Eileen smiles as tears drop from her eyes, and she promises Cattle that she is definitely going to repay the favor one day. Later on, Cattle meets the king, who gives him a tag called the King's Token, and he tells him that he can consider it a reward for the quest. He lets him know that with the token, he can enter almost anywhere, but there are exclusions. And this includes special places like the Empire's capital or the church's sanctuary. The king tells him that the token will be quite useful for him, since it is his goal to travel the world. Cattle is glad to hear this, since it is going to make his fantasy journey even better. After the meeting with the king, Cattle heads outside to check out the capital of the kingdom. He is blown away at how big and clean it is compared to the territory he was staying in. He is busy admiring the scenario when two knights approach him, demanding that he identify himself. Seeing how rude the two are, Cattle realizes that he has no choice but to use his trump card, and he immediately pulls out the king's token with a smug face to mock them. The two are left in complete shock when they see this, and they immediately bow their heads to offer their sincerest apology. Cattle walks away with a smile and an assurance that the king's token is worth it. Cattle then proceeds on his search for what brought him to the Danaan kingdom. Meanwhile, Melina is seen in a meeting with one of her clients, who wants an extension on the money he borrowed without providing an assured date that he would pay back. The dude's only backing is boasting that he is the head of the great Diablo's family. But Melina is not the type to play with her business. Her tone changes in anger, and she reminds the dude that his family is on the verge of ruin thanks to the same money he is claiming is small. The dude gets mad at the fact that Melina is talking back at him, but Melina lets him know that she reserves every right to do so because he was the one who came to borrow from her. Apparently, the dude had wasted all the money on gambling, and even when his servants tried to correct him, he threw them all out. Hearing all of these coming from Melina gets the dude totally mad, and he yells at her, asking her why she is so brave to insult him. Melina continues to throw mud in his face by telling him that insults only apply to people who have honor to lose. Melina gets on her feet to make her stance clear, and she tells the dude that his deadline is in a month, and if he fails to pay back by then, he will have to forfeit the private lands, wealth, and the title that belongs to him. Melina looks completely menacing as she tells him to be mindful if he doesn't want something like this to happen. Refusing to be intimidated by a mere woman, Diablos angrily barks at Melina, saying he will not tolerate her tyranny. Before he can finish barking, Melina's guards immediately grab him to stop him from causing trouble anymore. Melina then calmly reminds Diablos that she's operating based on the legal procedures in accordance with the laws of the Danaan kingdom. She also lets him know that he's the one committing tyranny by trying to renege on his outstanding debts. Diablos is horrified after being put in his place, and Melina then signals to her guards, who immediately drag the mad dog out of her presence. Meanwhile, Diablos continues to scream and struggle while being dragged away. He angrily yells at Melina, mocking her for throwing away her honor because of her obsession with money. To hurt her feelings, Diablos mentions that her whole family abandoned her, including the dude who crossed through the demon realm with her. Melina's expression darkens when she hears this, and her heart drops. But before she can sink into despair, her stewardess calls out, asking whether Melina is alright. However, Melina doesn't respond, causing the maid to pitifully stare at her. After a brief moment of silence, Melina heaves a sigh and answers that she's fine before asking the stewardess about her next schedule. The woman tells Melina that they need to inspect a mansion put up as collateral, and she also adds that the mansion is about a 20-minute walk from here. Melina then decides that they should inspect it right away. Meanwhile, Cattle has finally located the Akasha estate, and he's amazed by how huge it is as he notes that Melina must have really struck gold. While Cattle is still admiring the magnificent building, a guard suddenly barks at him, telling him to leave the premises. The guard proudly declares that the Akasha estate is no place for a savage barbarian like Ketel to enter. Hearing that this is really the Akasha estate, Cattle confidently tells the guard that he's an invited guest. The guard then demands to know who sent him an invitation, and Cattle proudly announces that it's from Melina Akasha. He happily explains that Melina told him to drop by if he was ever in the Danaan kingdom. The guard finds this unbelievable and absurd, as he lets Cattle know that the Iron Lady of Akasha would never invite a barbarian like Cattle. Cattle is confused when he hears them referring to Melina as the Iron Lady. Thinking back to the shy, cute girl he met in the white snowfield, Cattle notes that she definitely didn't give off any Iron Lady vibes. Nevertheless, he hands over Melina's pendant to the guard, explaining that Melina gave it to him when she told him to come find her. The guard then quietly stares at the pendant for a while, and after carefully studying it, he smirks as he mentions how confidently Cattle was holding onto the pendant. From the guard's words, anyone would think the pendant means nothing, but the next moment, the guard's attitude does a whole 360 as he announces that a VIP is coming through. Even Cattle is completely confused by the sudden royal treatment. A few moments later, the guard arrives at Melina's study, informing her that she has a guest. However, Melina ignores him for a while before saying she doesn't remember having any scheduled visits today. The guard tries to explain that it's an important guest, but Melina instantly shuts him down, telling him to schedule it for tomorrow since she's obviously busy. However, the guard refuses to back down, but before he can explain, Melina sternly cuts him a death stare, asking if her instructions are not clear enough. This terrifies the guard, and the cold expression on Melina's face sends shivers down his spine. Still shaking, the guard decides to heed her command, after which he bolts out of the office faster than the flash. After he leaves, Melina stops scribbling and heaves a sigh of relief. Meanwhile, the guard informed Cattle that he has to wait until tomorrow to see Melina. Afterwards, he leads Cattle to a basement room and apologizes that it's the only spare room available at the moment. However, Cattle doesn't even mind, as he cheerfully assures the guard that the room is fine. Even though it's a basement, Cattle likes it since it looks like a room for secret rendezvous. He then scans the place with his eyes, wondering if the basement room has some kind of hidden chamber. Later that night, Melina hangs in the dark like a jilted virgin, drinking her sorrows away. Meanwhile, the hurtful words she heard from Diablos about being abandoned by her family continue to haunt her. Placing her face into her palms, Melina admits that Diablos isn't entirely wrong about what he said. The following morning, on her way to carry out her usual duties with her guard and stewardess beside her, Melina recalls that a guest was looking for her yesterday. She asks if the guest is a debtor, but the guard answers that the guest is not a debtor. He then begins to fumble for the right words to describe the unusual visitor, and after a while, he simply reveals that the guest was a barbarian. Melina freezes on the spot the moment she hears this and immediately turns around, asking the guard to repeat what he just said. At that very moment, Melina quickly darts off to find the guest, hoping it's Cattle, while another part of her doubts that it's actually him. Outside the basement room, a guard is shocked to see her, and before anyone can slow her down, she barges into the room. Upon entering, Melina's eyes widen when she sees Cattle. Meanwhile, Cattle, who had been searching for a secret chamber, turns around and cheerfully greets her as the two old friends reunite after a long time. Melina bows to apologize to Cattle for the low-quality hospitality that he received. But Cattle lets her know that he was quite comfortable because it was a good room. The only thing he could point out is the lack of a secret chamber in the room, but this observation leaves Melina completely confused. The two end up sitting together for a drink with a maid who looks terrified of Cattle's presence. Melina apologizes once again for how he was treated, but he assures her that it is all fine. Melina blushes really hard as she talks about how long it has been. This forces Cattle to ask her how many years it has been, and she mentions that it is about 5 years already. Melina then asks him if he was able to resolve the issue that prevented him from leaving the snowfield the last time they saw each other, and Cattle says yes. He tells Melina that after resolving it, he was able to get out. Melina expresses how happy she is that everything worked out well for Cattle, and Cattle says he can also see that she is doing quite well for herself. However, Cattle mentions that he heard some things while he was down in the basement. He heard that the merchant trip she embarked on back then was a success, and she was able to rebuild the family in no time. Melina confirms this, attributing all the glory to Cattle, who made sure it was a success. Cattle tries to act humbly, telling Melina that she was the one who put her life on the line, so she deserves all the praise. Cattle then asks her if she's changed her butler because he can't see the old man who was with her in the snowfield. The moment Cattle mentions this, Melina's expression goes cold, and she finally finds the courage to tell Cattle that the butler has left to serve the rest of the family. Upon hearing this, Cattle figures out that something had happened, and Melina mentions that it is her fault that he left. Melina tries to move around the conversation by reintroducing herself, and she welcomes Cattle to her establishment once again. Later on, Cattle is placed in a luxurious room where he enjoys himself. Even though it is not on the level of the royal castle, it is still pretty expensive. He is enjoying a bowl of grapes when Melina enters the room, asking him if he has a moment. Cattle tells her that she is free to come in, and Melina comes in with a bottle of wine while fully donning her nightgown. Without wasting time, the two get down to drinking, and soon afterward, Melina taps out, admitting that Cattle is nowhere near her level, even though she is also a pro when it comes to drinking. Cattle replies that he is already used to drinking, and this is thanks to his barbarian buddies in the snowfield. Cattle then expresses his surprise at the fact that Melina enjoys drinking, but Melina corrects the misconception. She says she doesn't like it, but she is already used to it because she needs it to sleep, and Cattle figures out that she has a lot on her mind. With a low and sad voice, Melina asks Cattle if he knows what she did after she got out of the snowfield. Cattle replies that he only heard about her investments and businesses. Melina reveals that after the successful trip through the snowfield, she gained real power within the family just as Cattle had predicted. Based on the power that she acquired, she tried her hand at various investments, and as luck would have it, most of her merchant trips succeeded, so she made a lot of money in a short space of time. However, these are expeditions that have huge risks attached to them, so a single slip-up means the family is going to collapse. Because of this, she started looking into lower-risk investments, and in the end, she settled down to buying and selling money. Thanks to this, her family was able to achieve a huge success, but there is always a but. She reveals that her family members claimed that she went crazy for money to throw away her honor, so they started leaving her one by one. To her, she believed that she made the right decision to make her family grow. This has been aching her in her heart, and she asks Cattle if she made the wrong choice. But Cattle clears it up, telling her that she didn't. Cattle says all that she does is lend money to those who need it and keep it safe for them, so there is nothing wrong with this. In addition, Melina had gotten permission from the kingdom, so there shouldn't be any problem whatsoever. Cattle understands why Melina is being treated this way, since it is the Middle Ages, but in modern times, it makes common sense, as it is what is called a bank. Melina is left in complete shock when she hears this, and she asks Cattle if he is really sure that it is fine. She asks him if he is sure that it is not a dirty business, and Cattle tells her that it isn't because she didn't break any laws, so there is no reason for it to be dirty. In fact, Cattle believes that she has been able to make her family even more important by accumulating this amount of wealth. Melina's face turns red like a tomato as she doesn't believe what she is currently hearing. Hearing all of this reminds her of how her former butler left her. With Cattle putting in his word, she finally realizes that she wasn't doing anything wrong. She mentions that over the past 5 years, Cattle is the only person who has given her a confidence booster. She drops her head in relief while tears flow freely from her eyes. Meanwhile, her new butler is worried that something might be wrong with Melina despite the fact that Melina told her not to come look for her. Since she is having a meeting with a barbarian, the woman finds it hard to leave her alone with Cattle. Just then, she hears noise from inside the room where she is, and she rushes over, believing that she is her. However, when she opens the door, she is met with something else and she sees Melina bawling her eyes out while talking out of her mind about how everything she did was for her family. Cattle is the unfortunate one who has to listen to her sad rants, but at that moment, he has no choice but to just continue listening. Knowing that her master is safe and sound, the maid retreats and gently closes the door, leaving her to do her thing. In fact, she is so traumatized that she just wants to forget everything that she saw and stumbled upon. The following day, at the Akasha estate, Melina welcomes the great swordsmaster, Lord Maximus. However, Maximus coldly dismisses her greeting, telling her that he came to see her in an unofficial capacity. This makes Melina feel a bit uneasy, as she wonders what exactly is going on for such an unexpected visitor to drop by. Speaking of Maximus, he is known as the Sword of Denian, and he's a famous powerhouse swordsman. Melina wonders why an actual superhuman who has transcended beyond human limits visits the small Akasha family. While she's trying to figure out what is going on, Maximus suddenly asks whether a barbarian is visiting the Akasha estate. Melina is caught off guard by his question and begins to stammer as she answers that a barbarian did indeed arrive at her estate. A million scenarios begin to circle Melina's mind as she wonders how Maximus knows Cattle. She fears that Maximus' visit is to order her to kick Cattle out because he's a barbarian. As if sensing what Melina is thinking about, Maximus assures her that he came for a completely different purpose. He then tells Melina to give Cattle the VIP treatment by order of His Majesty, the King of the Denian Kingdom. Melina is shocked to hear this as she asks Maximus for the reason. However, Maximus apologizes, letting her know that he cannot reveal certain details. But he tells Melina that this instruction comes directly from His Majesty, the King. Melina decides not to press further, knowing that certain things are above her pay grade. Maximus then informs her that she will certainly not lose out and declares that, in exchange for treating Cattle well, Melina can freely use his name. Melina is utterly shocked by this offer, since using a name as powerful as Maximus can basically make one invincible. Maximus says it's because he has heard that Melina is having trouble dealing with a bunch of problematic nobles. However, Melina is not surprised that Maximus knows about her troubles with the nobles. Maximus then tells her to simply drop his name when dealing with them and they will comply without hassle. Melina chuckles awkwardly when she hears this and begins to wonder just what Cattle has been doing to bag such a powerful backer. Shortly after her meeting with Maximus, Melina goes to visit Cattle. She hesitates to ask anything, but Cattle notices the expression on her face and urges her to speak up. Melina then asks Cattle if he worked as a mercenary, and Cattle answers that he did. She asks what exactly he did during his time working as a mercenary, but Cattle hesitates to answer. However, after a brief moment of silence, Cattle tries to brush it off, saying he simply did mercenary stuff like escorting people, patrolling villages, and beating up a few uninvited guests on the way. What Melina doesn't know is that this dude was busy doing world-shaking things and beating up a few world-ending entities from the frigging demon realm. However, when telling Melina about it, he makes it sound like he'd been building sand castles at the beach all this time. Melina decides to agree with whatever he says, but deep down, she knows Cattle definitely did something awesome because there is no way the king's right-hand man would have made such a move over simple mercenary stuff. Melina decides to let it go, knowing she shouldn't dig any deeper into this. She tells Cattle that she only asked because she's curious. Since Cattle has finished his important business, Melina proudly offers to show him around. She asks whether he has anything he'd like to see, and after thinking about it, Cattle decides to see her family's different businesses. Melina agrees to his request as she boasts that the Akasha family is a merchant family after all. Shortly after, Melina takes Cattle to see the magnificent Akasha Merchant Guild and proudly tells him that even commoners can borrow and deposit money at the guild. However, it's not so easy for anyone to just borrow money. Cattle notices that the Merchant Guild structure is similar to a modern bank, but it is more charming to see people dressed in medieval clothing. He notes that the guild feels like a perfect blend of modern times and fantasy. Melina then asks Cattle what he thinks about the Merchant Guild, and Cattle gives her a thumbs up, saying it's quite entertaining. Melina is confused about how anyone can find this place entertaining. After their visit to the Merchant Guild, Melina takes Cattle to the armory, which he finds especially exciting. Melina explains that the Akasha family decided to keep trading weapons since it is what saved them from the brink of bankruptcy back then. Since then, they have put a lot of effort into crafting and selling weapons, and this armory is where they store all their special weapons. Just then, Cattle's eyes spark when he notices a sword on display. Intrigued by the sword, he tells Melina to let him hold the sword for just a second. Melina tells him to go ahead, and Cattle swiftly takes the sword from the display. After swinging it once, flames suddenly cover the sword all the way to the handle, leaving Cattle stunned. Melina explains that it is an enchanted sword, and Cattle is over the moon as he raises the flaming sword into the air like his favorite trophy. Cattle is intrigued and fascinated just from the word enchantment to the point where he is moved to tears. Seeing how much he likes the sword, Melina asks whether Cattle would like to take it. Cattle is overjoyed when he hears this and asks Melina again just to be sure she's not pulling his leg. Melina then reassures him that she's not joking, but asks whether the sword isn't hot, still crying tears of joy. Cattle assures Melina that the hotness is just perfect. In order not to make it look like he's eager for the sword, Cattle tries to turn it down, saying he shouldn't be accepting such a valuable sword. However, Melina lets him know that he can keep it, since the sword has no practical use. Apparently, they asked an alchemist to make a flaming sword, only for her to make the flames engulf even the sword's handle, making it impossible to wield. When Melina complained about it, the alchemist made it seem like they're the ones at fault, since they didn't request a safety mechanism in the first place. From the long story Melina told him about the sword, all Cattle focuses on is the fact that the Akasha family has an alchemist. Melina then explains that she hired an alchemist for a ridiculously high price, but she's starting to regret it. Cattle is interested in knowing more about the alchemist, and tells Melina to tell him more. Melina is taken aback by his request, but goes ahead to tell Cattle that the alchemist has a weird personality. However, despite her attitude, her skills are quite exceptional. Apparently, this alchemist is famous for turning someone with zero knowledge of mysticism into a superhuman powerhouse. Cattle is immediately hooked when he hears this from Melina, and asks whether she's telling the truth. Melina assures him that she speaks the truth, since it's a famous story known by many. Back then, the Empire posted a notice, seeking superhuman class powerhouses to join them. However, this class isn't as easy as shopping for groceries. Even within the kingdoms, there were barely 1 or 2 of them, and they received special treatment due to their class. Therefore, there was no reason for them to slave away for the Empire. After a while, the notice was ignored by all, and basically became useless. However, one day, a strange alchemist appeared and promised to create a superhuman class powerhouse for the Emperor, in exchange for granting her a single request. Most people would have dismissed her as a lunatic, and thrown her out immediately. But the Emperor did not. Instead, he told her to use his own son as the subject. Cattle can hardly believe that the Emperor willingly offered up his son as a test subject. But Melina explains that the alchemist actually succeeded, transforming the prince into a superhuman powerhouse in just 1 year. The story fascinates Cattle, as an alchemist capable of turning an ordinary person into a superhuman class warrior is exactly the kind of thing he finds exciting. Cattle grins as he asks Melina to do him another favor, and Melina, delighted, tells him to ask for anything. To her surprise, Cattle simply asks to meet the alchemist from Melina's story. Meanwhile, in a small cabin hidden in the forest, the famous alchemist is busy stirring a bubbling cauldron filled with frog toenails and pregnant mosquitoes when her ears begin to twitch. Instead of sensing someone approaching her hut, the alchemist notes the presence of an extraordinary aura nearby.